This guy was an insect expert in his previous life, but unexpectedly after reincarnation he accidentally became the strongest martial arts master. Giant blue spot centipede, once feared by martial artists but is only his pet. The golden-haired king bee that rules over all bees in the world was also raised by him. The cute larvae are obedient and know how to protect their master. Seemingly harmless, but each one is a rare poison in the world. If you dare to mess with me, even evil spirits will have to go to hell. At the beginning of the story, Soryong is a famous streamer who makes videos about poisonous insects and animals. One unlucky day, he was bitten by a snake on his hand and so he was reincarnated into the world of martial arts martial artist. But no matter where he is, Soryong still cannot give up his hobby of collecting poisonous animals. Today there was a group of passers-by who wanted to ask Soryong to stay for the night because it was getting dark. Looking at the other party's clothing, he immediately recognized them as people from the Sichuan Tang sect. Soryong agreed and told them they could stay anywhere they wanted, but the main hall was where he was using it so they were not to go near it. Tang sect's head Tang Cholson heard this and clasped his hands, thanking the young warrior. Then Soryong also asked permission to leave because there was something important. It turns out that the important thing for him is that it's time for the babies to eat. Soryong went into the house and opened the lid of a jar. Inside there are some insects that look like crickets. Soryong frowned as he hugged the jar. Almost too late, everyone is hungry, right? Then he reached out and opened the lid of another jar. Inside is a black earth tiger, the tarantula native to Huin, China. They can grow up to 20 centimeters in size when fully grown. Soryong picked up a cricket with chopsticks and gave it to Xiao Black. Seeing the delicious bait, Xiao Black immediately ate it ravenously as if he had been starved for a long time. Master, you can't even feed him, you're always late. Soryong then continued to walk to the locker next to it. Inside the drawer was a bowangling cave gecko. This is also a native species of this area and is characterized by stripes on its body and tail. In my previous life, it was difficult to buy bowangling cave gecko because there was no source, but now, just go out and you can see them crawling everywhere. Seeing the owner just standing there nagging without feeding me. You've been my master for too long, Gecko angrily bit Soryong's finger, making him scream in pain. At this moment, Tang Cholson suddenly came to find Soryong. He thanked Soryong for allowing them to stay here and asked if he would like to have dinner with everyone. They had just hunted a deer in the forest. Hearing that there was meat to eat, Soryong's eyes sparkled and tears welled up. It turns out that since being reincarnated here, he has never had a good meal, and has had to eat gecko snakes and centipedes to survive. Thinking so, Soryong immediately happily agreed, finally getting to eat meat. The scene changes to another place, where people are sitting around a fire roasting meat. The fragrant smell of grilled meat wafted around, making Soryong unable to stop his drool from flowing, staring without blinking. While waiting for the meat to cook, Tang Cholson started a conversation with Soryong, asking if he lived alone in the mountains. How old are you this year? Soryong replied, probably around 14 or 15 years old, not wanting to reveal too much. He lied that he had suffered an injury when he was young and couldn't remember much about what had happened before. Since childhood, he lived alone in the mountains, catching snakes, skinning them and selling them to make a living. After a while, the grilled meat was cooked. Tang Cholson's father, Tang Museong, immediately gave him a steaming hot thigh. Soryong thanked the old man and happily accepted the thigh. He immediately took a big bite, filling his teeth, feeling it melt in his mouth. The meat is tender, fragrant and well seasoned, making it delicious. When grilled at the perfect temperature, the meat retains its fresh juices without drying out. It had been a long time since Soryong had eaten such delicious grilled meat, which made him extremely happy. While eating, Tang Cholson revealed to Soryong that they were looking for a giant centipede with green spots on its body. It is called a blue spot centipede and it is quite large. If it is an adult centipede, even humans are just its meal. The reason Tang Cholson wanted to capture the centipede was because his daughter was bedridden due to a serious illness. Only the inner core of that centipede can save her life. Soryong secretly exclaimed, "This is truly the heart of parents in the world, able to do everything for their children." Although he felt sorry for the centipede, since he was invited to eat its meat, he would help them. Thinking so, Soryong immediately spoke up. Even though I don't know what a blue spot centipede is, I can guess where it is. Soryong is more confident in his knowledge of poisons than anyone else. Of the 8.7 million living creatures, about 20,000 are known to be poisonous. I have stored all their knowledge in my head, each and every species and centipedes are no exception among them. As for my knowledge, as for poison, it is in the palm of my hand. Soryong held the book and focused all his attention. The pages turned by themselves, emitting a magical light. After a while he closed the book and happily said, "I found it." Soryong winked excitedly and said, "Well, if it's a big centipede, I think I know where it is." Tang Cholson was surprised and asked, "What, is that true?" Tang Museong also interjected, "If that was true, then where could it be?" He thought deeply, then looked at the two of them wondering, "I wonder if you guys have searched any areas and at what time, can you tell me?" Although he didn't know why Soryong asked that, Tang Cholson replied, "We searched around here to the north and east. Mainly searching for 3 days, in the north we mainly searched along the riverbank." He rubbed his chin and muttered, "So that's it," thinking to himself, "There really is a reason why you guys couldn't find it." The two were stunned when they heard Soryong say that, so of course it couldn't be discovered. Tang Museong exclaimed, "What, of course?" He asked urgently, "Can you tell me the reason?" He smiled smugly, "Okay. Centipedes are arthropods, a subclass of polypods. They have a wide range of activities and are poikilothermic animals, so they need a shelter to maintain stable temperature and humidity. Interestingly, unlike most insects that have a waterproof membrane, centipedes have a weak waterproof membrane. With breathing holes on the surface of the shell, they actually do not like places with too much water. Although they need a high humidity environment, they do not like areas with a lot of water. On the contrary, without moisture they cannot survive for long. This is a unique characteristic of centipedes." Sitting on the porch, Soryong continued to provide information, so the large-bodied blue spot centipede would most likely not inhabit dense forests or riverbanks. Tang Museong felt a headache. "I can't believe it, so the place that centipedes like isn't the crevices of rotten wood." He said, "Some small centipedes can be found in such places. You must be talking about a big centipede, right?" Soryong continued, "If its body was that big, then fallen trees in the forest or rocks by the river would not be suitable places, because there would be no place for it to hide." After hearing that, Tang Cholson and Tang Museong looked at each other and nodded slightly. Sitting next to him, he worriedly said, "If I find it where you pointed, I will definitely thank you." He smiled smugly and pointed to the mountain in front of him. Soryong affirmed, "West." And instructions, "You should try to find it in the western rock mountain." The 3-day centipede usually rests under heated rocks and only comes out at night. At night the moonlight illuminates the steep cliffs. On the cliff, everyone divided up to search. At the top of the mountain, Tang Cholson stood firmly observing, his brows furrowed in thought. At this moment, someone ran over and called out, "Patriarch, could it be that the young warrior's words were wrong?" He pondered, "Really?" Jumping down, Tang Cholson ordered, "Rest here today, fire a signal to call the search teams to assemble." The soldiers received the order, "Yes, master." The signal was fired, blazing in midair. Everyone sighed as they rested. Oh man, this was exhausting. Hopefully the young warrior's words were true. They talked to each other. Why is this damn centipede nowhere to be seen? It was true, and that young warrior seemed quite smart. Suddenly they heard movement from Tang Cholson's side. Seeing him gritting his teeth, trembling, Huin said, "She is considered the most outstanding talent in the history of Tang sect. Has the heavens really abandoned me?" Just then a shout was heard. The Grand Patriarch had returned. Everyone greeted him in unison. "Are you back?" Tang Museong walked up to Tang Cholson. He asked about the situation. "Didn't find anything today either?" He replied, "Yes, father." Then he asked again, "Didn't you find anything either?" Tang Museong coughed slightly. "All right, but the situation wasn't looking good. Huin can only hold out for 3 more months at most. I wonder if it can be found in the next 10 days. The two were silent. Both were feeling the same. He suggested, "Father, how about we try looking south tomorrow?" Since no trace has been found yet, the old man sighed and agreed, "Fine." Suddenly Tang Museong asked loudly in surprise, "Nothing?" Then suddenly he slapped his forehead and laughed loudly. "That's right, so that's how it is. How did I not realize it? This is the place." Seeing a glimmer of hope, Tang Cholson asked, "Did you just discover something?" "Father." However, Tang Museong gave an unexpected answer. "No, it's really as you said, I don't see any traces or feelings." He asked in surprise, "Right?" He confirmed, "Because there is nothing," then added, "That is why I feel it is here." Tang Museong looked around and asked, "In the past 3 days, have you discovered anything on this rocky mountain?" Tang Cholson replied, "No, we haven't discovered any traces." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully and said, "No wild animal droppings or signs of territory, nothing at all." Just finished speaking, he suddenly startled and exclaimed, "Could it be?" Realizing the problem together with Tang Cholson, he said excitedly, "That's right, there's no way there wouldn't be traces of animals on this vast rocky mountain." He clenched his fists and muttered, "This is its territory." Tang Museong happily replied, "That's right, because of that all the surrounding beasts ran away, or became the scent for the blue spot centipede." He patted Tang Cholson's shoulder and comforted him, "The blue spot centipede must be here, now we can save Huin." He seemed to find the light. Biting his lip, he said, "Finally." Before he could finish speaking, the ground shook violently. Everyone screamed in panic, "What is this?" Someone shouted, "What the hell is this?" While some people were so scared that they stepped on fire without realizing it. Right at the place where the fire was burning, there was a loud bang. Tang Museong and Tang Cholson stood there, stunned, exclaimed, "What is it?" A sharp claw suddenly appeared, struck the ground. The soldier stammered in fear, that. Rocks and dirt fell on them. The old man's face turned pale and he exclaimed, "That's it." As the shape of a giant centipede, the blue spot centipede gradually appears. At the same time in the city, the sound of panic rang out. Soryong said listlessly, "It's all chaos." He lay down, wondering, how big was that centipede that everyone was so scared of? He said he was just looking for it. Why did he turn the whole mountain upside down? Soryong smirked, "A centipede big enough to swallow you whole?" He was excited, he was really curious. Night scene in the mountains. People gathered around a bag of destroyed centipedes. Tang Museong opened the box and said, "This is the inner core of that centipede." Everyone around was moved. The old man covered his face with his hands and coughed lightly. Huin could be saved now. Tang Chulson, his body in tatters, stepped forward and said, "Father, please send the uninjured warriors to Sichuan first." Tang Museong wondered, "What do you mean?" He looked into the distance and replied, "A favor must be repaid, a grudge must be avenged, hatred is engraved in blood, kindness is engraved in stone." Tang Chulson asked, "Isn't there still work to be done here?" The old man patted his head and remembered, "I almost made a big mistake because I was too busy thinking about Huin." Tang Museong put away the box containing the inner core, and said, "That's right, we should treat the young warrior as an honored guest. If there is anything the young warrior wishes for, we will fulfill it. Yes, let the wounded warriors stay in the village to recuperate. In the meantime, I will go see the young warrior." Tang Chulson added, "Perhaps the young warrior is also eager to hear news of us." Soryong looked gloomy, and strange animals were crawling around him. "Let them cling to you. What should we do now?" he said. "In just one night, I became the father of the blue spot centipede, in a certain room." Soryong muttered, "Go home, I will clean the egg and put it by the pillow, I will see it in the morning." He looked at the babies crawling on him and said, "The babies have all hatched." Looking at them round with rabbit-like ears, Soryong suppressed his emotions and said, "I expected them, but I didn't expect them to bloom so quickly." He glanced at a baby on his cheek who was hugging him while sleeping. Suddenly the kid peed, causing him to panic and catch him and say, "Hey guys, stay away." Soryong thought to himself, "The problem is whether these kids see me as their mother." One kid kept biting his shirt, he said. They clung to him and wouldn't let go. "The night before in some ravine, at the secret hideout of the blue spot centipede we found. The closer you get to the cave, the more terrifying it gets." He accidentally kicked something and shouted, "What the hell is this? What kind of beetle is this the size of a human fist?" The torch in Soryong's hand fell, the bug beside him knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. Soryong wiped his sweat and said, "Thank goodness." He looked into the bag and said, "At least there are still 3 safe eggs." Soryong rubbed his head and muttered, "Luckily the rain had stopped or else he wouldn't have been able to save any of the eggs." Suddenly he realized something and stood up, saying, there was no time to hesitate, he had to quickly go back and clean the eggs. He tied the egg bag to his belt and said, "Okay." With an excited face, Soryong said loudly, "My dears, wait a moment." And then the eggs hatched. He sat there lamenting, even though he hadn't seen the blue spot centipede alive yet, saving these eggs was already very lucky. The cute kids kept clinging to Soryong, making him feel a little awkward. Soryong said, "By the way, aren't you guys planning on leaving me?" The mischievous brats crawled down behind him. He muttered, "Even though I know that you won't need to eat during your second molt, then I don't need to worry about food either, but clinging to me like this is really awkward." Soryong suddenly realized, "If I go into the water, maybe you will automatically leave me." His face showed evil intentions, making the centipede panic. He said, "Then I have to take a bath." Early in the morning, Tang Chulson, with his body bandaged with wounds, walked steadily to a place. When he reached a room, he called out loudly, "Young warrior, are you inside?" Standing outside the door for a moment, he continued to call, "Young warrior." Seeing no sound from inside, he pushed the door open and said, "Young warrior, let's go in." While looking around, Tang Chulson noticed that there was no one. He muttered, "Herbs, jars, and even medicine boxes." Looking at the herbs, he wondered, could this young warrior be proficient in medicine? Sighing, he blamed himself for not entering an empty room at will, that would be rude. Then Tang Chulson decided to leave and said, "I will come back later." Suddenly he heard strange sounds, which made him curiously turn around and mumble, "What is this sound?" Behind him are large vases. He gently walked over, opened the lid of the jar and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "What is this?" When he saw a spider holding something white in its mouth, he muttered, "A spider." Looking over at the medicine cabinet, he exclaimed, unable to believe it. Tang Chulson immediately opened a drawer and saw an orange-striped animal. He wondered, is this a gecko? He couldn't believe his eyes. He noticed that the jar contained brown bugs, the basin next to it contained strange eggs, and the box next to it contained the dried bodies of snakes. Too shocked to move, he muttered, "Gecko type." It felt like he was in a place filled with poisonous animals. He exclaimed, "Unbelievable." Tang Chulson thought for a moment, could it be that he was raising these poisonous animals and letting them reproduce? Even the Tang clan, famous for its poisons and poisonous animals, only stopped at managing and extracting toxins and could never have thought of breeding them like this. He closed the door and walked out, then muttered, "By a small stroke of luck I saved the life of my beloved daughter." Clenching his fists, Tang Chulson whispered, "Is this young warrior really the real opportunity?" Suddenly he heard a voice calling from behind, "Old man." He turned and replied, "Young warrior." Soryong rushed over and asked, "How did your arm get like that? Is there any other injury?" Tang Chulson placed his hand on his shoulder and replied, "It's nothing big, rather what I need to say is." Suddenly he felt something strange and muttered, "What is this?" An evil aura appeared behind him. The door suddenly broke open and a strange figure appeared with a murderous aura, a terrifying smile revealing sharp teeth. Tang Chulson quickly pushed Soryong aside and shouted, "Young warrior, get out of here." He didn't understand what was going on and asked, "Senior?" Meanwhile, the stranger was ready to attack. He suddenly jumped up, destroying everything around him and charging straight towards Tang Chulson. Han put all his strength into his arm and threw a powerful blow, causing him to vomit blood and be seriously injured. Tang Chulson was confused as he realized the strength of his enemy, muttering, a master on par with his father. He shouted, young warrior, run away. As soon as he finished speaking, Soryong was grabbed by the neck and lifted up high. He had difficulty breathing and called out, senior. He smiled smugly, I heard that the Tang clan had entered Hainan, so I came to see, but it seems that the snake of the myriad poisons divine sovereign was injured and is alone like this. Tang Chulson struggled to stand up, coughed a few times and asked, who are you, senior? Why are you torturing this young warrior with me? Lin Yong laughed loudly, you will know something when you look at this face and my red fist. Your father made me like this, the bloodhand Rakshasa, Tak Lin Yong is me. He recalled his old appearance and muttered, Tak Lin Yong, it was said that he was poisoned in the head and fell off a cliff by the sea. It seems that he survived. Seeing Soryong struggling in his arms, Tang Chulson shouted loudly, that young warrior has nothing to do with us, let him go, he suggested, then I will trade my life for that kid. He grabbed his neck and replied, I don't like it, if you touch me even a little bit you will die. Demon, this martial arts expert will bring harm to the world. Tang Chulson gritted his teeth angrily and muttered, in the end, that demon had no intention of releasing the young warrior. At that time, Soryong was stripped of his neck to the point where he could no longer bear it. Lin Yong laughed loudly, died. He now uttered each word with difficulty, please save me. Suddenly blue spot centipedes rushed out from his body and latched onto the demon's arm. Chung bit Lin Yong continuously, making him panic, what is this, blue spot centipede? Lin Yong tried to escape from those bugs and shouted, blue spot centipede can really be dangerous to us. The bugs pumped poison into his body and made him vomit blood. Finally, Lin Yong collapsed, screaming, damn it, and lay motionless at Soryong's feet. He panicked and muttered, oh my god, he's dead. He kicked him and called, hey, are you still alive? Tang Chulson stood there with his mouth open, unable to contain his surprise. Then he smiled like he had 10 lovers and muttered, isn't this young warrior an honored guest? Soryong poked Lin Yong with his stick but he remained motionless. He eventually became a member of the Tang clan, at the dojo. A few days after Tak Lin Yong fell, a sigh of relief echoed in the room. Soryong was tending to Tang Chulson who was limping on the bed. He said, thank you, young warrior. Soryong heard him speak and said, unable to delay any longer, if senior tells me where the person is, I will go check it out. After saying that, he suddenly turned away and scratched his chin while thinking, no, it's not good to leave senior here alone, but we can't call a doctor either. Tang Chulson quickly said, I'm fine, don't worry, I'll be fine after a few days of recuperation. He felt a little emotional in his heart. This old man had lost so much blood and yet he was still speaking so calmly. He remembered the image of him coughing up a lot of blood and still trying to reassure him, I'm fine. Soryong immediately retorted, please don't say that, his current condition is very serious. Tang Chulson took a weak breath and replied, it's fine, afraid that he would worry more. He added, I'm a martial arts person. Soryong was surprised and wondered, a martial artist? He was interested and asked, you mean people who can fly and use martial arts, right? He smiled and replied, not everyone can do that but it can be considered right. The young man thought to himself in surprise, how amazing, there really is something different about the world here, otherwise, there would be no point in seeing a centipede as big as a house. Tang Chulson spoke, interrupting his train of thought, this was something to be treasured after all, the person who saved this old man's life, although it might be a bit rude, let me formally introduce myself. He introduced himself, I am Tang Chulson, the head of the Sichuan Tang clan. He also replied without delay, I am Wei Soryong. He closed his eyes and praised, Soryong, which means little dragon, what a nice name. Then he looked at him and asked, besides, I still have many things to ask, do you agree? He politely replied, yes, please ask. He wondered if the poisonous black creature was a centipede. He looked down at the larvae clinging to his body, touched them and confirmed, yes, they were blue spot centipede larvae. Tang Chulson was so surprised that he jumped up and exclaimed, you said you tamed the blue spot centipede larva. He was startled by him and shouted, senior, please lie down first, but he ignored his advice and continued, where is it, how can it be tamed like that? He stammered, while waiting for you, I saw it. He suddenly interrupted him, could it be that you also raised these poisonous insects? He hesitated and continued, that is, he was a little embarrassed and then spoke, perhaps the story will be a bit long, do you want to hear it? He covered his mouth, cleared his throat, it's okay, go ahead. He started telling, then we will start from the egg of the blue spot centipede, the story is like this. The night outside the temple was quiet, as if listening to Soryong's story. After hearing everything, Tang Chulson asked in surprise, wait, you mean to receive the eggs and raise them yourself? He replied, yes, that's right, I can predict that the eggs will hatch. He sweated, thinking to himself, who could be sure of the day the eggs would hatch? How could that be? He spoke, please wait a moment, senior. After saying that, Soryong opened the cabinet door, took out the creatures and asked, do you want to see this? He took one out and proudly introduced it as a common cave gecko. Its body had yellow stripes and its tail had white stripes. He went on to introduce another one, and here too, the ones with large white stripes on their tails were chosen to mate, and the results showed these two distinctive colors. Duang So looked at the animals before his eyes and exclaimed, could it be? He shouted, you said you created this color? He happily confirmed, yes, isn't it beautiful? He swallowed, wondering, could it be that if we made highly poisonous creatures, we can create an even more poisonous species? He was a little surprised by his father's question, his mind was spinning, theoretically it was possible. After thinking about it, he said, if he knew which one's poison was stronger, it was definitely possible. He hesitated, but that was difficult. He suddenly raised his voice, what? How could that be? He was startled. He placed his hand on his shoulder and seriously suggested, come join our clan, he exclaimed in surprise, huh? He shouted again, if you join our Tang sect, all martial arts techniques will be passed down without reservation, rare herbs, spiritual herbs, and any kind of poison you want will be at your fingertips. He passionately persuaded, if you were me perhaps you could catch or raise one of the 10 great poisonous creatures of the Central Plains that martial artists had passed down. If that wasn't exciting enough, Tang Cholson also used his ultimate move, not to brag, but one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains is my daughter. Soryong hurriedly stopped him, wait, he asked, what did you just say? He also exclaimed in surprise. Then, as if suddenly realizing, he laughed loudly, you are young but you are also a man, that's why you're like that, my daughter is one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains. He saw that he misunderstood and shouted, no, it's not that kind of condition. He pictured the 10 great poisonous creatures he mentioned, clenched his fists and asked loudly, are the 10 great poisonous creatures of the Central Plains as formidable as the blue spot centipede? Of course, he insisted. He smirked smugly, the blue spot centipede was also very powerful but it was still a low-level poisonous species, it could not be compared to the 10 great poisonous creatures of the Central Plains. He described everything from a centipede as big as a house to a golden centipede that sparkled like gold. The boy was amazed and kept thinking about what he said. But he continued, no matter what he thought, reality would be far beyond that. Tang Cholson let out a soft sigh, it was indeed strange. He looked at Soryong's excited face and the 2 larvae crawling inside his shirt and affirmed, it seems like I've succeeded in convincing him. 2 days later at the martial arts school, Tang Cholson's disciples shouted when they heard the news, I heard the bloodhand Rakshasa Tak Linyang has appeared? Tang Cholson said, indeed, I almost got into big trouble. I didn't expect that he had been practicing martial arts in seclusion and had now reached a realm almost equal to his father's. The group of disciples were frightened and stammered, that. A disciple stuttered, unable to form a sentence, then, a disciple suddenly thought of something and said, huh? Wait, did the master kill him? Could it be that he has reached the realm of 10,000 poisons? Another disciple immediately congratulated, congratulations, the remaining person also hurriedly said, oh, congratulations to the master. He sighed in relief, denying it, it wasn't like that, he continued, the one who killed him wasn't me but this young warrior here. A disciple suddenly exclaimed, is this young warrior? With that he turned to grip Soryong's hand tightly, shouting in confirmation, young warrior, right? The group of disciples immediately said, thank you young warrior for saving the life of our clan leader, the Sichuan Tang clan. I wonder if he is a master who has attained immortality. He was completely taken aback by their words and asked back, huh? What, forever young what? Tang Cholson calmly interrupted, young warrior, there seems to be a slight misunderstanding, can you show me? He thought for a moment and then agreed, kids, come here. The disciple stared at the creatures that were wriggling to poke their heads out from under his shirt. The tiny larva squeaked and looked around. Seeing the larva clearly, the disciple exclaimed in surprise, oh, aren't these centipedes? It was these that took down Tak Linyang. One of the disciples suddenly shouted, carrying a hint of fear, what, is their poison safe? Another disciple also shouted, but couldn't hide his admiration, he had tamed the blue spot centipede? Was a young warrior so talented? Tang Cholson continued leisurely, so I have decided to accept the young warrior into our clan. The disciple excitedly exclaimed, oh, young warrior. This is really a good opportunity. Tang Cholson said, then his voice attracted the attention of the excited group of people. He clenched his fists and spoke seriously, it seemed we should not delay any longer. Soryong asked, Senior, is there anything else you want to find? He just pondered and did not answer. Then he said gravely, the blood hand Rakshasa Tak Linyang. The martial arts he practiced were the blood hand Soan Claw, dreadful evil art, and he used human blood and marrow to elevate his realm. He thought in horror, what kind of crazy dreadful evil art is this? He firmly decided that if he left behind a secret manual or had a successor, he must definitely deal with the aftermath. He could not let that kind of cruel and dreadful evil art appear on martial artists again. He clenched his fists and asked, if anyone is captured, we should definitely help them, right? The group of disciples agreed, of course, master. He turned to ask, young warrior, can you give me a hand? After all, you are familiar with the terrain of Huin Island. Soryong was silent, seemingly pensive, at which point the larva approached again, calling out. He closed his eyes and pondered. Perhaps becoming a member of the Tang clan also meant taking on a lifelong mission. Normally, being an intern was understood to be to observe the atmosphere at the company and have the opportunity to examine the leader's personality, right? He happily replied, I understand, when you recover your health, I will do my best to support you. Hearing this, the disciple felt pleased. Tang Cholson praised, the young warrior's thinking was correct. He smiled brightly, saving people, of course he had to help. He appeared humble on the outside, but in his heart, he thought to himself, on this trip he must learn thoroughly about the Sichuan Tang clan. He thought smugly, talented people often interview in reverse. It had been 3 days since Elder Cholson had recovered. Their group, including Tang Cholson, Wei Soryong, and their disciples, decided to search for the blood-hand Rakshasa Tak Linyang's retreat, so they stopped at a village next to the abandoned martial arts school. They asked the people if anyone was missing, and the people worriedly replied, "Are you talking about missing people?" The old man recalled and said that in the past year, 1 or 2 people had gone missing in the forest, but it did not happen often. Tang Cholson stroked his beard thoughtfully. The group clasped their hands in gratitude. On behalf of Tang Cholson's group, he said, "Thank you, village chief." The old man also responded enthusiastically, "It's nothing, it's an honor to help the Tang clan." Then he said, "Then I'll take my leave." The village chief replied, "I hope you're safe." Unfortunately, the group was unable to gather any further information and continued on their way. Soryong wondered, was this village no different? Tang Cholson pondered. He thought for a moment and replied, "Seeing how he discovered us and showed up, I thought he would be around here. It really wouldn't be easy to find him." He also thought, "It's really strange, how come he didn't leave any traces?" Soryong thought back to Tak Linyang's attack and wondered, what did he say? Thinking of that, he suddenly exclaimed, "Senior, do you remember what he said when he appeared?" Tang Cholson turned around and replied, "I don't remember clearly, what about you?" He recalled and thought, at that time I was hit and flew away," then continued, "Yeah, so that's it. You analyze, he said that the Tang clan entered Hainan Island, right?" He asked again, "Is that so?" He continued to analyze, "If so, that means someone knew about the Tang clan entering Hainan Island and reported it to Tak Linyang, right?" He nodded, "Probably so." Soryong excitedly suggested, "Then it's simple, we just need to verify the path we took on Hainan Island. Based on the appearance, if we use a portrait description to inquire, we will find it." He and his group of disciples looked at him in surprise. Tang Cholson happily said, "I didn't think of that. How excellent, if the blood-hand Rakshasa Tak Linyang said so, he must have heard the news from someone who met us." While he felt embarrassed at being praised, he decided, "Well, that's easy, let's move right away." They continued their journey to a village, where the atmosphere was heavy and gloomy. As they entered the village, Soryong spoke up, "Master, I heard that at the port on Hainan Island, there is a possibility that this village was observed by Tang Cholson and he thought that this seems to be a place where women live." He ordered, "Let's go in and see." According to the young warrior, "Perhaps the women here won't be too hostile to us." The disciples said in unison, "Yes, master." In the village people seemed very depressed, many people were absent-minded, some were lying in front of their houses. A villager sat quietly working. When they called out, "Is anyone here?" The villager's attention was attracted. When they saw the group entering, a villager asked, "What is the matter with you coming to the woman's village?" Tang Cholson was somewhat surprised to see the village chief holding hands with a little girl and 2 village boys. He raised his head and introduced himself, "I am Tang Cholson, the head of the Tang clan in Sichuan. We came here for a reason." While everyone was talking, Soryong quietly observed the surroundings. He secretly judged that this village was really lifeless, and the children had no energy either. Suddenly he thought of something strange and wondered, what was the condition of these people? Looking around, he saw everyone looking gloomy and thought, had they all been drugged? The village chief spoke up, "I don't know about the disappearance because nothing happened." His face changed and he said, "Go back." Tang Cholson tried to persuade him, but it seemed like there were fewer people in the house. The old man shouted, "This was not something these people needed to worry about, go back." Both Tang Cholson and Soryong were surprised by this attitude. Tang Cholson turned to speak softly, "Young warrior, apparently heard the people here are very friendly." He also didn't understand and replied, "Yeah, so." Just then, the child that the village chief was leading fell down. The old man cried out in panic, "Mi Jin," he thought, "fell down?" The old man panicked and burst into tears. "Oh my god, Mi Jin. This can't be, my only remaining relative is you," the old man said in pain. "How could you also have such a terrible disease?" Tang Cholson knelt down in front of the old man and asked, "Elder, I know a little bit of medicine, can I help you?" The old man asked again, "Medical skills from the Central Plains?" He replied, "Yes, although I am not a doctor, I have some knowledge of medicine. Can you take a look at the child's condition?" The old man quickly agreed, "Relying on you." The village chief began to tell the story. In fact, some time ago, a terrible disease appeared in the village. Children were dying one by one, and adults were also sick and getting weaker and weaker. Tang Cholson comforted, placing his hand on the old man's shoulder. "I see, let me take a look." The old man's eyes filled with tears and he said, thank you very much." The village chief told them, "Please go inside quickly," then shouted to the villagers, "What are you waiting for? Quickly bring the doctor and everyone inside." The group hurriedly ran inside. As they ran, Soryong asked the disciple, "Senior, do you also know medicine?" He replied, Yes." He explained that our Tang clan's martial arts involved handling poisons well, so we were also quite proficient in medicine. Furthermore, martial arts started from understanding the body, so we also needed some knowledge of medicine. He suddenly had an idea. "I thought it was just an assassination group that specialized in using poison, but joining the Tang clan Sichuan, Besides learning terrifying martial arts, learning medicine is also very interesting. The somewhat cruel disciple immediately continued, well, sometimes we catch bad guys and inject them with poison to test their reactions, which is quite interesting. Hearing that, he was shocked and wondered, was this an experiment on the human body? He thought of Tang Chulsin and that group of bad disciples and shivered, thinking to himself, that seemed a bit too much, they were indeed scary people. The sky was still overcast, the first rays of the new day began to shine on a house. Mi Jin lay motionless but her whole body radiated a green, uncomfortable aura, her eyes tightly closed. Tang Chulsin briefly explained to the village elder, first, I transferred internal energy into the person to stop the breathing, the old man replied, oh, thank you. The old man patted Mi Jin's head and said sadly, this is my only granddaughter, please help me. Tang Chulsin asked, it seems like the blood vessels are unstable, how strange, the child's heart has been weak since birth, right? The old man replied that the illness had only gotten worse half a year ago, and not only my granddaughter but many others were also suffering from the illness. The old man explained, we call it a terrible disease, I told everyone to turn back from the main gate just now for this reason. Soryong immediately understood and exclaimed, so that's how it is. Tang Chulsin asked, elder, I will first prescribe a medicine that is good for the heart, please gather everyone in the village to help me test the medicine. The old man was moved, sobbed, and thanked him, the old man thanked him again, and I was very grateful. Soryong quietly observed Tang Chulsin with a gentle smile. As night fell, one of the disciples called out softly, Master. The disciple said, you have worked hard to treat everyone. Tang Chulsin replied, thank you, Ji Pei. He asked, how are the patients? He thought for a moment and said, that is really strange. He analyzed the symptoms, weakness, eye swelling, unstable blood vessels with mild fever. Symptoms were different but the seriously ill people all had heart problems. Suddenly he remembered and asked, what about that young warrior? Ji Pei reported, that young warrior seemed tired after supporting everyone so he fell asleep, I brought him to the restroom. The image of his disciples carrying him to rest appeared in his mind, the disciple sighed, the young warrior had tried his best, he said, with this body type that had not practiced martial arts and following us would be very tiring. He added, while we're at it, we should go see what the young warrior's complexion is like. Ji Pei replied, let me take you there. The door to the room gently opened, inside Soryong was sleeping soundly and unaware of anything. Tang Chulsin did not enter but stood outside and quietly observed. Suddenly he pushed the door open, hurriedly walked to the boy's bed, his hand quickly came down and slapped him hard, making him scream in pain. Soryong woke up, looked at him with anger in his eyes, and exclaimed, Senior. He also wondered why this happened so suddenly. And just then Tang Chulsin's sudden attack made him flustered. He held his cheek, confusedly said, what is this, then pressed himself against the wall wondering, what is going on? Senior, it hurts. Tang Chulsin immediately lowered his voice, sorry, I just wanted to catch a bug crawling on your cheek. Soryong asked, a bug? Tang Chulsin said awkwardly, listen to me. He looked through the crack of the door and said, I just wanted to visit you for a bit before I go to bed. Suddenly, Tang Chulsin found a bug and said, yes, suddenly a bug flew and landed on your face, you know. He pointed at the bug with a sharp gaze and said, there are many poisonous insects on Huin Island that I don't know much about, so they're quite dangerous, so I unconsciously swatted them. Tang Chulsin held up the bug in his hand and said, look, this bug is this big. Soryong looked at the bug in his hand for a moment, then suddenly said, this, he thought to himself, wait, why is this bug here? He seemed to have discovered something. Soryong asked, Senior, although the patient has many different symptoms, they all seem to have some abnormality, right? Tang Chulsin confirmed, yes, he said, the reason why the terrible diseases are spreading in this village. Soryong pointed at the bug in his hand and said, it was caused by this bug. Tang Chulsin exclaimed in surprise, what? Kissing bug, this is a species of Eradicating family. It is so called because it often sucks blood from the eyes or lips of sleeping people. This type is agile and even faster than mosquitoes. Hence it is also known as vampire or assassin bug. Soryong wiped the blood off the bug with a towel and said, the bug itself is not poisonous but its stomach is full of harmful parasites. He continued, when bitten by it, people will be infected through its waste. Trypanosoma or Chagas disease is the disease it causes. It is one of the 7th leading causes of death among species and humans. Soryong asked, village chief, do the dogs in the village have shortness of breath or other symptoms similar to humans? The village chief replied in panic, yes, could it be because of this bug? Soryong sighed and replied, maybe so but not sure. The old man wondered, if that was the case, could my granddaughter be saved? Soryong replied, if there was medicine, it would be possible, but... Tang Chulsin laughed softly and asked confidently, Ji Pei, how do you see me looking at people? Ji Pei happily replied, indeed, I have realized the value of young warriors. Soryong turned to wonder, why are they like that? Tang Chulsin spoke, young warrior, please join our Tang clan Sichuan. Soryong was stunned, and replied, yes, Tang Chulsin confidently said, I mean please join our Tang clan Sichuan. He completely did not understand and muttered, why is that? He explained that there was a type of parasite called the ancient worm, known as venomous parasites or witchcraft, that was raised by the evil people of the Central Plains. Tang Chulson continued, those evil people made people swallow this type of bug and periodically caused suffering or used it to control people according to their will. Soryong replied in surprise, it was scary to be able to control people like that. Tang Chulson asserted that, although the power was real, many martial artists had lost their lives because of this strange thing. He explained that some had murdered their own children, then committed suicide or betrayed their families to become slaves to evil people. The village chief standing next to him heard this and cried, oh my god, how pitiful for me Jin. Tang Chulson said, for a long time. Those in the martial arts have attempted to create an antidote to this strange disease, a medicine that can either expel it from the body or make it disappear. Soryong said in disbelief, it was unbelievable. Suddenly Tang Chulson took out something from his shirt and said loudly, if martial arts really had such an antidote, then where would they make it? He proudly took out a pill and said, of course it's from our Sichuan Tang clan. If this pill can dissolve a fist-sized tumor in the body, then are those tiny microorganisms worth worrying about? Tang Chulson took out the large, sparkling pill and said, curse melting orb, just a little bit is enough. Soryong's eyes widened in admiration, curse melting orb, he muttered, the name of the parasite killer is impressive. Then looking at the village chief who was in tears, he said, so please don't worry. Tang Chulson said, your niece can be saved. As a result, both the village chief's granddaughter and the villagers gradually recovered their health. The village chief hugged his granddaughter in joy, oh me Jin, what a blessing. The warm welcome from the villagers was a reward for their efforts. Looking at their cheerful faces, it seemed that the information about the female race's optimistic personality was correct. Tang Chulson patted Soryong's shoulder and said, if it weren't for the young warrior finding the cause, their benefactor wouldn't be me but this young warrior. The young men in the village said in unison, thank you young warrior, thank you very much young warrior. Soryong shyly replied, that, the people around shouted, the young warrior is the benefactor of our village. Even though he was treated with Tang clan medicine, Lord Tang Chulson gave all the credit to me and watched me receive gratitude from everyone. It was really touching to see him so happy as if this was his own. The young men of the village surrounded and tossed Soryong into the air in praise. After a while, the village chief approached Tang Chulson and asked him about the matter he had mentioned at the village gate. What was it, he wondered. The village chief said that people were searching for the village where the missing person was. Tang Chulson replied, that's true, but why ask? The village chief said with a worried look, I wanted to repay the favor, so I did some research and heard a strange story. Everyone listened quietly as he told the story. There was a girl in our village who had married from another place. A few years ago, a strange phenomenon occurred in the village where her parents lived, when people in the village disappeared one by one. Tang Chulson was shocked after hearing that. He looked around and muttered, there's a clue. Tang Chulson asked, where's that village? The village chief replied, there is a small village to the west. When everyone arrived, they saw only desolation. Tang Chulson covered his nose and said, there is a corpse. One of the servants beside him said, it seems to be that place, master. He suddenly exclaimed, what is this? The piles of corpses, not only human bodies but also skeletons, Tang Chulson said, shivering, there are also poisonous corpses. Poison is produced from decomposing corpses. A bearded man shouted, his spine shivering, don't let the young warrior see this scene. Soryong said, I've seen it all. And suddenly he noticed something and asked, what's over there? He saw the sharp claws and beak of a strange bird swallowing the severed head of a snake. He immediately raised the stone in his hand and said, we cannot let that bird insult the dead. He threw the rock at it forcefully and shouted, get out of here. Tang Chulson shouted, wait. The stone flew past and startled the bird. It slammed its claws on the ground, its eyes filled with murderous intent as it prepared to attack. Stop, something is wrong. The bird flapped its wings and flew into the air, carrying with it a murderous aura. Soryong witnessed the scene in horror as the two skeletons were swept away by black smoke and were slowly melting. He muttered, no way, it's melting. Immediately, a hand covered his mouth. Tang Chulson shouted loudly, everyone quickly made way, it was Zhenyao, and everyone immediately sat down in a circle. Tang Chulson explained that when it spread its wings, the Zhenyao could bring death to all. Its beak was as bright as copper and as sharp as a spear, and its body was covered in dark purple feathers. His two servants listened with serious faces. Tang Chulson continued, when angry, it spreads its wings and causes everything around it to become poisoned and die. Zhenyao is the name of this type. Soryong said, could it be? He shouted excitedly. Was that just one of the 10 great poisonous creatures? Tang Chulson nodded. Soryong's eyes were shining, full of excitement. Yes, that's the top one of the 10 great poisonous creatures. Zhenyao, the king of the 10 great poisonous creatures. He muttered, how terrifying, the poisonous insects and snakes on earth are just like cute creatures. Soryong was overjoyed when he saw Zhenyao and said, it really is a biological weapon flying around everywhere. It seemed to have been lured here by the swarm of poisonous snakes, the other three whispered, saying that Zhenyao only ate the heads of the most poisonous snakes. He asked worriedly, was this an omen? He replied, of course, it would be very difficult to see a Zhenyao in person in this lifetime. This was a rare species that no one had seen once in 100 years. Soryong was amazed and Tang Chulson asked, what's wrong young warrior, are you planning to capture it? This made the crowd surprised. He laughed loudly. Want to try to catch it, young warrior? He replied, okay, but looking at its toxicity, Tang Cholson just smiled and looked at him. Then he suddenly said, kid, it seems you are very interested in the 10 great poisonous creatures, if so there is a way. Soryong asked in surprise, is there really a way? Tang Cholson affirmed that if one successfully practices the Tang clan's poison technique, the body will become immune to all types of poison, and can even resist the poison of Jianyao. He continued to explain that in this world, only our Tang clan's martial arts have the ability to stop this poison. He pointed at his face and said, but, the problem is that our Tang clan does not teach secret techniques to outsiders. He emphasized, although I really want to help the young warrior, but as the clan head, I cannot violate the clan's rules. Soryong shouted excitedly, if I become a member of the Tang clan, can I learn it? And if I reach the realm of being immune to all poisons, can I really resist the poison of Jianyao? Tang Cholson confidently replied, of course, if the young warrior is determined now, I will wholeheartedly teach him and the introduction ceremony will be completed. Although the other's eyes were doubtful, only Soryong believed. He smiled mischievously, but if the young warrior hesitated too long, I would have to think carefully about this decision too, wouldn't I? Soryong felt excited and blushed. He firmly said, I agree to become a member of the Tang clan. I hope to receive your guidance, dear clan master. Tang Cholson laughed loudly, really, excellent. He patted him on the shoulder and said, from now on, you will be a part of the Tang clan. At the residence of the bloodhand Rakshasa Tak Linyang, there were footprints beside the poison. Suddenly someone spoke, the owner of the house. The bearded man handed over the book, saying, it was in the cave. Tang Cholson opened the book page by page and confirmed, this writing in blood was the secret manual of the bloodhand Soan Claw. Soryong was surprised, written in blood? He put away the book and said, let's go back. Wei Soryong wondered, are you planning to go to Sichuan? Tang Cholson replied, we need to get the inner core of that centipede and the secret manual. Soryong remembered the poisonous creatures he raised and asked, can I stop by the dojo for a bit? I want to release my friends. He replied, okay, I will also prepare your luggage. Tang Cholson turned back and said, then let's go. When Soryong looked back he suddenly realized something. He pointed at the cave and said, there is something strange. The bearded man wondered, what do you mean? Everyone looked down and one person asked, what is this? Everyone said in unison, this is the feather of Jianyao. All eyes turned to the feather that was emitting purple light. Tang Cholson put on gloves and picked up the feather to examine it. He opened the box to contain it and said, consider it a congratulatory gift for you becoming a member of the Tang clan. It seems you like it very much. Soryong was excited. Thank you, old senior. No, clan master. Tang Cholson turned back and smiled, saying, everything is fine, but I don't like this form of address very much. He continued, how about after the oath-taking ceremony, we change the form of address accordingly. Soryong suddenly muttered, ritual, like an initiation rite. At the same time, in the Tang clan Sichuan, Tang Museong was injured and the people of the Tang clan quickly came to wait for him. One person reported, Grand Patriarch, the land route has already set out and has now arrived. The old man shouted, hurry up, how is Huin? The subordinate reported, yes, she is still alive. The old man said, quickly take me to Huin. The door to the room opened, Tang Museong appeared and called, Huin. Everyone by the bed said in unison, Grand Patriarch. Madame Tang worriedly called out, father, he replied, daughter-in-law, I have brought the medicine back. Tang Museong took out the pill and said, this is the inner core of that centipede. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to control her emotions. You have succeeded. Everyone sat around, waiting for the old man to give Huin the medicine. Her face pale, breathing heavily, Tang Museong pitifully called, Huin. He picked up the pill and said, it was almost too late. Luckily I made it in time. Madame Tang urged, father, quickly give her the medicine. He slowly put the pill into Huin's mouth. A green aura emitted from her body. Tang Museong took her pulse. Then he continued to use his internal energy, while she looked at her beloved daughter with worry and whispered. Huin quickly woke up. Soryong sat down tiredly thinking, I had heard that the central plains were vast, but I couldn't believe it was this vast. From Hainan take a boat to Hangzhou. After passing Nanning, the 1.5-month-long journey finally arrives in Sichuan, in front of the gates of the Tang clan. The bearded man said, this is Tang clan Sichuan, young warrior. He was surprised, really? Before his eyes was the majestic Tang clan. The person explained that this entire mountain belonged to the Tang clan of Sichuan. That's why this mountain is called Tang Clan Mountain. Soryong couldn't believe his eyes. The people of the Tang clan rushed out and shouted, clan leader, you're back, welcome. This made him startled, muttering, are all these people from the Sichuan Tang clan, so crowded? Behind the crowd, a girl in red was running towards them, footsteps echoed, welcoming their return. Tang Cholson was surprised to hear the call, father. His beloved daughter, Huin, woke up and ran to hug him, sobbing. Tang Cholson happily called out, Huin, are you well again? She hugged him and said, father, I'm sorry. Huin turned to ask, is father's body okay? Soryong looked at her and muttered, this is truly the first time I have seen someone with such radiant beauty. He turned to introduce, I have someone I want to introduce to you. Tang Cholson said, Soryong, this is my daughter, Tang Huin. Soryong froze immediately. He continued, "Oh, I still remember what you told me. The smell of grass, the smell of grass." Huin heard that in wonder. Grass. Tang Chulson knocked her head and said, "Weeds?" making Huin surprised and blushing. The two looked at each other in silence. Soryong recalled his previous words, "My daughter, one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains," he retorted, "No, not that weed." He felt ashamed, being the poisonous flower, Tang Huin, the only daughter of the Tang clan. Since childhood, Huin has carried a deep inner suffering that few people understand. During a conversation between 2 elders, one said that her talent was still unclear, while the other praised her appearance, saying that she was not one of the 3 beauties of martial arts. Huin had to hide behind a tree, quietly listening to those comments. The bearded man turned his hat and said, "It is reasonable to just have a nominal son-in-law." The other man replied, "Since we have been told to take in more concubines, why does the master of the house object?" The bitter gossip entered Huin's ears, causing her to mumble, "No, mother, father is not wrong. She is determined to prove her abilities to the elders of the family by perfecting her martial arts. Even though she is not a man, she can still contribute a lot to the family." But her impatience led to mistakes, creating a heart demon that eventually caused her to fall into a coma. When he woke up, thanks to the medicine and Tang Museong's help, everyone around him was worried. Madame Tang said happily, "You survived, Huin." Huin burst into tears. "Mother, what should I do?" She sobbed, "I'm sorry, mother." In her heart she thought, "This is it, I used to want to become someone useful to the family." Huin looked at Tang Museong and said, "I have lost all my internal energy." Tang Museong grabbed her hand and said, "Little girl, aren't you feeling guilty for making your family suffer? You've already achieved what you've always wanted, stop crying and cheer up." Huin asked in confusion, "Yes, 100 poisons?" When she raised her hand, she realized there was a pale blue light emanating from her hand, which surprised her. Huin turned to ask, "Grandpa, what is this?" Tang Museong happily replied, "Huin, I have something to tell you. Not only save your child's life, but also help you the inner chi of 1,000 poisons." Huin wondered, was he stupid? The words made everyone laugh and tease, while Soryong was embarrassed and muttered to himself. But Tang Chulson standing beside him smiled smugly as he looked at Soryong, who was flustered. Soryong thought to himself, "Don't be so complacent." He smiled wryly. The family head was really funny. "Nice to meet you, young miss," he continued. "Hearing that you were sick, and seeing you healthy is really lucky." Huin replied, "Yes, then happily said, "Nice to meet you." Huin introduced himself, "I am Poisonous Flower, Tang Huin. Thank you for saving my life, young warrior, Poisonous Flower. I will never forget this kindness." Huin's introduction made Soryong captivated, secretly praising, "So beautiful." But then he was startled when he heard the question, "What?" Tang Chulson whispered, "This is voice transmission." He continued, "Even though it's just a weed, it's still beautiful, Poisonous Flower. Do you want to pick one?" After hearing that, Soryong blushed. The scene shifts to the bathroom, where Soryong is relaxing in hot water. The centipede sleeping in the pot, he said to himself, "We're dying." Seeing a centipede awake, he complained, "They normally stick to us all day, hot water is not good for the body. Would you like to come into the box for a moment?" They immediately went in as if they understood. Seeing that cute scene, Soryong thought, strangely enough, it seems like they understand some of the words. He smiled and said, "Staring at a naked body like that will make people shy." Suddenly, they panicked and hid in the box. He even laughed and muttered, "These kids are so funny." Soryong sighed, remembering what old Gu Pei said about centipedes. These creatures were considered sacred animals. He suddenly remembered Tang Chulson's words, "The poisonous flower is beautiful, do you want to pick it?" But unable to calm down, he decided to leave immediately. In the Tang clan everyone was sitting around discussing something. Tang Chulson picked up his teacup and said, "So we'll settle everything properly." Tang Museong shook his head. "Young warrior is so talented," he replied. "Yes, we have met fate, but this fate is thanks to young warrior." Tang Chulson continued, "This person's knowledge of poisonous animals was truly extraordinary. Not only did he kill Tak Linyang, but he also encountered legendary creatures like the Genyao." To everyone's surprise, Madame Tang and Huin both looked surprised. Tang Chulson said, "I heard that the young warrior personally hatched a blue spot centipede egg." Tang Museong laughed, "I didn't expect to let such a treasure go." Tang Chulson nodded, "Yes, father." Then he called, Huin. She was startled and didn't understand. Tang Chulson asked, "I want to take young warrior as my son-in-law, what do you think?" Huin wondered, "Do you mean you want young warrior as your son-in-law?" She exclaimed, if it was her son-in-law. But she suddenly fell silent, her eyes lowered, waiting for an answer. In her heart she thought, now that I have acquired the constitution beyond 100 poisons, the 1,000 poisons constitution, I want to prove that I can help the family even more. Finally, she spoke, "I am also a member of the Tang clan, so I understand what you mean when you say this." Huin slammed her hand on the table, loudly, but with tears streaming down her face, she asked, "Is the young warrior really worthy of you? You have to prove it yourself." After saying that, she ran out, leaving everyone in the room worried. Tang Chulson stood up, a bad feeling, "Be careful, young warrior." Looking at his daughter's figure, he muttered, "Poisonous flowers, although beautiful, also carry sharp thorns." Now I finally acquired the 1000 poisons constitution. If I stop here, I will not be recognized by the elders in the family. I will verify everything carefully about his character. Meanwhile, after taking a bath, Soryong sat outside enjoying the breeze and wondered, what's going on? Soryong, with a gloomy face, spoke up. I think I left a bad impression on the young miss from the big family. Soryong rubbed the blue spot centipede on his chest and asked, what will your father do? Suddenly from behind Huin called, young warrior, causing him to startle and cry out. As she ran over, she was out of breath. Soryong wondered, Huin, young miss. She replied, sorry to bother you, young warrior, I'm in a bit of a hurry. Seeing Soryong's bewildered expression, Huin asked, can you lend me your hand for a moment? Soryong immediately reached out and said, yes, young miss, but then he hesitated, his face reddening, and said, about this. He added in confusion, I don't know what young miss is up to, but maybe this is better left until we're closer, right? He continued in confusion that, well, because there needs to be a close understanding. Huin wondered what he meant, and when she heard that, she suddenly blushed. She said loudly, no, it's not like that, what are you talking about? Soryong sighed, muttering, maybe not. In the afternoon, the romantic sunset could not save the tense atmosphere between the two. Huin sighed and said, it's not like what you think, I just want to check your pulse. Maybe because I suddenly asked him to give me his hand, he misunderstood. Soryong smiled wryly, so it was because I didn't understand clearly. Huin sat down and said, first, I want to apologize to you for appearing suddenly and acting inappropriately. She looked at Soryong, noticing that he was very young, barely a teenager, but he showed maturity in his thinking, so she decided to explain about the current situation. Soryong stuttered, okay. After listening to Huin's explanation for a while, Soryong felt like he was experiencing a familiar historical drama. As the sole descendant of the clan, she had to constantly fight against the cunning plots of the side branches. In order to ensure the survival of the clan, the elders decided to select an excellent son-in-law. Soryong nodded, muttering, they even considered their position in the clan if they participated. Huin continued, so I want to apologize in advance, but there is something I need to confirm with you. She scratched her head and said, even if things don't go the way I want, I have no intention of mistreating you, you are my benefactor, so we will treat you like an honored guest, she added, or how about becoming sworn brothers? Soryong was surprised by the offer, held out his hand and said with a smile, I understand what you mean, please confirm anything. Huin was silent for a moment, then took Soryong's pulse and said, okay, then let's start. A strange aura suddenly emanated from her, surprising Soryong. Huin explained that not everyone could master the Tang clan's martial arts, and a few could accept poison and master the clan's secret techniques. On the contrary, she continued, there were those who were completely unable to do so. Huin relied on the highest tower system of poison, heavenly poison, 100 poisons, 10 poisons and 5 poisons, explaining that the Tang clan's poison techniques required the practitioner to slowly adapt to different types of poisons as his internal strength increased. Only by accepting everything could he gain thorough knowledge. After taking his pulse, Huin said, fortunately, his body has the ability to learn poison techniques, but... She turned and continued, it was just the 10 poisons constitution. This meant that his body could only withstand 10 types of poison. For someone who was not from the Tang clan, having the 10 poisons constitution was already a respectable thing, but... Soryong was stunned by that information. Huin stood up and continued, if we consider his overall strength, he could only be considered a first-class martial artist, which was the highest level that an ordinary person without innate talent could achieve. She bowed and said, sorry, I have to go. Soryong stood up and replied, okay, take care. He was pondering in his heart, am I really the 10 poisons constitution? He suddenly exclaimed, so I won't be able to catch Jianyao, this is really a serious problem. Huin stepped out of the bath, wrapped a cloth around her body and breathed a sigh of relief. She glanced at her body and wondered, why did her body give off such a strange scent ever since she absorbed the inner core of that centipede? She even bathed several times a day. After that, after putting on his clothes, Huin thought to himself, was it because he had spoken disrespectfully to his benefactor that he had to be punished? The scene shifts to Soryong's bedroom, where he is sleeping soundly, seemingly dreaming about something. Suddenly he found himself in a place with many cherry trees. From afar, he heard the crying, I am very grateful for his golden heart, young Miss Huin thanks my master. Soryong muttered, am I dreaming? A girl spoke up, no, it might feel like a dream, but it really isn't. Blue Spot Centipede knelt down on the ground and said, I am only borrowing the form of this young girl, the one who received the inner core of that of mine, to avoid scaring you. I am the mother of these children. Blue Spot Centipede. Soryong wondered, huh, Blue Spot Centipede? At his feet were cute children. Soryong panicked, you guys scared me, how come you guys were here since when? He looked at them and asked, so are they her children? Are they all girls? He knelt down on one knee and asked, but why do people enter my dreams? She hesitated, Then Blue Spot Centipede said indignantly, I was murdered, brutally, leaving behind my children. This grudge has reached the ears of the heavens. My soul remains in the inner core. She said angrily, when I cursed while appearing in the body of the girl who absorbed my inner core, the chance for revenge came and I appeared in your dream. Blue Spot Centipede said gratefully, Thanks to you I brought these children along, my benefactor. After listening to what she said, Soryong replied, I understand. He thought to himself, in the end, he was the one who revealed her location to someone else. With a worried look, Soryong said, I didn't do it on purpose but anyway, I was involved in the death of the blue spot centipede. Seeing her somewhat pitiful gaze, the blue spot centipede spoke up, Benefactor, if you don't mind, could you help me fulfill a wish? Soryong was holding a sleeping child and replied resolutely, of course, I will fulfill any of your wishes. She patted her child's head and said, can you take care of my children until they grow up? He wondered, but could a centipede, no, a toad, live independently after 2 molts from its mother's body? Blue spot centipede explained, that is true for lower life forms, but we are different. She patted her children and said, before the children of our race molt twice, they depend heavily on the flow of energy from their mother's inner core. After that, they will develop by absorbing the true energy from other living beings. Soryong wondered, but young Ms. Huin has absorbed the inner core, so does that mean they will need to be near her? She replied seriously, you need to understand our situation, my benefactor. Blue spot centipede asked, didn't I mention cursing that woman before? He immediately nervously replied, yes. She continued, because of my inner core, that woman's body was giving off a foul smell. Soryong asked in surprise, what's the smell? With an evil expression, the blue spot centipede said, I will not let any man get close to that woman, making her unable to have children. The prince repeated in shock, oh my god. She continued, if you want to break this curse, let my body absorb the energy from her inner core, who knows, you might be able to take this opportunity to conquer her heart. Soryong rested his chin on his hand and thought for a moment before smiling and replying, I don't think that's good, I don't want to take advantage of young Miss Huin's difficult situation. Blue spot centipede acknowledged, you are indeed a respectable person, she asked seriously, like if so how do you plan to overcome this challenge? It seems that woman is looking for a man with strong strength. She also noted that I cannot get the inner core of the 10 great poisonous creatures for you, because it has been absorbed into that woman's body. Soryong muttered, huh, the 10 great poisonous creatures? He said cheerfully, I have an idea, can you trust me? She wondered, what are you talking about? Soryong patted the child's head and said, just leave it to me, I think it will work. The next day, after hearing Soryong's story, Huin was surprised, so the scent from my body was due to the inner core of that centipede. He brought her child with him and confirmed that it was true, and if she left these centipedes near her for a few days to let them absorb the gas from her inner core, the scent would disappear on its own. She said shyly, I feel a little awkward asking this question but, Huin asked, you tell me this story without asking for anything in return. Should I ask you for something in return? Soryong smiled, well, I can't be so cruel as to take advantage of each other's difficult situations and I don't want to be a shameless person. She was surprised by the answer and then bowed her head in silence for a moment. Finally, she decided, okay, if that's the case, then I can't continue to accept your kindness without returning it, Huin said seriously, I will consider father's words. Soryong brother, I realize that there are things more important than talent or martial arts. Soryong scratched his head in embarrassment and said, I'm just saying that, but actually I've been thinking about this too, she asked, thinking about what? He smiled shyly, you said that I possess the 10 poisons constitution and have the ability to absorb 10 types of poisons, right? Huin sighed in confirmation, that's right. Soryong looked at the children and said, so if I can only absorb 10 types of poison, can I absorb the poison of the 10 great poisonous creatures in the Central Plains? Huin asked curiously, using 10 types of poison from the 10 great poisonous creatures? She blushed and muttered, so he wants to become the strongest person in the world, no way. For Tang Huin, one of the 3 flowers of martial artist, this was the first time a man had expressed his feelings so boldly to her. The sky was overcast, but rays of sunlight still filtered through the thick clouds, shining down on the cool roof outside. 2 people were sitting on the steps discussing something. Huin looked confused. She looked at Soryong and wondered, does the young warrior know what he is saying? He was silent under Huin's gaze for a while, then scratched his head and laughed loudly as if he didn't know anything and replied, I don't know. She became more and more impatient with this guy. Turning around, Huin placed both hands on her chest and confided, this path was truly full of hardships and challenges. It might take 10 years, 20 years, or even a lifetime to pursue. Soryong sat beside her with a foolish gaze, suddenly hesitantly wondering, is this matter that serious? Covering his face with both hands, he only let out a soft, embarrassed hum. Alright, young warrior Soryong, I heard you're only 15, in 3 years, when you come of age, it will be time for your wedding. With a naive look, Soryong listened to Huin talk about the future with the shy tone of a young girl. In the next 3 years, if you successfully subdue one of the 10 great poisonous creatures, you will probably gain everyone's absolute trust. Therefore, if everything goes well, the possibility of achieving your goal is very high. She blushed in embarrassment, tapping her fingers together and said, about the wedding, I mean. Then suddenly Huin stood up and shouted loudly, no matter what, I will always support you. This action made Soryong sitting next to him panic and move aside. After saying that, she didn't turn back but rushed out, only leaving behind a sentence, okay, I'm leaving. Soryong was still standing there, stunned, only able to utter a word, huh? Hurriedly calling out to the figure that was hurriedly running away, Huin young miss, she turned back, startled and asked, is there anything else young warrior has not said? Soryong gave an innocent smile, patted the spot next to her, her entire body seemed to radiate light from the 10 directions of Buddhas and said, it's about needing treatment, just stay for another hour, young miss, please try to stay before leaving. The words made Huin stand still, as if it were signs of cracking into pieces. She helplessly screamed at his stupidity, her whole body stiffened, her hands clenched, and she walked step by step back to her original position. Her face was red with embarrassment, while Soryong thought she was afraid of the little worms on her body, hastily reassuring her, don't worry, they absolutely won't bite people. After saying that, he turned to the worms in his hand and called, come on, my dears, okay. They also raised their heads in response. Soryong translated their words, making Huin beside him startled. She didn't listen to her father, but wanted to talk to her mother. There is much joy and happiness in repeating the important keywords, is it father? Mother? Hearing that, Soryong panicked, a strong denial came from him, no, that's not it. In the study, the three parents sat across from each other, discussing seriously. It seemed that the young warrior's talent still couldn't conquer our daughter's heart. Tang Museong asked Madame Tang in a serious voice, this morning, did you see something fishy between them? Hearing this, the old man fell into deep thought, stroked his white beard and said softly, all right. Tang Cholson was silent for a long while. Tang Museong coughed a few times, regaining his voice. Forcing a marriage would be inappropriate. It was better to let the two people's feelings develop naturally. Madame Tang immediately had an idea and looked at her husband. Why not give the job of teaching martial arts to young warriors to Huin? Seeing each other often, who knows, maybe feelings will develop. Tang Museong replied, it was indeed not a bad idea. Hearing that, the Tang clan leader nodded. Then, we should find out if the elder healer sage can bestow the grace of the purifying elixir of marrow and essence. If there is a chance, we can shorten the distance between the two. Tang Cholson worriedly reminded him, but Huin was not very keen on that matter. Father, I'm afraid you're expecting too much. The old man folded his arms, snorted coldly, closed his eyes and said indifferently, let's just try it. Then he reluctantly agreed, that was it. Outside the door, a familiar figure appeared. Father, little Huin asks to see you, she shouted from outside, startling the three people in the room and causing them to mumble. Huin, why is she here at this hour? Tang Cholson regained his composure and opened his mouth to say, come in. She didn't hesitate, pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing the three serious parents, she was a bit confused and swallowed her saliva. Huin leaned back and stuttered. Everyone turned out to be here together, causing the other three to stare at her, not understanding. She stood up straight, clasped her hands respectfully and said, I came here because I have something to tell you. Something to tell you? Tang Cholson asked in surprise. Thinking about what she was about to say, she felt a little embarrassed, her face flushed, her throat stiff, and she stuttered. I will do as my father told me. She clasped her hands together to gather courage and spoke in one breath. Tang Cholson could only let out an "oh" sound, his face stiff, unable to process what had happened. After a while, Tang Cholson hesitantly asked, What did I say? What do you mean? Madame Tang happily pulled her daughter closer, wanting to hear Huin's stammering words. That was that. She was so impatient that she added, perhaps the young warrior Soryong had caught her daughter's eye. She stiffened, her gecko-like face changing color. Just when she calmed down a bit, she blushed again in the joy of her two parents. Oh, why so suddenly? She clearly said she didn't like it before. Her father was so straightforward that Huin didn't know how to respond. She tapped her fingers together to show her confusion. Only after a while did she dare to speak. Young warrior Soryong, because the young warrior had promised to become the best in the world. He had sworn such an oath. The statement made the two parents excitedly ask again, what? The world's number one? He stroked his short beard, interested, and said, can you explain that a little more clearly? As per his father's wishes, Huin told the story honestly. What he meant was that although his natural talent was not outstanding. However, for my sake, the young warrior swore to subdue all of the 10 great poisonous creatures and promised me that. The Tang family head laughed at the somewhat strange but proud words. What? The 10 great poisonous creatures? That kid really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Her mother also joined in teasing. Oh my god, is there such a person in this world? Making Huin's face burn like a boiled shrimp. However, a second later she regained her composure and explained, although she had already agreed in her heart, but the marriage would not be approved until the young warrior Soryong grew up and was able to subdue one of the 10 great poisonous creatures. Do you understand me? She glanced at the three of them to check. Both parents happily agreed. Just a few poisonous insects and you can't do it? If it's my daughter, she'll have to do it to that extent. Madame Tang also agreed. But men don't seem to be very perceptive, right? Hearing her mother say that, Huin suddenly understood and asked, then do you need me to explain again? She patted her little daughter's head, gently instructing, actually, didn't the young warrior realize that this matter had already been agreed upon? Why don't you try a little harder for my daughter? Tang Museong also happily said, then first, let's treat him like a son-in-law. Looks like we need to pretend not to know about this. If he tries so hard, he will soon become part of our family, and then they will be satisfied. In another place, Soryong's hand was tightly held. He excitedly shouted, truly admirable, benefactor. Haven't you completely conquered her heart? The compliment made him feel embarrassed, scratching his head and smiling awkwardly. Well, it's just courage and determination. The face was identical to Huin's smiling face, except that on its head was a green diamond-shaped gem. After a minute of silence, it said, "Benefactor, perhaps today will be the last time. The grudge has been resolved, so my soul will soon be liberated." Holding the 3 children who were jumping around, Soryong replied, "Yes, I understand." Standing still with the hair blowing in the wind, it asked, "Can I help you?" "If we can, we will do anything for you." He put his hand over his mouth, seemingly thinking, "In that case, if you don't mind, could I have a look?" With a sharp snap of his fingers, Soryong suggested. She blushed and held her shirt tightly, thinking to herself, "My benefactor is indeed a real man," but on the outside she hesitantly agreed, "Okay." Then he did not hesitate to pull down his shirt and wondered. It seemed that his benefactor was weak to beauty. Seeing this action, he suddenly had a dark face and stopped in panic. "Wait, do I really need to take it off?" This time it was his turn to be confused, wondering in his heart, Could it be? The children automatically put on their blindfolds as they listened to the two. "I won't take it off, if that makes you more comfortable," Soryong shouted in refusal. No, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to see the shape of the blue spot centipede." Afraid of further misunderstandings, he asked frankly in its questioning. Only then did he understand Soryong's meaning and hesitantly said, "If that's the case then." A second later the cramped scene changed, his excited scream echoed everywhere, his body transformed dramatically. From a beautiful girl, it transformed into a giant blue spot centipede, and used a feminine tone to say, "If it's like this, would it be okay, benefactor?" Soryong let out a tired breath, his eyes shining with excitement. Really big. "Can I touch it a little?" he asked while rubbing his hands. Even the centipede was speechless. "You already touched it. Once you have it," Soryong asked for more, "can I keep it a little?" "Wow, how can the joints support something this big? It's true that when you walk, the front legs glow, right?" Centipede heard this and immediately waved his short front paw, shyly making an "ah" sound, wondering, front paw. Looking at the cute movement, he was excited. "Can I touch your leg?" Same question. Centipede was speechless for the second time. "You already touched it." Getting right to the point, Soryong became more and more agitated, asking questions in rapid succession. How strong was its poison? What about its eyes? Did it see with its eyes? Or did it still use its whiskers to sense? The 3 children were still blindfolded, but it wasn't because they were embarrassed that they couldn't bear to look at this scene. They could only give a vague answer, of course, then let out a panicked scream. Staring at the sharp claw, he clenched his fist and asked, "Then let me touch the poisonous fang just once." This made Centipede pause. It reminded him, that might be a bit dangerous. Hearing this, Soryong immediately used a cute tone to attack. "You said you would fulfill all requests." Centipede shook his head shyly. "Benefactor, what are you talking about?" Blue Spot Centipede thought to himself, "Are my daughters really okay?" His hand reached out, his face revealing a look of longing. This shell is so shiny," it concluded, "because things are really abnormal." Tang Cholson clasped his hands under his chin, his expression becoming gentler. He said, "That's right, young warrior. No, Soryong, I've heard the story from Huin. From now on, you are my son." Hearing his deep and powerful voice, he turned to look at Huin beside him in surprise. She also listened to her father's words, her small face smiling gently. Soryong knew that she wouldn't help him, feeling embarrassed and wanting to explain, "Yes, but there are still 3 years of probation." Before he could finish his sentence, Tang Cholson interrupted, not giving him a chance to refuse. "The wedding will be held when you grow up, that's for sure." Hearing that, Soryong helplessly waved his hand. "No, that's not what I meant." Madame Tang sat beside him, one hand holding her aged but well-groomed face. She quickly interrupted with a smile, "Oh my, son-in-law, Soryong, once again, welcome, I am your mother-in-law." Even Clan Master Tang joined in the fun. His hair and beard were already white but his eyes still lit up when he looked at him. His face was smiling happily. Now that Huin has found someone he likes, from now on, our Tang clan will only have good things happen. Seeing that everyone in her family was supportive of their marriage, Soryong didn't know what to say. He glanced at Huin and softly called out, "Huin." She didn't answer, but a smile appeared on her small face. He thought he was seeing things, but when he looked closely, he saw that her expression had returned to cold indifference, which surprised him. What was going on? It was clear that Big Sister had already set the conditions for the marriage, so why was she now speaking as if she had already accepted? He still didn't know what the current situation was, but he secretly decided to go along with her wishes for now. Thinking of that, Soryong regained his composure, scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. "Yes, I hope everyone will help." He thought that after this sentence, the atmosphere would become more awkward, or at least he would be the only one who was embarrassed, but Elder Tang and his son didn't pay any attention to him. The 2 elders of the family just smiled and discussed with each other. "Let's get to work, right? Let's get started." This scene made Soryong's heart have a big question mark. After discussing with his father for a while, Tang Cholson looked at Soryong and said, "Before you learn the Tang clan's poison technique, I have something to show you." Soryong turned around in surprise and asked, "What is that?" Seeing his cute expression, the 2 adults looked at each other and laughed. Tang Cholson, as the head of the family, with a serious look, said to him, "Chamber of 10,000 poisons, I guarantee that you will like this place." The 4 members of the Tang clan stood in a row, giving way to Soryong, who walked at the back, following the old Tang clan leader. While he was curiously observing the scenery around the backyard, Tang Museong spoke up. "We have been waiting for this moment," Tang Museong happily said to Soryong. "The moment you officially enter the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons as a member of the Tang clan. This is our tradition, the whole family comes here together." Soryong excitedly replied, "I am also looking forward to it, Grandpa." Suddenly his breathing became rapid, and his face flushed with excitement as he prepared to enter the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons to witness the wonders. He thought, the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons was probably a place where countless types of poisons were stored. This was really fascinating. Before he could stop thinking, Soryong suddenly looked at Huin and couldn't believe his eyes when he saw her. A beautiful young woman was standing out under the morning sunlight. She had an attractive beauty with perfect curves, making him secretly admire. "Oh my god." His face flushed uncontrollably and he thought, indeed, the beauty looked even more beautiful from the side, like a painting. Huin's parents had been observing his reactions for some time, and instead of blaming him like many other parents, they chuckled when they saw their future son-in-law almost falling for their daughter. Tang Chulson suddenly teased, "Young man, if you stare at me like that today, my daughter will be afraid. Now that you are our family, why are you still standing there in a daze? It seems like our son-in-law is infatuated with Huin." Huin reminded him, "Soryong, you have to look at the road, right?" And he was confused and embarrassed to answer. A moment later, in front of a room built into the mountain, there were three very muscular-looking guards. As they approached, a bearded man and a beardless man with bulging muscles stood guard with stern expressions. Suddenly, a warrior came forward, clasped his hands and said, "You have arrived, Grand Patriarch." Tang Museong immediately replied, "I want to show my son-in-law the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons. Open the door." The three guards quickly responded and signaled that it was clear. Soryong looked around in surprise. The security here was much stricter than in the Middle Ages. After receiving the order, the only person in uniform there shouted loudly and opened the door. The two guards immediately used all their muscle strength to open the giant door. It took a great deal of strength to open it. The guard asked, "Why did you open the door so early today?" Soryong looked at the two strong soldiers in surprise. Seeing how hard they had to work, he thought to himself, did it really have to be so hard just to open the door? When the two doors were fully opened, the two guards were panting and sweating profusely. The guard, feeling that everything was ready, turned back and signaled for them to come in. Tang Chulson quickly nodded to Soryong, "Let's go in." As soon as he entered, he explained, "This iron gate is forged from Kunyu steel, sourced from the southern wilderness. It is a great honor to open this gate." Soryong replied in surprise, "Is that so?" When everyone was inside, Tang Chulson proudly said, "We have arrived." Soryong opened his eyes wide and looked around in surprise. Tang Chulson continued, "This was the treasure trove of all kinds of poisons of the Tang clan Sichuan." Tang Museong reminded, "This is the Hall of 10,000 Poisons of the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons. Be careful, don't touch anything." Soryong asked curiously, "So this is the Hall of 10,000 Poisons?" "It is contained in bottles and medicine bags." Tang Chulson quickly replied, "Yes, there are many different types of poisons here, such as paralysis poisons and sleep poisons." As he spoke, Tang Chulson kicked Soryong's leg towards Huin and said, "Huin, explain it to Soryong. My son-in-law will definitely like it better." Madame Tang beside him also agreed, "That's right." Huin did not object but just blushed slightly and replied, "Yes, father." After saying that, she pulled Soryong to look around the Hall of 10,000 Poisons and said, "Come here, I will show you the strongest poisons of Tang sect." The more she spoke, the more embarrassed she became. This was chi-dissipating poison, a poison that martial artists had to be extremely careful of. If inhaled, one would be unable to use internal energy, so be careful. This was also alimentary canal necrotizing poison, spirit-destroying poison, bloody pulp poison and 7-step soul-snatching poison. Seeing their daughter pointing out the countless powerful poisons of the Tang clan, Huin's parents smiled proudly. Both of them were very cute. Meanwhile Huin became serious and said, "All of them are strong poisons, but the strongest poison of Tang sect is another type." Then she gave Soryong a small bean and said, "Take this, Soryong." Looking at the tiny bean in his hand, Soryong still asked vaguely, "This?" Huin explained that, excluding the poison of the 10 great poisonous creatures, this was the most powerful poison in existence. She added that this was the herb that symbolized the Tang sect, the seed of the castor plant. Soryong was at first confused and wondered, the seed of the castor plant. Actually, this is ricin, an extremely strong toxin, just 2 milligrams is enough to kill an adult. He was still surprised and exclaimed, "It is 100,000 times stronger than cyanide." Huin smiled and said to him, "This is the poison closest to the target, colorless, tasteless, invisible of Tang sect, so this poison is golden poison, the most precious poison." She continued to explain, "And killing people with this poison is called a golden death." After listening, Soryong suddenly felt like there was a raging fire around Huin, and at the same time, he heard her say, "Remember, Soryong, the strongest poison is not necessarily the most painful or gruesome poison, but the poison that kills silently and surely. The Sichuan Tang clan's poison technique is aimed at that, silently and surely." Suddenly, images of the people in the family surfaced in Soryong's mind, making him realize that it was a family of assassins. Just then a voice interrupted their conversation. "That was enough. Tang Museong spoke from afar. Next, let's go see the poisonous animals that Soryong was looking forward to. Soryong immediately became excited, talking about poisonous animals. The old man also encouraged him, if you like, you can manage them, the clan will support you in everything. Soryong was so excited that he stuttered and asked, really? Support my hobby? Tang Museong quickly called everyone, then we go now, but before he could finish his sentence, urgent news came from afar, causing them to stop. Master, there is an urgent matter to report. Ji Yu Pei ran to Tang Cholson in a panic and asked, Ji Yu Pei, what's wrong? After catching his breath, he announced, you need to come to the Black Tortoise Pavilion immediately. Tang Cholson asked curiously, Black Tortoise Pavilion? Why go there? Ji Yu Pei quickly explained, the clan elders were waiting. Hearing this, Tang Museong angrily shouted, what? Them again? Soryong suddenly remembered, were they the elders she mentioned? Ji Yu Pei quickly added, there are two things. First, the medicine we sent to the Sichuan city lord is not effective, he has sent a letter of complaint. Second, he glanced at Soryong, looking awkward. Soryong sighed and suddenly said frankly, it was the story of the chamber of 10,000 poisons. Tang Museong was not surprised when he exclaimed, the news spread so quickly. After saying that, he and everyone left immediately, not forgetting to remind Soryong, let's go, son-in-law, you should follow me. Finally, at the Black Tortoise Pavilion, where many old people were chatting. As people arrived, one of them suddenly called out Tang Cholson's name loudly. Before they could even greet him, they started scolding him. How could you decide such an important matter on your own? How could you marry our precious granddaughter Huin to an orphan of unknown origin? Tang Cholson asked angrily, orphan? No origin? He exploded in anger and defended Soryong, are you guys insulting my son-in-law? The crowd quickly retorted, no, that's not it, but it was the truth. Tang Museong approached and asked, I'm the one who decided, do you guys have any opinions? The senior replied in confusion, Grand Patriarch. Soryong heard the malicious attack and was displeased. He said, Grand Patriarch, please advise the family head, I just agreed. Seeing the smile on Soryong's face disappear, Huin softly apologized to him for the inconvenience today. Soryong sighed, oh dear, and thought to himself, I made her worry again. While the seniors were still arguing, Soryong suddenly spoke up, sorry for interrupting the elders' conversation. He said seriously, this seems to be due to my poor ability. Immediately, he patted himself on the shoulder and shouted loudly, if I can demonstrate my ability, will the elders accept it? A senior from afar became surprised and asked back, what? With a confident look, he declared, for example, solving the Sichuan city lord's difficult problem. Huin and Madame Tang beside him were worried about him and panicked, Soryong, what are you going to do? Although I am not a person who likes to show off, if anyone dares to interfere with my peaceful life with my pet, I will not forgive them. In the great courtyard, everyone was in an uproar because Soryong dared to argue with his elders. Seniors, you dare to do that? A silver-haired elder spoke loudly, the elders are talking, a brat like you dares to interrupt? Many others also joined in criticizing you, that's right, moreover, do you know the content of the Sichuan city lord's letter and dare to say that? Huin and Madame Tang watched the argument from the side and Madame Tang said, Master, he has no background and yet he dares to interfere in our affairs, that's why we have nominated a young man from a prestigious family to be our son-in-law. Soryong felt frustrated when he heard those words, thinking to himself, I can't stand to listen to these old men anymore, they're too much. Recalling the livestream along with the positive comments he received from more than 1 million followers and an average of 3,000 live viewers. Soryong confidently replied to the elders, I heard that the elders still haven't recognized me as the son-in-law of the Tang clan, so I'm still a guest. Soryong continued to express his opinion, making Tang Cholson beside him also amazed. Moreover, he not only helped Huin, the treasure of the Tang clan, he also saved the life of the clan leader by destroying the blood-hand Rakshasa Tak Linyang. He clasped his hands in respect and continued, the elders dared to insult their benefactor and honored guest right in front of them. Was that the etiquette and manners of the Tang clan? In the world of streamers, it was not uncommon for Soryong to face attacks from many people. This had become a familiar part of his life. Armed with rich experience, he easily handled the situation in the blink of an eye. The elders who had just gotten angry suddenly shifted. One of them coughed, rubbed his neck and mumbled, it wasn't like that, maybe because we were a bit hasty, we said something wrong. Soryong tilted his head slightly, revealing a contemptuous smile, thinking to himself, so useless. However, there are still some skeptical opinions, but the bloodhand Rakshasa Tak Linyang, destroying him is really too unreasonable. Tang Cholson, a Soryong supporter, brought evidence. Soryong did not lie, look at this. This made the gentleman beside him open his mouth, stammering, what? When the book was opened, everyone was shocked to realize that the content inside, the Bloodhand Soan Claw Manual, written in blood, was indeed from the blood sect. Tang Cholson smiled at his son-in-law, Soryong, show us the centipede. He obediently replied, yes, father-in-law, making the surrounding eyes even more curious, centipede. He called out his treasures, the bright light around his hand attracting attention, the babies. Cute little creatures appeared from his shirt flaps, squealing to prove their presence. The people around were all stunned, not believing their eyes. A golden centipede. Tang Cholson quickly explained, that was the child of the blue spot centipede my son-in-law is raising. If I said that they bit Tok Linyang to death, would you believe it? The elders couldn't help but be shocked by this information. Huh, blue spot centipede, can this young man really control them? Tang Cholson did not hesitate. If I cannot acknowledge this son-in-law, then what should I call him? Soryong beside him also could not hide his complacency. He also spoke to the creatures. Little ones, do not bite others. The elders were too surprised to say anything more. In the end, they changed direction. We never said no, it's just that there are procedures that need to be followed. Because you ignored them, the homeowner got angry. Tang Muziong sighed. Okay, I'll let the son-in-law matter go. But why are you against the chamber of 10,000 poisons? The elders argued again. He was not yet officially a member of the clan. How could we entrust the chamber of 10,000 poisons to an underage teenager? Hearing this, the old man also began to hesitate. That's right, he couldn't hand over such an important chamber of 10,000 poisons. Tang Muziong quickly came up with a solution. It's simple then, can you prove your ability? Soryong replied, of course. He confidently asserted that in order to prove himself worthy of the Tang clan, he would solve the problem the Tang clan way, and that was by using poison. Hearing this, everyone held their heads in fear. What? They started to gossip. Are you planning to poison the Sichuan city lord? We are talking about sending medicine, not killing someone. Even Tang Muziong and Tang Cholson looked at him with puzzled eyes. He asked again, bewildered, Clan Master, what do you think? In his heart, Tang Muziong thought to himself, he was really too weak. No, our Tang clan must use poison. The next day came. Soryong and Tang Muziong were practicing. The old man told him, challenge is challenge, but from today, you will start learning the Tang clan's 5 venoms returning technique. After hearing that, he excitedly cheered. But when he thought about having to practice, he wondered, is it still physical training? The old man replied, your body will adapt to martial arts as you practice. Tang Muziong continued to explain, Tang sect emphasizes practicality, therefore, you will learn things that can be applied immediately in real combat. He showed him a powerful family heirloom weapon. He introduced them one by one. They were hidden weapons, needles, coins, knives, and even swords and sabers. Although there were many other types of hidden weapons, these were the main ones. The old man asked him, do you know which hidden weapon is the easiest to use? He hesitantly answered, probably a dagger or a flying knife. Tang Muziong took note of the answer. Right, then which one is the hardest to use? Soryong looked at the small bag and replied, probably this one, because it has to be used for flour. The old man nodded. This time it was wrong. Wrong. The hardest to use was the needle. He was amazed. The needle? Because it was small and thin, so it was hard to throw? Since you have to remember exactly where you threw it, I'd better demonstrate while explaining, he explained. Soryong was surprised to see Tang Muziong pull out a brush pen, skillfully taking apart each part of the pen. In just a split second, the pen turned into pieces and flew through the air. Soryong was amazed as he witnessed it. It was as light as a feather, and also pure white. No one would have thought that something so soft could transform into sharp pieces to attack the ground. Tang Muziong calmly watched with his arms crossed, while Soryong fearfully pulled his legs up. Looking at that phenomenon, he was scared and thought to himself, these hairs are piercing my skin like needles. Round eyes wide open as if witnessing the feathers dancing in a sharp dance. Tang Muziong explained that Tang sect has a hidden weapon called Sky Obscuring Flower Rain, which is Tang sect's secret technique, covering the entire surrounding area with hundreds, thousands of the needles. At this point, he felt terrified. Did he mean to fight enemies while surrounded by needles like this? Furthermore, he wondered, if needles were everywhere, would there be nowhere to put his feet? The old man nodded. Yes, so you must remember not to harm yourself. Soryong thought to himself, oh my god. He asked again, so even the positions of the needles that were knocked away or fell by the opponent must be remembered? The old man nodded. Of course. He also added that if it was the 5 poisons, you should be able to remember at least 100 locations. Huin had already remembered 1,000 locations when she was a prodigy. Soryong heard that sweat poured out like rain, mouth wide open. The scene changes to a peaceful sky above the mountain top. The air is fresh and full of energy. However, Soryong is exhausted and lying face down on the floor. Huin approached and asked, Soryong, is this okay? He greeted back, Huin young miss. He asked her what she was doing, and she quickly replied, oh, I heard you were going to catch a hornet, so I was prepared. If you don't need it then. He immediately interrupted, oh, it's okay. I was going to wait, but if there's this thing I can catch it myself. She was surprised. Wait? Are you waiting for a hornet? Soryong continued. She would understand when she got there. Huin was still in a daze. So what? Soryong asked her, oh, do you know where the hornet's nest is? She replied, I found a nest. It's nearby. We can go there right away. She wondered, but, did you read the letter from the Sichuan city lord? He confirmed, yes, of course. After listening, she asked again, Soryong is young, so I'm a bit worried. Did you understand the entire content of the letter? He continued, of course, young miss, this issue is very important to Menzyang. Hearing that, she shyly advised him to stop. Enough. Then she asked more. He seemed to understand the problem clearly. Yes, the big thing that the Sichuan city lord is facing is helplessness. She complimented him. Soryong was really understanding for his age. He stuttered, well, because I live alone. Suddenly she ran fast, let's go quickly, leaving Soryong to hurriedly run after calling, Huin young miss. The two entered the deep forest, where the grass was lush and wild flowers bloomed along the roadside. Soryong was so attracted to a small animal climbing up that Huin had to quickly grab his neck to stop him. They stopped at a place, Huin said, we're here, Soryong, he replied, oh, yes. Look at that cave, they're definitely here. While wearing protective gear, Huin asked Soryong, but, Soryong, what's the point of finding a beehive without bees? He explained to his fiancée that although we were looking for a hornet, we were not going to catch one. She suddenly spoke, huh? The two of them searched intently through every crevice of the rocks. He looked deep into the cave and told her that the poisonous insects we were looking for usually lived in small beehives. Huin wondered, poisonous insects lived in beehives? He confirmed, yes, and when he saw something, Soryong happily said, luckily, this beehive seems to have it. With a quick movement, he used his chopsticks to pick up the small prey and shouted, caught you, little brat. This made Huin hide her eyes in surprise. She asked, Soryong, is that insect? He continued, yes, we are not here to catch a hornet but to catch this insect, he said excitedly. This animal will help solve the problem for the Sichuan city lord. Huin looked at the animal in Soryong's hand and asked doubtfully, Soryong, is this insect a ground beetle? Hearing her guess, he held the trembling creature up in front of him and happily replied, yes, that's right, he thought to himself, is it called a ground beetle here? He brought the insect closer to show her. It looked pitiful now with teary eyes and trembling body. He explained, this insect is often found in a hornet's nest, in the central plains. They are called ground beetles, while in Korea they are called blister beetles, belonging to the family Meloidae, Huin said in surprise. But why do ground beetles live in a hornet's nest? I don't know this, he explained happily, their life cycle is quite special. He then shared what he knew. The reproductive method of the Meloidae family is very strange. Normally, they will protect their eggs or create a safe environment for them to hatch, but this species does not. Their eggs, small and oval in shape and yellow in color, can appear anywhere from rocks to leaves. They can even be found in deserted or dense areas. They just lay eggs without any worries. Anyway, magically, the blister beetle larvae hatch and crawl to the highest place nearby. Once they reach the top, they will cling to each other and pretend to be a flower, but don't look for blister beetle larvae online. When a beautiful bumblebee flies around looking for nectar, if she sees them, she will happily exclaim, oh my, and think it is a real flower. The bee will continue her pollen gathering work, while the flower mimicking insects will become sinister as they learn what she will do next. Their evil hands will reach out to the bee, and the moment she comes close, they will quickly latch onto her, causing the bumblebee nest to collapse. He pointed at the ground beetle in his hand and said, I don't know why they choose bumblebees, but I heard that it's the best environment for ground beetle larvae to develop. Huin hesitated, so, is that so? She bent down and said sadly, pitying those cute bumblebees. Soryong smiled comfortingly, it was the law of nature, it couldn't be helped. She remembered something and said, but isn't this the kind of poison that burns the skin? I know if I eat too much I will die. He laughed and confirmed, yes, it can burn the skin. He describes the injury caused by the orange liquid from the blister beetle's body, explaining that, when it comes into contact with the skin, it creates blisters that resemble burns. She looked at the poor ground beetle, her face gradually turning red. She pursed her lips and covered her mouth, whispering, but it worked. He replied, yes, until the poison was eliminated from his body. Seeing her expression, he narrowed his eyes and joked, it could make a man aroused. Huin quickly turned around and ran away, her face flushed red. As she ran she closed her eyes and shouted loudly, okay, let's go back to the chamber of 10,000 poisons. Soryong shouted in surprise, wait, let me catch a few more. After a while, Soryong caught more ground beetles, then he said, we returned to the chamber of 10,000 poisons, and I instructed the warriors on how to make medicine. He looked at the people in front of him and slowly said, now, listen carefully. He held up a finger to signal, first, dry the ground beetle and grind it into powder, like that. Everyone's expressions gradually became serious. Mathematical formulas ran through their heads as they listened to his analysis. If they ate 3 servings, equivalent to 11.75 milligrams of poison, it would definitely be life-threatening. For every kilogram or 3.75 kilograms of body weight, if 3/10 or 1.25 milligrams of poison is eaten, half of the people who eat it will die. He looked at everyone and concluded, so let's make the medicine with a dosage of 1/10 or 3.75 milligrams, or about 10 drops of water, or 0.35 milliliters. After he finished speaking, he asked, do you understand? Everyone was surprised and silent, thinking to themselves, my head is about to explode. A man of the head opened his veil and slowly spoke. His explanation was very clear, the mathematics was excellent. He emphasized each word, I will definitely succeed. He cheerfully replied, yes, haha, I'm counting on you all. That night under the full moon, in a brightly lit room, a sound rang out. Unexpectedly the ground beetle had such an effect. After listening to his granddaughter's story about catching ground beetles and the story at the medicine room, her grandfather said, it seems we should also review the types of poisons that Tang sect possesses. Tang Huin also obediently replied, yes, I think so too. He gently raised his hand to his mouth and coughed, then continued to ask, is he still good at math? Tang Huin replied, yes, he divided one into 10 parts and said that it was equivalent to the weight of 10 drops of water. When he heard that, his face became serious. He gently rubbed his index finger and thumb together, then said in a low voice, really, remembering the boy's immature appearance, his 2 hairs furrowed. He continued, I thought I knew a lot about poison, but he surprised me even more. The more I learned, the more I realized he was a valuable asset to the Tang clan. Suddenly he turned to look at his granddaughter and asked with a questioning look, do you like him more than before? Tang Huin awkwardly replied, Grandpa, Grandpa. Her face flushed slightly, her eyes not daring to look straight at him. She clenched her fists and brought them to her mouth to hide her embarrassment, softly saying, I just feel like I was too hasty at first, so now I feel guilty. He closed his eyes as if he understood his granddaughter's feelings and softly said, okay, just behave well in the future. Then he asked again, but how to check the effectiveness of the drug? Hearing this, she was suddenly stunned, her eyes widened, actually, remembering what happened before, she used her hand to cover her blushing face. It felt like her face and hands were emitting heat, she said embarrassedly, the elders were too arrogant. Just thinking about Soryong's ugly appearance when he said that, the clan will punish them. She told her grandfather, he asked in surprise, what? In just a moment, he burst out laughing, ahahaha, what an interesting character. Tang Huin stood by the side without saying anything, but his face was still red. At this moment, everyone gathered in the large room, all paying attention to the warrior standing in front of them. The elders gathered, the candidates rested their hands on their cheeks, the candidates crossed their arms across their chests, waiting. The warrior placed a hexagonal wooden box before Soryong and said, Soryong, here is your medicine. He looked at the box on the table and asked, oh, what is this? The warrior clasped his hands in front of his chest and explained, we mixed licorice powder and honey to sweeten it, making it easier for you to drink. He thought to himself, how attentive. When he opened the box and saw the shiny black pill lying on the red velvet cloth inside, he asked, did you make it exactly as I requested? The other carefully replied, of course, Soryong-sama, we have followed the dosage you prescribed exactly. Hearing this, the elders outside were in an uproar. One of them said coldly, humph, you're exaggerating. Another person crossed his arms in front of his chest in agreement, as if he had created something special. The man sitting in the main seat closed his eyes, his majestic voice rang out, silent. He looked at Soryong and asked again, the medicine has been prepared, so how will you prove its effectiveness? He wondered, prove what? A strong hand slammed down on the table creating a loud noise and a voice shouted, of course there had to be proof. The big-bellied elder was the one who had just slammed the table. He stood up and shouted, how could I send an unproven poison to the Sichuan city lord? The person beside him also echoed, that's right, if something went wrong it would be very dangerous. Soryong looked at the warrior and asked, then there was no other way. The warrior nodded, yes, and searched in his pocket. The elders watched the move closely. The warrior walked up to the elders and placed a hexagonal medicine box similar to Soryong's in front of the big-bellied elder. He nonchalantly exclaimed, Then he picked up the pill and examined it, saying disdainfully, you want us to test the medicine? Who knows what's inside? The person beside him also silently reminded him, this brat was not only an outsider but also had dark intentions. Knowing that, Soryong just smiled meaningfully. Tang Museong was watching the play when he was suddenly pulled back to reality by a voice. He turned around in surprise and asked, what's wrong? Didn't you say that those who practice Tang's sect martial arts will not fear any kind of poison? Is that right? He nodded, yes. He clapped his hands happily, with a childish expression, continuing to tease, but why does he seem worried? Tang Museong touched his head, as if in agreement, hearing you say that, it seems like you're really a little worried, feeling that things are going in the direction he planned, seeing everyone's expressions become heavy. He cleared his throat and said, come on, you are all elders of the clan, you have reached the state of being immune to all poisons, he emphasized, are you afraid of a ground beetle poison? Indeed, the elder crushed the pill, the smile on his lips filled with confidence. Soryong's group couldn't contain their amusement as they saw each of them put the pill into their mouths one by one, and even scoffed, who would be afraid of such a low-grade poison? Another person quickly chimed in, exactly, you underestimated us. As soon as an elder swallowed the pill, he loudly threatened, if this pill doesn't work, you'll see what happens, we'll restore discipline in the family. With that he closed his mouth and chewed the pill, then swallowed it. The air became quiet, everyone waiting for the transformation from the pill. Time passed without seeing anything unusual. One person couldn't help but snort and point at Soryong, loudly saying, see? Nothing happened. Before he could finish his sentence, he was stunned as if struck by lightning when he saw his disciple suddenly raise his head. The elders all bowed their heads, the atmosphere was both silent and strange. That day, the family's discipline was re-established in a powerful way. Under the scorching sunlight, a voice rang out, send the medicine to the Sichuan city lord, this medicine is very effective. A moment later the elders left with strange looks on their faces, each one confused, their hands clutching the front of their shirts. Seeing them blushing and leaving, Soryong said, like Grandpa said, just provoke them about the poison and they will fall into the trap. He also laughed and replied, haha, those are the ones who still have some self-respect left, so there is nothing they can do. Grandpa smiled and reminded, but don't hate them, they did it just for the family, Soryong heard that and wondered, really? He closed his eyes gently. We are family after all, the boy obediently replied, I understand. At this moment, Tang Huin rushed in. She ran while worrying, Soryong, something big happened. Seeing her appearance, he asked, what's the matter, young miss? She bent over, breathing heavily, then opened her mouth, us. She slowly stood up, adjusted her breathing and said, our pet has a problem. You're surprised, huh? Suddenly his hand grabbed the boy's collar, his voice strong, son-in-law. His face was angry, his eyes were burning. He asked, what is ours? He grabbed him by the collar, veins popping out, and angrily asked Soryong, you two have a child? It seems I haven't taught you guys well enough. Tang Huin stood motionless beside him, both angry and embarrassed, saying, it's not a child, it's a centipede, the centipede that Soryong is raising. Only then did Soryong become stunned, his face filled with worry. He opened his mouth, but for a long time he couldn't say a word. Grandpa let go of his collar. He walked up to Tang Huin, and asked worriedly, huh? You mean centipede? She hurriedly explained, seeing that you've been practicing more recently, I asked you to take care of them. Hearing that, he thought to himself, is something wrong with my babies? In his confusion, his ghostly hand touched her chest. He said, let me see. At the grandfather's side, the granddaughter's annoyed voice rang out, ah, Soryong, isn't here. A moment later, the two saw a flock of centipedes lying obediently on the ground. Ignoring the red handprint on his face, he whispered, she said they suddenly moved? Tang Huin clenched her hands, speaking, everything has been fine since this morning, hopefully they don't hurt anywhere. He looked at the adorable face of the centipede lying on the ground and commented, the color was also transparent, the shell seemed strange. Suddenly his eyes lit up, thinking to himself, this is it. He happily smiled and said, Tang Huin, young miss, it seems there is no need to worry. Looking at the centipedes moving slowly, he slowly explained, they are just molting, just like snakes, when their bodies grow, they will need to molt. Maybe now is the time. Grandpa Tang Huin asked in surprise, molting? He leaned against the edge of the tank and nodded, yes. Suddenly a centipede rubbed its head on the ground, rustling sound rang out. Tang Huin hurriedly shouted, Soryong, look. Seeing the centipede with its new orange skin gradually emerging from its old shell, she exclaimed, head. When the centipede completely broke free from its shell, the old man's voice was filled with delight. Oh, how amazing. Tang Huin was also watching attentively. Suddenly she exclaimed, Soryong, the other two are about to molt. Another centipede also slowly emerged from its shell, the new orange-yellow shell soft and inviting to touch. The last one gently changed its old clothes, its whole body slowly moving. When he saw all three of them lying obediently on the ground, he happily said, they have all molted. Tang Huin's eyes lit up as he looked at them and spoke. It seemed like they had grown bigger than before. She turned to Soryong and asked, what are their names? He paused, names? He thought to himself, no. His expression immediately became serious. He put his hand on his chin as if he was thinking for a moment. Looking at the three centipedes on the ground, he considered himself smart and shouted, number 1, no. 2, number 3. Tang Huin heard these three funny names and immediately shook his head in protest, no. Thinking of the day when the tiny centipedes could soar in the sky, surpassing the high mountains, she turned to him and explained, if centipedes lived for 1,000 years, they would turn into dragons. They needed a more majestic name, more suitable for the shape of a dragon. Hearing that, he couldn't help but laugh and replied, ha ha, young miss, how could centipedes turn into dragons after 1,000 years? Grandpa heard the two people arguing and interjected, but oh well, 1,000-year-old centipedes are still called dragons. I'll call them heavenly dragons. Hearing his tone, he immediately understood where Tang Huin's attitude from before came from, and thought to himself, so it was because of his grandfather's teachings. He lowered his head to look at the three centipedes, thought carefully, and then spoke, names. After deciding, he turned to Tang Huin and said, let's call them Nova, Myra and Grace. She repeated in surprise, Nova, Myra and Grace. He slowly explained, the first one to be born was named Nova, the second was Myra, which means fragrance. The third is Grace, representing gentle serenity. Tang Huin looked at the three of them attentively, slowly repeating the names he had just given, Nova, Myra and Grace. The three of them were excitedly observing the centipedes. She said softly, usually the children's names are given by their fathers, right? So, the three centipedes have new names. Soryong walked down the street, his staggering figure drawing the attention of everyone around him. As he walked, he thought, another day has passed, with centipedes clinging to people, how tiring. He sat down next to a crate on the side of the road, opened his mouth to sigh, feeling his inner shirt was a little damp. He thought to himself, it seemed like his body was not completely dry yet, but he could move around now. He sighed again, oh, it still felt a little uncomfortable. Suddenly, centipedes came out from under his shirt. One of them touched his cheek and happily cried out, eek, eek, eek. He smiled slightly and thought to himself, you guys have gotten a lot heavier, the biggest change is your size. He lay on the cargo box, looking up at the sky, his cheeks already red from the friction. The centipede beside him gently cried out as if to comfort him, apologizing for being heavy. Another one joined in, eep eep eep, eep eep. He sighed, remembering how they had started out as small as sausages, but now they were as big as his arm. He felt happy watching them grow, feeling their every movement beside him. Thinking to himself, the little centipedes must have felt that I was too cramped inside, now they could only cling to his arm. Suddenly a loud laugh rang out in his ears, ha 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 ha, look, I predicted it correctly. He sat up straight, followed the sound, and saw two men, one tall and one short, walking down the road. The short man had a mole on his face, and held a small red bag in his hand. He smiled at the person beside him. It was indeed the Sichuan Tang clan. We need to observe carefully. The person on the right agreed. Let's go. He rubbed the head of a centipede clinging to him, and heard that loud laughter in his ear again. Making money is so easy, ha ha ha. He looked at it, wondering in surprise, what's going on? Looking up at the sky, he noticed that today was truly a beautiful day, with white clouds drifting gently. At the Sichuan Tang clan mansion, the scenery was as usual, the atmosphere extremely quiet. The homeowner cleared his throat, pleased. This was indeed good news. He looked at Soryong and asked, didn't you just send homemade medicine to Sichuan City Lord? He nodded and replied, yes. Thinking of his plump appearance, he was so happy that he cried. He approved by giving a thumbs up, then announced that he heard that the medicine had been used very well by him. Therefore, the city lord sent many rewards and thanks. The two people were very happy to hear that. He happily asked, is that so? Tang Huin's father laughed loudly. You just became a son-in-law and you quickly helped me benefit. You have done a lot for me. He smiled shyly, scratched his head, haha, it's nothing. Suddenly he became serious and spoke slowly, so while stroking the strawberry, he looked straight at the boy and said, I will give you the elixir, whether you humbly refuse or not. He was shocked and asked, what do you mean by elixir? He remembered what he had said before. He had said that elixir would increase internal energy. Tang Huin interjected, Father, what is that elixir? He replied, it's nothing big. He looked at the two of them and said word by word, golden-haired king bee honey. Soryong immediately thought of bees gathering honey, thinking, honey, honey, I heard that internal energy is very important to become a master, so I will accept it. Thinking so, he happily said loudly, thank you father-in-law. Tang Huin's face suddenly became tense, no longer happy. She spoke up, Father, she asked neither happy nor sad. Father said to give a reward but it was only honey. Her father saw his daughter's attitude and felt embarrassed. He stammered, that. Not letting him finish, she grabbed Soryong's hand and shouted angrily. This time, Soryong's matter could not be taken lightly. Although the golden-haired king bee was a mid-level poison insect, its honey was the lowest grade elixir among the elixirs. Soryong's reward could not be spared. He had made a great contribution. She frowned and demanded a reward for him, at least a panacea that would help increase internal energy for a year. Her father lowered his head and lowered his voice to explain, even though it was a spiritual medicine, the cost of making it was not cheap. Hearing this, she clenched her fists, her eyes shining like fire, gritting her teeth. Compared to the effort Soryong had put in, it felt too cheap. On the other side, her father avoided her eyes, coughed, and thought to himself, his daughter really grew up like water poured away. Soryong broke the silence, looking at him and asking, Father-in-law, what is a golden-haired king bee? He turned back, cleared his throat, and coughed. He thought of the large yellow beehive on the tree branch, the bees diligently flying back and forth to collect honey, and then explained. The golden-haired king bee is a mid-level poisonous insect, commonly found in forests, resembling a large bee, about the size of a small dog. According to experience, eating its honey will increase internal energy by 2 months. However, what interested Soryong was the size of the golden-haired king bee. His eyes lit up, and he asked excitedly, as big as a puppy, how interesting. Tang Huin saw him so happy and pinched his cheek to stop him. Soryong, wait a minute, I'm still angry. At this moment, her father spoke up again, somewhat embarrassed. Tang Huin, father didn't mean it that way. I thought Soryong would want to go directly to find the golden-haired king bee, so he chose that way. Hearing him say that, she was startled and thought to herself, directly? He quickly stood up and excitedly asked, Father-in-law, do you want me to go directly to find the golden-haired king bee? He nodded, confirming, yes. His breathing quickened, his face flushed with excitement. He thought to himself, directly go get honey. When I was a YouTuber, I went to get honey many times. He hurriedly ran towards the door and shouted, let's go, father-in-law, I'm very good at getting honey. He also laughed happily, ha 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 ha, I knew you would like it. Tang Huin sighed as he watched the two people leave, their conversation still echoing in his ears. Soryong asked curiously, what does a golden-haired king bee look like? Her father coldly replied, well, of course it looks like a bee. After leaving the Sichuan Tang clan, the journey to the honey collecting place begins. On the way, he thought to himself, since this was valuable information that his father-in-law had provided, there would definitely be no one to compete with. But when he got there, he saw two groups of people arguing. The one with the scar said, we got there first, so the golden-haired king bee honey is ours. The other one in black responded just as fiercely, what? We bought the information legally, so it's ours. Hearing that, Soryong's group couldn't help but be surprised, huh? The man on the scarred side questioned back, you bought information? We bought it too. Did you buy it from that shaggy-haired guy with a big mole on his face? The man in black couldn't hide his surprise. How did you know that? Anyway, we won't give in. Soryong's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly thought of the two people he had seen on the street, wondering, was it them? Soryong began to understand. they had sold the information to others. Tang Huin's father, who was listening to the argument at this time, felt so angry that his whole body trembled. He clenched his fists and bit his lips, cursing under his breath, "Those bastards." He shouted, daring to humiliate the Sichuan Tang clan right here, causing everyone to turn to look at the source of the voice. Shock was evident on their faces. One of them panicked and spoke up, "What? Sichuan Tang clan?" Soryong felt discouraged. "My honey plan." He recalled Tang Huin's father's reminder before the trip began. "Soryong, this is your first time going out, so be very careful and remember that you are a member of the Tang clan." He politely replied, "Yes sir." He looked at the people standing neatly below and said seriously, "Take them along. You need to learn how to use people." Soryong asked in surprise, "Yes, you told me to take them along?" He looked at Tang Huin and hesitantly said, "But young Miss Tang Huin." Not letting him finish his sentence, he laughed out loud, "Ha ha, this kid, Tang Huin is your person, you are her life partner." Hearing this, he blushed in embarrassment and stammered, "You, my life partner." Tang Huin also smiled happily and encouraged him, "You will do well, Soryong." She also added, "I will also help you," making him even more embarrassed and replying, I will try my best." At this moment, between the Sichuan Tang clan and those who came before, the atmosphere was tense with sharp gazes looking at each other. Soryong worriedly thought, "What should we do now?" He turned to the person beside him, Venom Blue Unit's leader Wolgang, asking for his opinion. "How should we handle this? Should we divide the shares among them?" Wolgang touched his chin, lowered his voice and said, "How should we divide them?" He stiffly crossed his arms in front of his chest, seemingly disapproving. Who were they to dare ask the Sichuan Tang clan to share? Tang Huin also agreed, although he didn't know who they were really bold. She glanced at the opposite group, her eyes filled with murderous intent, daring to sell the information that the Sichuan Tang clan had bought. The leader was startled. He recognized her and said in surprise, the poisonous flower, Tang Huin," causing the person behind to panic and exclaim, "The poisonous flower of Tang sect is here?" The leader immediately clasped his hands together, his teeth clenched, and he pondered. He lowered his head and said, "The Central Wind sect, we didn't know that this matter was related to the Sichuan Tang clan, so we will retreat." When the people around saw his actions, they were also surprised. Perhaps understanding the reason, they clasped their hands and bowed their heads, revealing, "Our noble origin sect, we also ask to withdraw." Another one angrily cursed, "Damn it, I will not let it go," then ran away. Looking at the people leaving like they were ghosts, Soryong was surprised. Running away like that, he couldn't help but wonder, was the Sichuan Tang clan really that terrifying? Seeing them disappear, he wondered, is it over? Wolgang calmly replied, "Probably not." He guessed, they must be hiding somewhere nearby, these guys won't retreat easily. And he turned to instruct his subordinate, Gupai, to locate them. Gupai clasped his hands before his chest, respectfully replying, "Yes, my lord." Seeing Soryong's worried face, Tang Huin reassured him, "It's okay Soryong." He looked at the mountains and forests in front of him and muttered, "My honey." At this time Tang Huin, Soryong and Wolgang were hiding behind a rock. Before them was a large tree, with large holes in the trunk, where several large bees were hovering. Looking closely, the bees are black and yellow mixed, with dense hairs. The swarm of bees continuously flew in and out of the tree trunk, the sound of their wings echoing. Soryong exclaimed, "It was the golden-haired king bee." Tang Huin was amazed. "This is the first time I've seen it, it's really big," he happily said, "Isn't it very cute?" Tang Huin nodded in approval, its fur looked really fluffy. Wolgang proudly added, "So-called golden-haired king bee." After observing for a while, Soryong guessed, even so, this colony seemed a bit small, only a few hundred. Could bees be that big? Hearing the strange word, Tang Huin asked in surprise, "Colony," he patiently explained, that was the term for a whole colony of bees. Usually a hive had between 5,000 and 7,000 bees. She asked in surprise, "You don't need to go in to know." Soryong replied confidently, "You can roughly tell just by looking at the number of people coming in and out at the entrance to the nest." At this moment, footsteps sounded from behind, causing them to turn around. Gupai knelt on one knee and reported, "Master, we have determined the location of those people." Wolgang asked, "Where are they?" Gupai hesitantly stated that, he recounted the process of monitoring, as expected, they were currently lighting a fire and waiting, unable to help but curse softly. Those damn things were indeed on the opposite side, although he couldn't see clearly what they were doing, they would definitely make a move. After hearing the report, Wolgang put his hand on his chin and pondered, so maybe they are waiting for the night to carry out the plan to collect honey using the Tang clan's method. Soryong asked curiously, "What is the Tang clan's method?" Seeing his interest, he explained that if we burn mugwort leaves and let the smoke drift into the hive, the bees will become more docile, then we can go in and collect the honey. Hearing this, Soryong nodded in approval, "Oh, this is indeed a clever method." Gupai beside hesitantly spoke, "But the wind is currently blowing towards us." The crowd looked up and saw the wind just as Gupai said, they all exclaimed in unison, While everyone was still feeling worried, Soryong suddenly clenched his fist and slammed it down on the other hand, happily exclaiming, "There it is." Gupai hurriedly asked, "Have you come up with a solution?" His face turned slightly red from the excitement of speaking his idea. "If the wind is blowing towards us, then we can hide the scent." Tang Huayin thought for a moment and replied, yes. Soryong immediately stood up, looked towards the tree and shouted, then I'll go for a while and come back right away. Hearing this, Tang Huayin panicked and shouted, Soryong. Seeing him running away, she hurriedly pulled her skirt tightly to hold him back and stop him. No, Soryong, the golden-haired king bee is a mid-level poisonous animal, very dangerous. Instead of being afraid, he became more determined. Just once, I will try to touch it and then come back right away. Suddenly a large rock rolled in front of them, causing both of them to cry out in fear, ah. The boulder continued to roll towards the golden-haired king bee's nest and stopped. Both of them were horrified at the sight before them. Soryong trembled and whispered, hic. From the tree roots, bees also quickly rushed out. They were full of murderous intent. Tang Huayin quickly hugged him tightly and pulled him to run in the opposite direction. Panicked, he said, let's run first. Soryong was hugged tightly by the neck and cried out miserably, The originally peaceful forest suddenly became chaotic and a tense atmosphere filled the air. Above, the mist was still drifting, the sky gradually turning dark. Soryong sat cross-legged on a rock, then sadly exclaimed, is there no way? He closed his eyes, trying to calm down and organize his thoughts. He needed to go against the wind to light the fire. But I was stuck between the 4 factions and the swarm of bees. Thinking of the bees with their fluffy feathers, he bit his lip, thinking, the golden-haired king bee is probably different from the bees I know. Opening his eyes, he touched his chin, remembering the scene where Tang Huayin had run away with him earlier, making his whole body shiver. Even from 30 meters away, he could still feel the sound of bees, but wasps were not to that extent. Suddenly someone called from behind, Soryong, come here. He turned around and saw that it was Tang Huayin, happily exclaiming, Tang Huayin young miss. She brought a few centipedes with her, 2 of them were on her shoulders, while holding another one in her hands and bringing it in front of him, happily saying, they seem to have eaten everything, they were flying around so I brought them here. Looking at the centipede continuously calling, he said emotionally, thank you very much, Miss Tang Huayin young. The centipedes flew towards him. Soryong said gently, they have become more gentle. Tang Huayin sat down next to him, although they didn't say anything to each other, the atmosphere was still warm. After a long while, Tang Huayin turned to him and broke the silence, did you gather anything more? He hesitantly replied, I just want to observe more. She immediately said apologetically, I'm sorry for rushing you, Soryong, just think calmly, there's no need to rush. Hearing this, he felt the pressure increase, he just silently laughed, thinking to himself, haha, he really is rushing me. Suddenly Tang Huayin looked forward and exclaimed, Soryong, look over there, at the base of that tree, far away, under the tree, 2 monkeys were fighting, while a swarm of bees were still flying around near the base of the tree, making a chaotic sound. She said, there are monkeys, are they fighting? He was surprised, is it monkeys? One monkey raised its arms and legs to threaten its opponent, its mouth continuously making threatening sounds. The other monkey was not to be outdone, responding with a fierce attitude. Tang Huayin witnessed the scene and covered her mouth, exclaiming, oh my god, they must be going crazy. Soryong just quietly observed. Suddenly a scent wafted past his nose. Soryong called out, Tang Huayin young miss. He looked around and said, there seems to be some kind of scent. He felt that the scent came from the golden-haired king bee nest. He cautiously guessed, this scent, could it be? His face instantly darkened as he thought of the speculation, perhaps, pheromones. He quickly pointed at the tree and shouted in panic, Tang Huayin young miss, we have to stay away, the bees will get angry and come here soon. Although he didn't understand what was going on, Tang Huayin still nodded, I know. She quickly stood up, hugged him and ran away like before, making Soryong a bit surprised at her quick reaction. As the 2 jumped high to escape, a loud explosion rang out from the ground, sending rocks and dirt flying everywhere. Tang Huayin hugged him tightly and landed on the ground, the 2 of them sliding on the ground. Her body froze, her face filled with shock at the sight before her. The swarm of bees rushed out like a storm, one of the 2 monkeys was crushed, the other one was groaning and gasping for breath. Large bumps appeared on the monkey's arms, and swarms of bees happily rushed to enjoy them. Seeing the 2 monkeys become a feast for the bees, Tang Huayin couldn't help but exclaim in fear, almost in trouble. He nodded in agreement, that's right. She turned to him, curiously asking, but, Soryong, how did you know the golden-haired king bee would attack? You clearly told me to avoid it before I heard their noise. Thinking of the scent coming from the tree, he stammered, it's because of the scent. She continued, what scent is that? Tang Huayin thought for a moment and said, come to think of it, it seems to be magnolia flowers. He was surprised to hear this name. Looking at her calm expression, he thought to himself, could it be that Huayin has the ability to distinguish pheromone scents? To verify the information, he asked, do you know the scent just now? Tang Huayin smiled and replied, oh, I know, then continued, the scent just now was similar to magnolia flowers. Before she could finish, he rushed over and grabbed her shoulders, happily saying, that's it. Tang Huayin shyly exclaimed, Soryong. Overjoyed, he buried his face in her shoulder and cried, feeling the closeness between them. Her face turned red even though she didn't know why he was crying. The centipedes hiding in his chest poked their heads out. Soryong raised his head and said with a smile, I have found a way, a method to wipe out the 4 sects and get the honey. Under the bright moonlight in the quiet night, people gathered around the fire, each group grilled their own food, surrounded by people keeping watch carefully. A man tilted his head back to drink wine, his face slightly red as if drunk. While smelling the fragrant aroma of grilled fish, after finishing his drink he wiped his mouth and laughed loudly. Hee, it's really delicious. A curious person across from him asked, so, when do you think we'll go get the honey? The man thought for a moment and replied, actually, I'm not sure, 3 days ago, I saw them running around, but now they've suddenly gone quiet. He guessed that maybe they were about to do something. The man with the scar also agreed, well, maybe that's true. Suddenly, he asked, but do beehives really make money? Have you been fooled all your life and you ask that? Royal beeswax candles are extremely precious, only the royal family uses them, they will only collect the honey and throw away the beehive, the rest of the hive will be ours. Thinking about that, he laughed sinisterly, if he failed then, haha, the other person rubbed his hands, imitating that laugh, wheezing. Thinking of the girl with cold eyes, he said softly, as for the poisonous flower, we need to be careful, don't let it cause trouble. Thinking of her beauty, he laughed, really not bad, that appearance, hee. The person opposite licked his lips, looking greedy, huh? Just thinking about it made me feel itchy. Another person joked, who knows, maybe one of us will become their son-in-law. A hateful voice rang out, oh, of course, since someone saved your life, you have to repay them. Suddenly a strange scent began to spread in the air, causing him to stop and let out a humph. The crowd slowly stood up, chattering, where did this scent come from? Could it be the scent of a poisonous flower? Haha, it must be, its scent must be gorgeous and sweet. As it approached, everyone's faces suddenly became surprised, mouths opened wide and exclaimed, huh? What is that? Not knowing who recognized it and shouted, it's the queen bee. The queen bee has led the 7 bees to launch a general attack, should we go in too? He took the lead and walked through the dense grass, excitedly exclaiming, let's go get the queen bee's honey. In his hand, there was something wrapped tightly in cloth. The 3 of them began to move forward cautiously. When they reached the tree trunk and looked into the dark hole, the group seemed hesitant. Wolfgang tried to calm himself down and cleared his throat, Soryong, it doesn't seem safe here, let me go first and lead the way. One by one, the 3 of them entered. Once inside and looked around, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, oh, look, the beehive is so big. Above their heads, a giant golden beehive glistened, with perfectly constructed holes, giving a strong impression to the onlookers. Wolfgang started to light a fire to create smoke and said, fortunately the bees seemed to have flown out. Soryong heard the strange sound, glanced over and looked suspiciously, what's going on? Wolfgang, in disbelief, tried to look more clearly, his tone somewhat worried, there was no honey, it couldn't be, really, the holes were completely empty. Tang Huin asked seriously, could it be that there were no more bees like Soryong said? This had never happened before, it was strange. Soryong suddenly thought of something suspicious, this hive did not have a single egg. Wolfgang asked again, what did that have to do with the hive having no more honey? He boldly hypothesized that perhaps the bees had long been preparing to leave, and had already swallowed all their stored honey. He continued, perhaps because they sensed the presence of humans nearby. Tang Huin sighed and said, ah, so that's how it is. To confirm his guess, he went to a nearby beehive to observe and added, yes, when the bees decide to migrate, they will no longer lay eggs. Because at that time they no longer have the time or energy to care for the larva. Suddenly he stopped when he saw the hind part of the bee, it seemed to be quite large in size. He smiled strangely and asked Wolfgang, sir, if you continuously use mobility arts without resting, how long can you maintain it? He was surprised but only replied, if you run at a moderate speed, you can maintain it for about half a day. Curiosity made him ask, why are you suddenly asking that? Just then Gupai's voice rang out from outside, Soryong young warrior, he stuttered, queen bee. Remembering the scene he had just seen, he panicked and urged, the swarm of yellow bees is returning, you must leave here quickly. Soryong did not hesitate and bowed his head, as if trying to get something. He hesitated, waiting a moment. Wolfgang heard that and immediately shouted, let's go, Soryong young warrior, it's okay to leave it behind. Tang Huin saw that he was slow, so she grabbed his collar and said, Soryong, hurry up. Gupai is still worried outside the door, hurry up. Soryong hurriedly ran after him, hiding something in his chest, the moon still shining brightly in the sky. The 3 of them returned to their team, panting and exhausted. Phew, someone nearby sighed in relief. Something big was about to happen. Tang Huin sighed, phew, luckily, we escaped before the bees returned. The animal in Soryong's arms also stuck its head out to breathe some fresh air. Tang Huin asked in surprise, Soryong, what are you holding? He smiled and lifted the giant bee, this is the queen of the bees, since there is no more honey, I have brought the one who will make honey. Wolfgang exclaimed in horror, queen bee. Tang Huin looked at the little bee who was trying to act cute, hesitant, Soryong young warrior, could it be? Suddenly, both Wolfgang and Tang Huin's faces changed color. The bee in his hand screamed shrilly, biu biu. He added without hesitation, soon the bees will realize their queen is missing and come after us. Behind them the bees gather in black clouds. He did not notice and continued to laugh happily, let's run. And so, the dangerous chase for life began. The group of people carrying the queen bee ran away in panic. The buzzing sound from behind created a rumbling sound. Several days had passed since the chase. Looking into the bee queen's sparkling eyes, Soryong reassured, calm down, I will take you to a place where no one will bother you. During that time, the group had reduced their rest time to move with all their might. Looking at the current situation, it was truly pathetic. While the group was resting, Soryong suddenly looked into the distance and shouted, here we go. Everyone looked in panic. One person said in despair, ah, I can't run anymore. On the way here, the people in the venom glue units had fallen behind. He secretly determined, this time when he returned, he had to learn mobility arts properly. Suddenly one person fell forward and shouted, ah, the person next to him was surprised, huh? Another person fell behind? The group ran back anxiously, only to see that the other person was lying flat on the ground. The teammates shouted, Darilong fell. As a result, Wang Darilong of the venom glue units was left behind. He immediately urged everyone to use their mobility arts and run away. He secretly thought that if they stayed away from the queen bee, they would be safer. Gupai gasped, asking, Sir Soryong, can we escape? Soryong replied a little uncertainly, perhaps. 3 days later, despite his best efforts, Wolfgang could no longer continue and collapsed to the ground. He coughed, breathing heavily, and said to the two people in front of him, I'm sorry, Mr. Soryong, I can only go this far. Soryong and Tang Huin's appearance at this moment was very miserable. Their hair was messy. Soryong looked at him in surprise, worriedly calling out, Boss. Tang Huin was silent for a moment and then suggested, Soryong, let me carry you. Hearing that, he shyly refused, young Miss Tang Huin, no need, I can go by myself. Suddenly, Tang Huin rubbed his face with both hands. After regaining her composure, she became brighter, determined to smile at him. I can do it. The Tang clan absolutely never give up. At the Tang clan's main gate, 2 gatekeepers, neatly dressed and armed, were seriously carrying out their duties. When they heard footsteps from afar, they glanced over and exclaimed, huh? As the figure approached, one of the 2 said in surprise, oh, young miss is back. Seeing the 2 people looking listless, with dark circles under their eyes from lack of sleep, Soryong walked while supporting Tang Huin. The gatekeeper couldn't believe his eyes, his mouth wide open, asking, young miss? The entire Tang clan was immediately in chaos, immediately firing a signal flare to call the entire immediate family. The Grand Patriarch and the homeowner heard the signal fire and quickly opened the door and ran out. The homeowner worriedly asked, is something serious going on? Someone immediately reported that Miss Tang Huin had returned, seeing her daughter looking haggard, being supported by a servant, and Soryong standing anxiously beside her. The 2 of them looked really shabby. The head of the family couldn't believe his eyes and asked, really? He hugged his daughter and cried out in pain, Soryong, what's going on? He hurriedly knelt down and stammered an explanation, please calm down, father-in-law, young Miss Tang Huin is just exhausted after 10 days of non-stop mobility arts. As if remembering something, his voice became serious, but now is not the time to talk about this, quickly go to the martial arts school. Grand Patriarch heard that and asked in surprise, what does the martial arts school do? He did not answer immediately but reached into his shirt and took out something. He lifted the queen bee up in both hands for everyone to see, then announced, this is the queen of the golden-haired king bee. Soon, the other bees will arrive. We must go to the old tree at the martial arts school immediately. Unable to hold back, the Grand Patriarch laughed loudly, ha 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 ha, this kid is truly worthy of expectation. He will definitely do great things in the future. On this side, the Tang clan's patriarch's expression was not very good. He asked, what? Didn't he say to go get honey, and yet he even captured the queen bee? Not giving him time to answer, the Grand Patriarch hugged his shoulder and said, okay, let's go, making him exclaim in surprise, huh? He used mobility arts to hug Soryong and jump into the air, causing him to panic and scream, oh my god. The people on the ground hurriedly covered their faces because of the sandstorm. Soryong's whole body was carried by him and flew through the air, making him dizzy. Suddenly the prince cried out in alarm, the Grand Patriarch glanced worriedly and asked, what's the matter? Seeing in the distance, a familiar black and yellow mass, he hurriedly announced, Grand Patriarch, the swarm of bees is coming. He heard that and still calmly said, it's so crowded, did you bring all of them here? He said then he accelerated, just ahead, hurry up. The boy was startled by the sudden speed and cried out, ah. The Grand Patriarch landed very roughly, sending rocks flying everywhere. He brought him to a huge tree and announced, we're here, Soryong. He quickly hugged the queen bee and rushed towards the tree in front. Looking up at the huge tree trunk, Soryong said, golden-haired king bee, this is the place I was talking about. From now on, this is your home. The bee in his hand flapped its wings and buzzed in confusion. He pointed at the large hole in front of him and asked, is this okay? However, all he got in response was the sound of flapping wings. The golden-haired king bee cautiously flew to the tree. After observing carefully, it turned its head to look at Soryong and smiled. You were happy to see it like this. It seemed to be satisfied with you, right? As the swarm of bees drew closer, the Grand Patriarch called out, Soryong, get out of here quickly. The swarm of bees is coming. Hearing this, he turned his head and replied, yes, Grand Patriarch. When the swarm of bees flying in the air made a loud noise, everyone on the ground looked up, showing surprise and worry. The golden-haired king bee saw the swarm of bees and immediately flapped its wings happily and chirped loudly. It quickly led the bees into the tree it had just finished inspecting. The Grand Patriarch looked at the scene before him and kept sighing, HMPH, honestly, I have never seen such a scene in my life. Soryong also looked on, sighing softly, ah. Seeing the swarm of bees coming in and out of the tree, he breathed a sigh of relief. The golden-haired king bee had been successfully captured, great. A bee stuck out its tongue and drank water from a wooden basin. Looking at the bees gathering in groups to drink water, he was satisfied. He had given the golden-haired king bees that were exhausted from chasing after some sugar water to regain their strength. People often say that eating together will bring love, and kindness will also be cultivated from meals. Luckily, there was something similar to sugar here. How lucky. The Tang clan stood to the side watching. Everyone happily commented, they were really delicious. Looking at them closely like this, they were also quite cute. Looking at the golden-haired king bee happily drinking the sugar water, he was secretly pleased. Doing so would probably lower their guard a bit. If they recognized him as their master, all the better. Suddenly he shouted, oh, right. The homeowner heard that and asked again, what's wrong? He asked shyly, what about young Miss Tang Huin? He glanced at her sarcastically, now you remember, recalling his daughter's tired appearance. He said even more disdainfully, she was so exhausted that I had to send her to her mother to take care of her, but I also didn't expect you to force her to use mobility arts for 10 days without rest. Soryong heard that and didn't dare to face her, but shyly replied, yes, father-in-law, I'm sorry. Only sleep about 2 hours a day, the rest is spent running. At this moment, the Grand Patriarch suddenly remembered something and asked, Soryong, remembering the group of people he brought with him, he worriedly asked, so where are the venom blue units? He was stunned, sweat pouring down his face, he wasn't sure, they were probably lying down somewhere on the road, maybe he had to go retrieve them. Hearing that, the Grand Patriarch could only close his eyes and laugh, haha, according to the order, venom blue unit was then brought safely back to the arms of his family. In Tang Huin's room, warm sunlight streamed through the windows. After hearing Soryong's story, Tang Huin was delighted. It seemed like the golden-haired king bees had regained their strength. How fortunate, Soryong. He also smiled and replied, yes, young Miss Tang Huin. Remembering the men currently sucking nectar in the Tang Clan Mountain, he added, they were now sucking nectar from the poisonous flowers in the Tang Clan Mountain. She nodded, oh my gosh, they looked so cute. Suddenly a loud call from outside interrupted the conversation, Mr. Soryong, Mr. Soryong. Soryong glanced outside and asked, what's going on? Guppai, despite his haste, could only keep his manners in check, holding the door with both hands and urging hurriedly, you need to go out for a moment. He panted for a moment before speaking. The situation of the golden-haired king bees seemed very strange, they seemed to be searching for something. Hearing that, Soryong began to think, He immediately ran out, Tang Huin followed behind, and some bees were waiting above. When he saw the swarm of bees flying overhead, he asked in surprise, really? Hearing his voice, the swarm of bees immediately turned to look at him, the sound of their wings flapping loudly. Seeing them continuously clinging to his head and body, he asked in confusion, Hey guys, Tang Huin also became more worried, Soryong, are you okay? The bees remained defiant, pulling his arm away. Seeing them biting his shirt, he asked anxiously, why are you doing this? Suddenly his feet gradually left the ground, he could only helplessly smile bitterly, The people standing on the ground raised their heads to watch Soryong's figure being dragged away by the swarm of bees. Tang Huin opened her mouth in surprise and called out, Soryong. The swarm of bees dragged him to the base of a large tree and dropped him, the sound of their wings buzzing in his ears. He staggered to the ground and exclaimed, When he saw the scene before him, he opened his eyes wide in surprise. He asked the bees in amazement, what's wrong with your hive? What's going on? A bee flew up behind him and pushed him inside with force. He complied, walking in while smiling, okay, I get it, you want me to come in. As he stepped inside, he looked around and exclaimed, oh. Looking at each neatly arranged golden honey cell, he couldn't help but think, the nest was quite complete, and the honey gathering was also taking place. A bee slowly flew closer, he glanced over and asked in confusion, it turned out to be the queen bee. She looked at him with affectionate eyes. It flew over and landed on his arm, flapping its wings gently. He asked softly, do you want me to lift you up? His response was more vigorous flapping of its wings. However, the swarm of bees continued to grow, clinging to his face to the point of disfiguring him. He felt a headache thinking, these bees were clinging to him so tightly that he couldn't move. He bowed his head and lifted the queen bee as she wished, her big round sparkling eyes looking at him. The queen bee slowly closed her eyes, her two paws wanting to reach out and touch his face. Seeing that appearance, Soryong exclaimed in surprise, wait a minute, but it was too late. The queen bee had already moved closer to his face, causing his face to suddenly turn red. He screamed silently in his head, He felt his lips touch something soft, his whole body became hot, his eyes became hazy, his mind was spinning. He instinctively swallowed, realizing with horror that something was coming. A swarm of bees flew around and witnessed Soryong being forced to kiss by the queen bee. When his lips and its parted, a bubble appeared between the two. He quickly released it and breathed heavily, puff puff. Covering his mouth, he blushed and pointed at it, stammering, you, queen bee, This is my first time, what the hell are you doing? Feeling like your whole body is losing control, you're confused, huh? The whole body fell powerlessly to the ground with a thud. Eyes lit up, he raised his head to find the bee queen, gritting his teeth in anger. When he saw it seemed to be smiling at him, he wondered incomprehensibly, you gave me. After getting intimate with the queen bee, Soryong lay curled up on the ground, his face showing pain, he coughed with difficulty, cough cough. His face felt hot, white foam was running down his mouth, a strange, itchy feeling rushed through his body. He rolled around, but he couldn't shake the feeling of suffocation, his vision became blurry, fluid kept flowing from his nose and mouth, he could hear his heart pounding. He reached out towards the queen bee, coughed with difficulty, cough, he doubted, what did you feed me? As his eyes slowly closed, he saw it looking at him with an innocent expression, and while his eyes were not completely closed, he heard Tang Huin's worried voice calling out. Soryong, Soryong, ah, then there was the image of her calling Grand Patriarch, grandfather. Soryong, something is wrong, he replied seriously, it seems like it swallowed a very strong elixir. His vision turned dark, he heard Tang Huin scream in panic, Soryong, come to your senses, then he said, I'll guide your chi. When he opened his eyes, he saw Tang Huin holding a towel and preparing to place it on his forehead. When she saw him open his eyes, she happily said, Soryong, are you awake? He sat up, rubbed his head and looked around, here, where is this? She replied, the medical hall of Tang sect. She gently tucked her hair behind her ear and recounted everything. When she saw Soryong being dragged back to the golden-haired king bee, Grandpa and I rushed over, but when we got there, he was unconscious, that's why we brought you here. Hearing her ask, do you remember what happened? He hesitantly replied, remembering the situation at that time when he covered his face, his mind was in turmoil. My first kiss, seeing him like that, Tang Huin worriedly asked, Soryong, are you okay? Is there anything wrong with your body? Seeing him silent, she suggested, should we call Grandpa? He quickly stopped her, no need, it's just me. Having said this, he fell silent again and let out a long sigh. He sorted out his thoughts and said, the queen bee fed me her food, maybe that's why this happened. Tang Huin asked curiously, what did you eat? He seemed uncertain as he replied, I'm not sure about the name either, but if I had to name it, it could be called King Bee Elixir. She repeated the unfamiliar name with a doubtful look, King Bee Elixir? He smiled and nodded, yes, bees collect honey and pollen to live, just like worker bees are the ones who work all their lives, eating only honey and pollen. She asked again, what about the queen bee? He immediately replied, from birth until death, it only ate king bee elixir produced by the worker bees. Now, he was shocked to realize, the king bee elixir that the queen bee forced him to eat was actually royal jelly. Tang Huin gently understood, so that's it was the queen bee's lifelong food. Suddenly a thought occurred to him and his voice became excited, but king bee elixir also had special uses. She asked, what is the use? He replied enthusiastically, normally, worker bees only live for a little over a month, while queen bees can live 60 times longer by eating king bee elixir, isn't that unusual? She stopped him in surprise, Soryong, calm down, she blushed, coughed lightly to cover up her embarrassment and said, cough, so that's how it is, the question has been answered. Next, she said, the internal energy method that Soryong learned was the 5 poisons returning technique, because it was only an elementary mental method, it could not absorb all the energy from the elixir. Tang Huin breathed a sigh of relief, but the golden-haired king bee's honey had the same effect as 2 months of internal energy. Had Soryong achieved exactly 60 times the effect, meaning he had already obtained 10 years of internal energy. Hearing her congratulate him on his fortuitous encounter, he was speechless. 10 years of internal energy. At this moment Tang Huin suddenly hesitated, and then, she used her handkerchief to cover the embarrassment on her face and said, look in the silver mirror once, it seems that king bee elixir has other effects. Hearing that, he opened his eyes wide in surprise and repeated, different effect. Soryong touched his face and asked himself, silver mirror? Sure enough, when he looked at himself in the mirror, he suddenly raised his hand to his cheek and said softly, is there something strange? He vaguely understood, royal jelly has such effects? Where is that country bumpkin from Huin? Soryong touched his cheek with his finger and sighed, his features became more delicate, and his skin became softer, like a woman's. Thinking of something, sweat dripped down his face suddenly turned so red that he forgot to pull his finger out of his cheek. Thinking of himself in a feminine version, he smiled and introduced himself, hello, I am Wei Soryong. He covered his face in shock and wondered, is this the royal jelly that queen bees eat? He quickly bowed his head, fumbled with his belt, and held his breath, not daring to make a sound. Then he checked to see if his little brother was still there. After checking, he lay down on the ground, looked up at the ceiling and breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily, it was still where it should be. He remembered what Tang Huin had said, if Grandpa hadn't guided his chi, something big might have happened, and thought to himself, maybe he should say thank you, he almost lost his life, but was saved. Soryong walked on the familiar road, but felt strange when people kept staring at him. Seeing the young missus smiling, he thought to himself, today I feel strange gazes, is it because my internal energy has increased? He ran away like he was being chased by a ghost, telling himself, first he had to escape from here, leaving the laughter of the young missus behind. At the Sichuan Tang clan's restaurant house. Soryong stood outside the door, hesitant to enter, only furtively observing inside. At this moment, the dining table was filled with delicious dishes with all the colors, aromas, and flavors. Everyone was seated at the table, and the servants were serving the dishes one by one. When the lady absent-mindedly turned her head, she saw him. After observing, she exclaimed, "Oh, my son-in-law looks brighter." Then she asked, "Is his body better?" Soryong bowed his head and clasped his hands respectfully in reply, "Yes, mother-in-law. I apologize for making you worry." She happily clapped her hands. "It's okay. It's a blessing to have a fortuitous encounter." Having said that, she turned to tease her daughter, "Oh my god, look at this skin. Tang Huin will definitely like it." These words made Tang Huin blush in embarrassment. "HMPH, mother." She awkwardly changed the subject. "Soryong, please sit down too." Amidst the lady's cheerful laughter, he softly replied, "Yes." Everyone was seated for dinner, and the servants were bringing the last dishes. As the servant poured tea, the master of the house asked with concern, "Soryong, are you feeling better?" He nodded obediently, "Yes, father-in-law, I apologize for making you worry." Then he respectfully continued, "Thank you, grandpa, I heard you examined my body." The Grand Patriarch smiled. It was a blessing to have such a fortuitous encounter. The master interjected, "Now tell me what happened. I heard about the King Bee elixir from Tang Huin. What exactly happened?" He didn't know where to start. Out of habit, he touched his face. He opened his mouth. The thing is. When he remembered his first kiss, he closed his eyes and said, "Perhaps the golden-haired king bee was pleased with the new hive, so she tried to repay her son. As a result, she was dragged back to the hive and suddenly fed King Bee elixir." Then he happily concluded, "I think everything that happened started from this." The lady covered her mouth and exclaimed, "How strange," while the Grand Patriarch exclaimed, "Oh, even a mid-level poisonous animal knows how to repay kindness." He then asked, "Could I find more King Bee elixir? If we can find it, it will be very useful for our Tang clan." The head of the family also added, "The honey of the golden-haired king bee is already very useful. If it is the King Bee elixir, it will definitely be of great help." The lady was interested in the beauty benefits of King Bee elixir and asked excitedly, "Son-in-law, is it possible to find more King Bee elixir?" When he saw all eyes on him, he coughed softly. Tang Huin also turned around and asked, "Oh, right, Soryong, can you find it again?" He closed his eyes and nodded slightly, "Yes." And in my heart I thought, if it were just a normal bee, I would need to build many separate nests for the queen bee, called queen cells, and use worker bees to collect royal jelly. As he recalled the image of Guppy running away in panic from the swarm of bees, he couldn't help but think, Soryong young warrior. This seemed far from reality. He wondered, if he tried this on the intelligent golden-haired king bee, he would probably end up being turned into a beehive. Thinking about the innocent form of the queen bee, he pondered, the color of royal jelly was originally created to nourish the larva, but we were fed directly by the queen bee. I wonder if there was any difference in this substance. After a moment of silence, he said, "I'll be honest, that's probably not possible." Hearing this, the Grand Patriarch immediately asked, "Not possible, what is the reason?" The madam also hurriedly asked, "Son-in-law, why is it not possible?" He replied to them, "Even if it was edible, who would dare to eat it?" At this point the host started to speculate, Because it wasn't tasty or because it smelled bad? He gently shook his head, "That wasn't it." Then he gave a shocking answer, that King Bee elixir was secreted from the queen bee's mouth. It seemed like it needed to be passed directly from the queen bee. To avoid any misunderstanding, he further explained that this was like kissing, requiring lip-to-lip contact, and the queen bee's secretions had to enter the mouth before they could be transmitted. The Grand Patriarch opened his mouth, both surprised and confused. "What? Contact with the queen bee?" The madam was also stunned. What does that mean?" The owner could only sigh in despair. It seemed that he could not find anyone else, unless it was Soryong, the one loved by the golden-haired king bee, otherwise it was impossible. Suddenly the sound of chopsticks falling on the table attracted everyone's attention. Tang Huin didn't look at him but asked in a low voice, "Oral contact?" She quickly covered her mouth with her hand in panic, her eyes glancing over to investigate. "Soryong, have you had a verbal duel with that golden-haired king bee?" In the quiet moonlit night, the lonely crescent moon hung overhead, casting its light onto the world. A hand covered in scars and veins emerged. It was none other than the famous Murim Alliance leader, Fist Emperor, Ju Jungik. His mind was currently in a mess. His thoughts were in turmoil as if about to explode. The wooden door gently shook. A graceful figure like a fairy descended to earth walked in. On her delicate face was a shy red mole. She lowered her head, her ivory hands carefully carrying the tea tray as she entered. Fist Emperor Ju Jungik glanced at the beautiful figure and calmly said, "You have prepared Sichuan mountain tea name." After saying that, he clasped his hands behind his back and spoke with pride. "It is truly an unforgettable taste of home." The beauty gently poured tea and gently replied, "Yes, it is Sichuan mountain premium tea, our famous specialty." Hearing that, the Fist Emperor nodded slightly and said gently, "Thank you, beautiful lady. I will definitely enjoy this cup of tea to the fullest." The beauty standing next to him, her sparkling eyes attentively followed his every move. The Fist Emperor raised the cup of tea to his lips and opened his mouth slightly, intending to take a sip. Just then, an urgent voice suddenly came from outside. reporting to the alliance leader. Subordinate, military advisor Jiggle Hu has urgent matters to report. That worried voice made the Fist Emperor pause. He quickly put down his teacup and spoke in a dignified voice. It's this hour and what's the matter? Come in now. Jiggle Hu, a handsome young man with a brisk appearance, walked in. Han clasped his hands and bowed, his tone somewhat apologetic. Reporting to alliance leader, it is rude to disturb you at such a quiet time of night. He then hurriedly reported the situation. Actually, a secret report had just been sent back from the Sichuan intelligence line. Your subordinate saw that the matter was important, so he immediately came to report to you. The Fist Emperor waved his hand indifferently, calmly replied, it's fine, the strategist has personally come here, it must be an important matter, just say it directly. Jiggle Hu stepped forward, his hand furtively groped into his sleeve as if searching for something. Finally, he took out a scroll of goatskin and placed it on the table, solemnly reported, the bloodhand Rakshasa Tak Linyang has paid the price. Upon hearing this shocking news, Tang sect recovered his head and the famous martial artist's secret manual, the bloodhand Soan Claw. Fist Emperor could not contain his anger and slammed his hand on the table. Bang! The teacup shattered into pieces. He angrily shouted, what? The strong blow made his hand tremble. The Fist Emperor clenched his teeth and questioned, bloodhand Soan Claw, how could that strange evil technique be taken back? And there was also Tak Linyang's head. Jiggle Hu hurriedly bowed his head and replied, reporting to the alliance leader, previously, Tak Linyang was hit by a fatal blow from the myriad poison's divine sovereign. His whereabouts have been unknown since then. Later, he drifted all the way to Huin and lived in seclusion there to recuperate. As if suddenly remembering something interesting, Jiggle Hu excitedly added, furthermore, this incident also had an extremely thrilling and attractive plot. According to the latest intelligence, the great devil Tak Linyang was defeated by a young warrior and an unknown poison user. Fist Emperor frowned in surprise and asked doubtfully, what did you say? Young warrior and poison user. Jiggle Hu leisurely sat down opposite the Fist Emperor, mysteriously waving his feather fan as he continued speaking. It sounded like a story full of unexpected twists and turns, but it was actually an extremely engaging drama that the alliance leader would definitely look forward to for a long time. The beauty stood silently in the room listening to Jiggle Hu's endless story, unable to help but feel curious. Returning to the Sichuan gate, at this time in the clan's main hall, all the elders of the main and secondary branches had gathered. After listening to his subordinate's report, a silver-haired elder nodded and said, that's true, clan leader. Another elder with a hot temper angrily shouted, so there's someone so bold as to sell out our Tang sect's confidential information to an outside force. Another elder also echoed, how bold, I didn't expect someone to have the audacity to tarnish the Tang sect's reputation to this extent. Soryong saw that everyone's attitude was different from last time, so he turned to Tang Huin and asked in a low voice, oh, father-in-law didn't get angry with you today? Tang Huin laughed softly when he heard that and replied, of course not. Seeing Soryong still had a blank expression, she explained in more detail, even the elders in the branch clan couldn't sit still if he dared to damage the family's reputation. After all, it was just a matter of raising pots and pans in the family. The Tang sect clan head closed his eyes and bowed his head, thinking for a moment before making a decision. I have sent people from the beggar gang to verify information about them. There should be news soon. I plan to personally go to the Yingchuan commandery. The elder asked worriedly, so how does the clan head plan to deal with them? The homeowner had already made a calculation in mind, and was planning step by step. For now, he would use alimentary canal necrotizing poison, spirit-destroying poison, and bloody pulp poison. As he spoke, he briefly described the scene of spontaneous combustion, the internal organs rotting, the enemy writhing in extreme pain as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. Then he loudly declared, finally, I will give them a glass of 7-step soul-snatching poison so they can ascend to heaven quickly. A cocktail poisons, Soryong gasped in surprise, his voice out of tune. Old Master Tang turned around and gave an imposing order to Wolgang. His tone did not allow for any argument. What are you still standing there for? Quickly summon all the venom blue units. I will set off immediately. Wolgang bowed like a shrimp and urgently replied, obeying the old master's orders. Venom blue units gathered at an astonishing speed, standing in neat rows in front of the yard, their eyes looking straight at the old man waiting for orders. Before flying away, Elder Tang did not forget to glance at his precious son-in-law and tell him, little boy, leave the family matters to me. You just stay home and recuperate. I will take care of everything. Soryong hurriedly clasped his hands and bowed respectfully. Father-in-law, rest assured, I understand this principle. Please take care. Hearing this, old Master Tang raised his head and laughed loudly, his voice rising to the sky. Be careful, ha ha ha. Those worms should be careful. Let's see how I will repay them with 1,000 times of retribution and 10,000 times of punishment. After saying this, he brought his mighty army with him and quickly left the Tang clan. Looking at the backs of the black-clothed men covered tightly, Soryong couldn't help but curiously turn to ask Tang Huin, young miss, are those people the legendary Venom Blue units? I've been in the Tang clan for a long time and finally got to see them today. Tang Huin covered her mouth and chuckled, her tone was a bit mysterious. That's right, they were in charge of the dark and sinister affairs of the martial arts world. She emphasized that, to put it bluntly, they specialize in killing others. That's why they have the beautiful name of Venomous Blood Units. Soryong heard this and felt a chill down his spine. He thought to himself, is it just pure evil? I'm afraid it's more than that. Just then, a vague cough suddenly sounded from behind him. The two of them turned around in surprise and recognized who had come. Soryong quickly bowed and saluted. Junior Soryong greets all the elders. The elder in the lead leaned on his cane and spoke in a hoarse voice like the wind blowing through the leaves. Cough, cough, no need for formalities. I heard that the son-in-law has met with a rare opportunity. Soryong remained humble, not daring to show any arrogance. Yes, elder. In his mind, he couldn't help but speculate wildly. Could it be that the matter of golden-haired King Bee and royal jelly had reached the elder's hands? The elder continued to cough and spoke with difficulty. Cough, cough. This old man came to his son-in-law with a favor to ask. Soryong was still confused and asked again, what is this favor? He probed, is it the golden-haired King Bee honey that you have heard about? Not letting Soryong finish his sentence, the elder hurriedly waved his hand, his tone somewhat guilty. Ah, no, that's absolutely not the case. Does the son-in-law think we're greedy for such a small thing? The elder behind him chimed in with a dignified air. That's right. All spiritual medicines and treasures in this world are obtained by fate, so how can one force them? Soryong saw that the two elders were talking and not getting to the point, so he became more and more suspicious, so he asked directly, so what exactly is going on? The two elders exchanged awkward glances as if there was something difficult to say. After clearing his throat to gather his courage, the leading elder approached Soryong, his skinny hand patted his shoulder with an unfathomable, mysterious expression. He blushed slightly and whispered close to Soryong's ear as if afraid someone else would hear. Recently, there's a little story. Doesn't the son-in-law have a type of elixir called ground beetle? I heard that thing was personally refined by the son-in-law. The decision-making power is completely yours. Cough, cough. At this point, Soryong finally understood, opening his mouth to laugh a long, meaningful laugh. Then he took out 3 shiny ground beetles, tossed them lightly in his hand, and smiled. Haha, I'm also trying to adapt to the Tang clan. There are indeed many things I'm still unfamiliar with. If the elders can take care of me and support me a little, then this small matter is not that big of a deal. Just at this moment, the Grand Patriarch just walked out from the inner hall, witnessing the peaceful scene before his eyes. He couldn't help but ask, what are you all doing here, making such a ruckus? The sudden majestic sound caused the group of people who were laughing and talking happily to freeze like stone statues. About 5 seconds later, the elder who was about to reach out to take the pill choked on his saliva and let out a miserable cry. The people around him quickly gathered around, some patting his back, some supporting his shoulders, trying to put out the fire. Ah, we were just chatting and strengthening our relationship with our son-in-law, Grand Patriarch Tang, seeing this, finally nodded in satisfaction and laughed out loud. Ha ha, ha ha ha. It seemed like everyone had finally realized Soryong's true value. Tang Huin stood by and witnessed this scene, cold sweat pouring down his back. The elders kept nodding and bowing, replying non-stop, of course, Grand Patriarch, you were right. Suddenly a panicked sound came from afar. Grand Patriarch, reporting, something big is wrong. Old Master Tang heard this and immediately turned around, asking solemnly, what happened that made everyone panic like there was a funeral? The other person did not dare to delay and hurriedly reporting to the Grand Patriarch, the Sichuan City Lord. The Sichuan City Lord was dying like a lamp in the wind, only gasping for breath. Hearing this, the crowd's expressions changed in shock. The elder couldn't help but exclaim, what? Sichuan City Lord, he. Soryong hurriedly asked, may I ask if the Sichuan City Lord followed the instructions on dosage and usage that I had given him earlier? The other person hesitated for a while, knowing that he could no longer hide it. He had no choice but to answer honestly, this matter, actually, after the Sichuan City Lord saw the miraculous effects of the elixir, he had taken in several more concubines and had even arbitrarily increased the dosage several times compared to the original instructions. Soryong heard and sweat poured out like a bath, secretly screaming in his heart, oh my god, this prodigal son. Grand Patriarch Tang had a headache. He rubbed his head, his tone full of helplessness. No, I have to go there immediately. Before flying away, the old man did not forget to instruct Soryong, Soryong, you are the only man left in the Tang clan right now, protect the women well, understand? Soryong obediently replied, yes, Grandpa, I will keep it in mind. Elder Tang immediately used his mobility arts, transforming into a beam of green light and quickly leaving the Tang clan. Soryong looked at the hurried figure of Tang Laojia and couldn't help but wonder, what was there that made Tang Laojia so frantic? As dusk fell, all the main houses of the Tang clan were brightly lit. Tang Huin sat next to Soryong and gently asked Han, Soryong, how is your cultivation of the 10 poisons dual origin art this time, is there any progress? Soryong hesitated a bit and replied without much confidence, well, compared to the beginning, it's much less confusing. He silently compared in his mind, if the 5 poisons returning technique gave the feeling of a large stream of air circulating continuously in the body, then the 10 poisons dual origin art was like 2 streams of air operating at the same time, like a 2-cylinder engine. Tang Huin couldn't hide her joy when she heard this, and announced, it seems that I have initially acquired a certain level of resistance to common poisons, she continued excitedly. Moreover, I can also directly circulate qi out or transfer it into objects. Soryong asked in surprise, his heart filled with doubt, is it really that powerful? After a while of mental struggle, he made up his mind and said, "Okay, then let me try it once." With a determined gaze fixed on the wooden dummy placed before him, Soryong slowly stood up and gently held the flying knife between his index finger and thumb. Then he concentrated his mind to the utmost, his entire body becoming one with the weapon. He muttered the incantation in his mind, circulating his internal energy from left to right, urging the two air circles to rotate in unison. A faint blue air began to appear under his feet, then quickly spread to cover his entire body. Soryong slowly opened his eyes, his pupils also dyed an unusually mysterious, hazy blue. He thought to himself, when this stream of energy filled his meridians and muscles, right when the sound of wind tearing through the air echoed. One foot firmly planted on the ground, the other foot used force to kick hard, throwing the flying knife towards the dummy with terrifying speed. The flying knife carrying a sharp blue aura tore through space and shot out like a stream of light. A world-shaking rumble rang out, the flying knife accurately pierced straight into the dummy's abdomen, causing the cloth to tear and fly everywhere like snowflakes. "Young Miss Tang Huin, I have made a breakthrough," the joyful voice of the young Soryong echoed, breaking the silence. In response to the call, Tang Huin chuckled, her eyes curved like crescent moons. "Soryong is indeed a genius. You have successfully transferred true chi into the hidden weapon and flying knife." In the dim darkness, the men in black hiding nearby were extremely terrified. Their eyes rolled back to the whites of their eyes as they witnessed the flying knife tearing through the air. It pierced the wooden target's bullseye and embedded itself deep into the solid stone wall. They looked at each other in horror and silently discussed. Could it be that they had been exposed? One person's voice was trembling. He needed to be silenced. The person next to him quickly objected. "It's not the same, it's just a coincidence." The remaining man held the goatskin manual in his hand, lowering his voice to the point where it was barely audible. After all, it was just a copy. But the blood hand sew on claw was in his hands. Mission accomplished. Before the long night of dreams came, he had to quickly escape back to headquarters. He couldn't help but smile smugly. His voice was hoarse like a crow's caw. Hee. Those stupid Tang clan mortals. The defense was as lax as chives. I could easily blend in and get the treasure. Suddenly a strange scent wafted by. He frowned in doubt. A whisper warned his comrades. It seemed like there was a strange, sweet, strong scent. The whole group frantically looked around, trying to find the source of the scent. Just as they raised their heads, their souls flew out of their bodies when they discovered a giant bee watching them with fiery eyes. Its ferocious expression looked as if it wanted to devour its enemy. Its roaring sound was like thunder, carrying with it a murderous aura. In the pitch-black night, a scream tore through the silence of the night, echoing throughout the arena, terrifying everyone. Soryong was startled. What just happened? Tang Huin's sharp eyes turned towards the source of the sound. Guessing, it seemed like someone had come uninvited. Behind the row of ancient trees behind the shooting range, a group of men in black appeared, their faces filled with terror as if they had seen a demon, their mouths screaming in unison. Why are there bees here? It was the strange clothes and furtive attitude of the group of people that made Tang Huin immediately confirm that these were bandits who had broken in. For the safety of the Tang clan, Tang Huin did not hesitate, her luck leaping towards the enemy. She did not forget to give the order to the person beside her. "Soryong, what are you waiting for? Release the arrow." Soryong looked at Tang Huin's back in confusion and called out, "Young miss, be careful." The leader in black saw the danger of the situation. His soul flew away. He screamed to his comrades, retreat." Another guy was stung by a bee in the ear, screaming in pain. "Take this damn thing off. Help me, you evil beast." The two cold-blooded accomplices, ignoring their teammates, hastily used mobility arts and ran away. Tang Huin's movements were lightning fast. She rushed over from afar. Her voice was cold as ice. "Stop for me." She circulated her energy into her wrist. A jet-black leather whip, covered with sharp steel spikes, suddenly appeared in her hand. Tang Huin used all his strength and swung his whip like a dragon towards his opponent, but the black-clothed men had extraordinary skills and quickly jumped into the air, dodging the lightning whip. This made Tang Huin surprised, thinking to himself, he even avoided my black dragon whip. Black was stung by the bees and knew that he could not escape. He decided to risk his life to hold off his opponent while counterattacking. He roared like a wild beast and swung his sword straight at Tang Huin. Die for me." Soryong stood outside the battle and could only shout to remind Tang Huin, "Young miss, be careful 1,000 times over." His voice revealed a trace of worry. The man in black swung his sword frantically, ignoring the bee that was still clinging to him. Tang Huin was a martial arts expert after all. He skillfully held the two ends of the whip with both hands. He easily parried a fatal sword strike and even gave his opponent a contemptuous glance. Then she counterattacked quickly, throwing a whip like lightning at the black-clothed man's face, scaring him to the point of being stunned. Not giving the opponent time to regain his composure, she continuously swung her whip, each move carrying sharp wind. Only then did the bee release the unlucky man in black, circled around, and flew up into the air. Soryong looked at the man in black lying motionless on the ground like a dead dog and hurriedly ran over to ask Tang Huin, "Young miss, are you hurt?" Tang Huin calmly put away the whip and leisurely replied, "It's okay, I'm fine." Suddenly, the man in black writhed and let out a loud groan, his entire body emitting black smoke, his mouth gaping like a caged bird or a fish. Soryong was extremely frightened, stammering, "Who is this guy? Is he dead?" In his heart, he couldn't help but curse, "Damn it, what the hell is this?" Tang Huin bent down and carefully observed the daring thief who dared to invade the Tang clan. Looking at his corpse-like pale skin and other strange signs, she was certain that the man in black had committed suicide by gritting his teeth and taking poison. It seemed that he had a shocking secret he wanted to hide. The torches throughout the Tang clan were as bright as day, the alarm bells were ringing everywhere. Assassins had broken in, capture them alive. After assembling the elite team, Tang Huin gave a stern order, immediately dividing the troops to pursue, determined not to let them escape. "Soryong, you and Guppai, Venom Blue Unit's leader, follow me." In the quiet of the night, in the middle of the dense bamboo forest, the torches flickered like fireflies, suddenly lit up, suddenly extinguished. The shouts echoed endlessly, "Catch them, catch them." The Tang clan members relentlessly pursued the enemy's trail. Guppai shouted as he ran, they hadn't escaped far, they had to catch the rats at all costs. Feeling the pursuit speed was too slow, Soryong looked at the blue spot centipedes in the universe bag with tears in his eyes, made up his mind, "Let's go, my jet engine." However, when his feet touched the ground, he unexpectedly slipped and fell into a deep hole, scaring him to death. Screaming "OAI OAI, triple A, OAI OAI." Guppai heard the miserable cry for help and quickly turned around in fear and shouted loudly, "Mr. Soryong." He and a trusted subordinate quickly returned, joined forces to pull Soryong out of the hole, and worriedly asked, "Are you okay?" Soryong struggled to crawl to the shore, breathed a sigh of relief, and expressed his thanks, thinking he had returned to visit his grandparents in the underworld. But suddenly he felt something was wrong. He turned his head to look down at the deep pit behind him, muttering doubtfully, "Huh?" Before his eyes was a sea of green and red snakes crowded together, raising their heads and pointing at him, causing his entire body to shiver, sweat pouring down like a shower, his heart filled with terror. "Huh? What is that, a nest of snakes?" Guppai's face also turned pale. He stared at the snake den for a while and then commented in a trembling voice, "It seemed to be a den of poisonous snakes." Snakes often gather in places with strong yin energy, especially during this season. They become even more aggressive. He was careful. In contrast to everyone's horror, the blue spot centipede seemed extremely interested. He muttered to himself. The group of baby snakes were all looking at him with wide eyes. They even opened their mouths and growled as if to show off their power. The Tang clan people were even more confused. How strange, usually the tiger-striped water snakes weren't this aggressive. Having said that, he looked at everyone with regret and his voice was full of regret. "It was my carelessness that delayed everyone. It looks like it's about to rain. Let's get going quickly." Guppai immediately replied, obeying Soryong's orders. Having wasted precious time, the Tang clan once again used all their strength to run like the wind, continuing to chase the enemy. Suddenly, a flash of fire appeared ahead. The leader shouted loudly, "Over there, capture them." Guppai quickly turned back, pointed in another direction and ordered, "Divide the troops, over there too." The three men in black had tall, alert faces as they watched the Tang clan members chasing closely behind them in the pitch black night and pouring rain. At this moment, a thunderclap rang out, tearing apart the quiet night. The two sides faced each other. The balance of power was as great as heaven and earth. The leader gave a deep command, tightening the siege, and fighting a decisive battle. Guppai also continued in a stern tone, "You rats have no way to escape." Having said that, he and his subordinates simultaneously reached into their chests and pulled out the weapons they had prepared. The men in black were not intimidated at all, drawing their swords and sabers to fight. The two sides struggled for a few short seconds, then the person from the Tang clan at the forefront shouted and attacked, then he fiercely charged forward. The other side knew that only by fighting to the end would they have a chance to survive. The leader swung his sword at the man in black, but he skillfully blocked it with his dual swords. "Tisk, those ants want your life." The buffalo-headed horse-faced man raised his nose and contemptuously spat out a sentence that reeked of gunpowder. His comrades beside him were no match for him, roaring like tigers and leopards, clearing a path for blood. Then he swung his saber like he was cutting bamboo, his terrifying aura causing the old hero with white hair and beard to stagger and almost fall. The junior was scared out of his wits and screamed. The senior was careful, but it was all just a drop in the ocean. At the critical moment, a sharp sword light tore through the rain curtain and quickly pounced on the black-clothed man, causing his soul to scatter and his limbs to tremble. This time, the man in black had regained his composure and quickly jumped back to avoid the attack. Finally, the young man used all his internal energy and released three lightning-like flying knives. It turned out to be Tang sect's famous three-shadow death technique. The three cold rays of light continuously pursued, forcing the man in black to continuously retreat, struggling like a dog running in the field. He gritted his teeth and jumped up to avoid a fatal flying knife at his feet. However, another flying knife seemed to have eyes and had predicted his intention. With pinpoint accuracy, it pierced his chest with a thud. Blood flowed out like a stream, dyeing his entire clothes red. He clutched his wound, his face pale, his mouth hissing like a wounded beast. Guppai gritted his teeth and growled, "You lucky black turtle." His eyes were like daggers, staring at the other person with a spiteful tone. Today, the dog yawned and caught a fly. The heavy rain had washed away the poison on the flying knives of the Tang sect group. At this moment, a series of eerie sounds echoed throughout the space, making the listener's hair stand on end. What a bunch of lowly insects gathering together. Gupai's nerves were on edge. He shouted loudly in alarm, "Which devil dares to speak up?" A figure descended from the sky, majestic and imposing, with just one palm strike. A rock as big as an elephant shattered into hundreds of pieces. The appearance was an old man with a ferocious face like a demon, his blood-red eyes emitting a chilling light. Feeling the powerful aura like Mount Tai collapsing down, Gupai's face paled and he quickly shouted to remind his teammates, "This is bad, the experts are coming, retreat quickly." His whole body emitted a faint blood light, and he let out a strange, hoarse laugh. The laughter stopped and the laughter ended horribly. He raised his voice and asked the black-clothed man who was gasping for breath on the ground, "Have you gotten that thing yet?" The man hurriedly took out an old book hidden in his chest, trembling as he offered it as a precious offering to the sect master. It was just a copy from the Tang sect. Soryong, who had been watching the stars for a while, was startled when he heard this and turned around to look. He remembered what the Grand Patriarch had said with extreme disgust, that only someone with evil intentions would look at this thing. The pale-faced boy exclaimed in horror, "Huh?" His heart was in turmoil. He thought in fear, could it be that this is a copy of that stupid book that Grandpa accidentally read last time? The boy hurriedly shouted to the person in front to warn him, "The Gupai warrior, be careful, that is the secret technique the Bloodhand so on claw." Just hearing the name already sounds bad. When Gupai heard that name, his attitude did not improve much. Cold sweat poured out like a shower. "What? Is that a copy of that disgusting manual?" He gritted his teeth, his face turned purple as he cursed, "Damn it, those rotten, evil bastards, what a pervert." Seeing the other party's indifferent attitude, Gupai flew into a rage and cursed straight at the old man's face. What kind of person would covet such an evil technique? "Do you dare to reveal your identity, you turtle?" Ignoring the scolding that was like a slap in the face, the old man flipped through the book and smiled smugly, as expected. It was just as I had predicted. Since it was a copy, it only had the techniques and lacked the profound secrets, but anyway, that was more than enough. After flipping through a few pages, he carelessly closed the book and ordered the injured man in black, "Blood Glory, I allow you to use the Blood Sect's ultimate technique, although it's a bit hasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to announce our return, the invincible Blood Sect." It turned out that the man in black was named Blood Glory. Hearing the old sect leader's order to let the chickens and dogs run away without mercy, he quickly clasped his hands and bowed his head in response, obeying the sect leader's orders. Then he lowered his hand, aiming straight at the black-clothed man lying face down on the ground, life or death unknown. The blood on the black-clothed man's body suddenly rose up, and a strong fishy smell spread in all directions. Seeing this strange scene, Soryong's eyes widened. He held his head and screamed as if he was possessed. What the hell is this? Oh my god, Gupai looked confused, muttering as if he was talking in his sleep. This move, the spiritual power in the black-clothed man's palm was densely condensing. The surrounding blood gradually gathered into his palm. Could it be that he was sucking the blood of a living person? Keng, the sound of the sword carrying poisonous blood fell to the cold ground. He held his wound that was gradually healing thanks to the strange magic. The old man sneered disdainfully, "Not bad, your eyes are not bad, kid." His hands had long, sharp claws that were condensing a terrifying red blood energy. He arrogantly introduced himself. "Listen carefully. I am none other than a blood cult elder, the Bloodhawk Dagger Claw. This is Gu Chonak." What a long-winded name. It sounds like the name of the neighbor's puppy. He stared at Soryong, assessing him from top to bottom. He looked delicious. "Nephew, very good, very good." His hands rubbed together vigorously, his mouth full of sharp teeth drooling. He licked his lips greedily like a hungry ghost. "It's been too long since I've tasted the essence of someone with spiritual roots like you. It must be delicious." In the pouring rain, both sides stared at each other warily, the situation hanging by a thread. Gu Chonak stuffed the manual into his chest, then arrogantly ordered the black-clothed blood shadow who had just stood up unsteadily, to capture that brat for me. Nothing helps this old man recover his vitality better than the essence of a young man. Ha ha ha. Blood Glory immediately bowed and said yes, obeying the sect leader's orders. Then, both of them, with murderous looks on their faces, charged towards the Sichuan Tang clan. Gupai screamed like a duck in panic, quickly set up the 5 poisons fire extinguishing formation. Absolutely do not let that old thief touch a single hair of Lord Soryong. Gu Chonak used his mobility arts to fly through the air and smiled coldly like a centipede climbing a wall. Ha ha ha. Try blocking me, you ants. His entire body emitted a scorching aura like a furnace, and he flew straight into the air like a kite. Below, a loud explosion and screams echoed everywhere. Soryong raised his arms to cover his head, avoiding the rocks flying towards his ears. Sweating profusely, a voice urgently reminded him, "Lord Soryong, quickly move away from this dangerous place." From behind, Blood Glory suddenly appeared like a demon. He grabbed the boy's neck tightly, causing Soryong to frown in surprise, his eyes wide open. His eyes flashed with a terrifying bloodthirsty cruelty. Blood Glory coldly spat out each word like a knife to the heart. "Rest a bit, kid. It seems that the elder has targeted your blood essence. Your fate is as bad as ink. Ha ha ha." Soryong's face turned pale as a banana leaf from the extreme difficulty of suffocation. In the moment of crisis, he gritted his teeth and called out softly like a mosquito, "My dear children, let's go." Immediately, a swarm of golden centipedes, shining like silk, rushed out from the boy's body like a swarm of bees. attacking the black-clothed man at a terrifying speed, following Soryong's order to bite the hell out of him. A leader centipede used all its strength to bite the back of the enemy's hand, while angrily chirping as if it wanted to tear the enemy to pieces. Blood Glory looked at the strange yellow creature in his hand, his face filled with confusion as he asked himself, "Centipede, what the hell is this?" While he was still absent-mindedly thinking, could it be? Then a sharp dagger flew through the air and stabbed straight into his head, causing blood to splatter like fireworks. Then, a terrifying force like an avalanche rushed straight at Blood Glory, sending him flying backwards like a kite with a broken string. Soryong quickly used his hand to block the bright light shining on his face, closing his eyes tightly. Then the boy dared to weakly turn his head when he heard a familiar voice calling out through the rain, "Soryong." Seeing the beautiful fairy like Tang Huin leading the crowd with an imposing aura. Behind him were the wall gang and the Grand Elder with solemn faces. The little boy happily jumped up and called out, "Sister Tang Huin, you finally came to save me." Tang Huin and the wall gang's expressions became more solemn than ever when they saw the horrifying scene before their eyes. Seeing Ji Qiaonic's entire body surrounded by dark energy like a demon, he easily beat up the Tang sect group like the back of his hand. Tang Huin hurriedly asked, "What the hell is going on in the 5 poisons fire extinguishing array?" Gupai's ears perked up, his eyes flashed like lightning as he turned towards Tang Huin and shouted softly, "Young miss." Without the time to beat around the bush, Gupai immediately raised his voice in alarm, "Young miss, it's not good. That old elder of the blood sect dares to suddenly attack our mansion." Tang Huin's willow-like eyebrows raised, his eyes widened in horror. "What? Blood sect?" Seeing that the situation was extremely serious, Tang Huin gave the order with great spirit. Everyone gathered to support Vice Captain Gupai. Wallgang immediately received the order and without delay shouted loudly, "I obey, young miss." The evil-eyed old man gently stroked his goatee, his voice low and growling, It seems that little girl is the one who defeated the bloodhand So on Claw." Tak Linyang, his face wrinkled, revealing a ferocious look like a demon. Licking his dry lips, he spoke with a greedy, sarcastic voice, "The bloodhand So on Claw." A resounding title, but in the end, it was just a piece of trash. Unexpectedly, it was bitten off by those tiny centipedes. What a bastard! Wallgang was so fierce that he shouted like thunder, "Shut up, dog. This place is your grave today." Ji Qiaonic completely ignored the threat. He raised his head to the sky and laughed arrogantly. The piercing sound pierced his eardrums like a demonic sound. "Haha, is that so? Let's see who will be the one to bury the dead here." The ground began to shake violently, as if there was a terrible earthquake. The old man frantically used his evil magic. The dark demonic energy around him violently raged. It was so dense that it made it difficult to breathe. His already thin hair now stood up like a lion's mane. His eerie, deep voice echoed throughout the space. "Let me see what you ants can do." In the woods, Soryong carefully bandaged the wound on his arm. He softly comforted her, "Just bear with it a little longer." He gritted his teeth and tightened the last knot, a strong sense of unease rising in his heart. The current situation was truly a precarious one. Looking at Ji Qiaonic, who was screaming madly, he was spinning around like a puppet, randomly picking up a subordinate. "The more we fought, the more our vitality was depleted. As for that blood sect devil, he only needed to suck blood to recover. If this continued, it would be a disaster." Just as Soryong was still lost in thought, a figure like a shooting star flashed past behind him. Boom! A loud crash hit the trunk of an ancient tree. Soryong was startled and quickly turned his head to look. He saw Tang Huin clenching his teeth, his delicate eyebrows furrowed so tightly that they could crush him to death. He tried to suppress the pain that pierced his bones. His voice was full of anxiety as he frantically said, "Tang Huin, young miss." Young miss. Suddenly, puff, a mouthful of hot fresh blood spurted from her mouth like a fountain. He panicked and reached out to grab her thin shoulders, his voice filled with worry and helplessness. "Tang Huin, young miss, are you okay?" Tang Huin tried to reassure him. A weak smile forced itself on her pale face. "I'm fine." Her 2 small hands trembled slightly. She held Soryong's hand tightly, her eyes looking straight into his. She called out seriously, "Soryong." Even though her face was haggard, extremely tired, she still tried to speak as if pleading, "You quickly return to the family. Urgently call for reinforcements. In the current situation, we are not strong enough to deal with these demons." Soryong frowned as if he wanted to twist his eyebrows, gritting his teeth. He cursed silently in his heart. Damn it, seeing that Ji Qiaonic still acting so arrogant and reckless, he was extremely frustrated. He felt so useless. He was truly useless in this battle, unable to do anything. Seeing the situation getting more and more dire, Captain Wallgang quickly turned his head and said in a tragic voice, "Lord Soryong, please, for the sake of the clan, for the sake of the entire Sichuan Tang sect, please leave this place quickly. Go and ask for reinforcements." The Grand Elder also responded, his hoarse voice carrying a certain determination, "We will fight to the death to defend here. Please leave quickly." Time was running out. Soryong fell silent after hearing what everyone said, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He didn't know what to do. After a long while, he finally opened his mouth to respond to everyone. I understand. I will help you get back to full strength as soon as possible. But I still have some hesitation in my heart, uncertainty. However, my mobility arts are still immature. I don't know if I can complete this mission." Tang Huin heard that and suddenly turned around to hug him, softly cheered, you will definitely do it, I believe in you." In the hidden scene behind Soryong's back, 2 streams of hot tears flowed down Tang Huin's face. She choked and emphasized, "You will definitely do it. You've been training so hard all this time, I saw it with my own eyes." Soryong's whole body paused for a moment, resting his chin on her soft hair. Her voice, as gentle as water, rang in his ears, "And next time, let's go find poison together. I still remember that promise clearly." The two reluctantly separated. Tang Huin held his broad shoulders tightly, solemnly instructed, "Soryong, it's all up to you." Then she quickly turned around, resolutely ran towards the smoky battlefield. Only Soryong remained standing silently, staring at her strong back. His expression became absent-minded and bewildered. He muttered like a lost soul, "Damn it," he couldn't delay another moment. He gritted his teeth and turned to run in the opposite direction, determined to carry out his mission of survival. The sound of his footsteps splashing in the water echoed in the quiet night. He ran and panted like a buffalo, sweat mixed with cold rain. Because he was too tired and stressed, he didn't notice a bumpy pebble under his feet. He suddenly tripped over it, lost his balance and fell forward like a dog eating mud. His strong body lay sprawled on the wet ground, covered in mud. He lay motionless, seemingly without any strength left to get up. Centipedes crawled out from his body at this moment. Their worried squeaking sounds continued to ring out, like the cries of a baby. Soryong the human sat up, his mind a little dizzy, thinking to himself, "How strange, how could I be so useless?" He poked the plump cheek of the leader centipede, thinking to himself, self-reproach, even if he risked his life to use all his power to use mobility arts, it would still take him half a day to reach his family's door. But almost all the real experts in the clan have left to do other missions. Even if I call for reinforcements, I'm afraid they won't be able to arrive in time. By then, things will definitely have cooled down. He raised his head to look at the pitch-black night sky. Only the rain continued to pour down, splashing straight onto his pale face. The icy rain soaked into his skin, but instead made his mind a little more clear. He gradually understood the truth of the matter. They must have wanted to save me, so they deliberately sent me. As if a 1,000-pound sledgehammer had violently struck the top of his head, his eyes widened in shock. Why? Why me? Hands clenched into fists, countless questions continuously resounded in mind like thunder and wind. Because I am the youngest? Because I am the weakest, so I must be protected? This is the so-called chivalry in the martial arts world. What the hell am I? Remembering the gentle and warm appearance of the head of the family when he announced to the whole clan, "From today onwards, you are officially a member of my Tang sect." The voice of the family head still echoed in his ears. He muttered those 2 important words. His family looked blankly at his open hand and whispered as if talking to themselves. I had never seriously thought about the meaning of the word family before. I had always thought that I had never truly been a true member of the Sichuan Tang clan. Each line of memory flashed through my mind like a slow-motion film. The smiling images of everyone in the family appeared clearly before his eyes. But they all see me as family. I am the only one who has always been self-conscious, closed off. There is still a trace of worry on his face. The corner of his mouth slightly curls up into a bitter smile. He asks himself softly, his voice carrying a bit of self-mockery, "How can a family of assassins be so warm and humane?" It is truly strange. Soryong struggled to stand up slowly, his handsome face showing unprecedented determination. He lowered his head to look at the little centipede surrounding his feet and said gently, "Let's go and save your wives." They seemed to understand what he said and responded happily, chirping excitedly. As soon as Soryong finished speaking, he turned into a sharp arrow and shot straight forward at an astonishing speed. Soryong clenched his fists and told himself, I want to save those people. I must think of a way. I must do it." Recalling the evil face of old man Jiyu Chonak, the young man's mind quickly recalled the words blood sect, fresh blood, healing, nearby demonic beasts, poisonous animals, poisonous herbs, like the snakes and toads that he had just imagined that delicious thing. His footsteps stopped abruptly, his heels stomping hard on the ground. Staring at the cave in front of him, Soryong couldn't help but feel doubtful. The lair of the snake spirits? Sure enough, the red-eyed snakes were still entangled there. The giant centipede on Soryong's shoulder suddenly jumped and squeaked frantically. He quickly lowered his head and raised his hand to stroke and comfort him. "Good baby, it'll be over soon." Having finished speaking, he gently placed the dozing centipede on the ground. The 2 little centipedes saw their big brother sleeping soundly and also chirped in agreement. Soryong turned around and flew straight towards the cave filled with the smell of snakes, leaving behind a few centipedes with confused faces and squeaking in confusion. The poisonous snakes in the cave simultaneously raised their heads and turned to look at the figure in front, their faces revealing obvious joy. Soryong's face was calm, his voice was confident. A great hero must act firmly and decisively. According to ancient secret books, this blood-red willow snake, also known as the grass flower snake, is a highly poisonous snake. At this moment, Soryong stood still like a statue in the snake den. Countless venomous snakes were tightly wrapping around his arms and legs. Unlike other venomous snakes that had large fangs right in front of their mouths, this species had tiny fangs deep inside its jaws, so injecting venom seemed a bit more difficult. But in terms of toxicity, this is truly the ultimate in land-based venomous snakes in this East Asian land. Soryong tried to endure each bite of teeth that was tearing at his body, his mouth muttering like a mantra, "That's right, keep biting harder, my dear." with Tang sect's unique internal energy technique protecting his body, he should be fine. The centipedes above poked their heads down to look around, squeaking nervously and seeming impatient. Soryong heard this and immediately reassured them, "Don't worry, no problem, I'll show you guys later." Having said that, he glanced down, his body suddenly stopped again. His arm was now covered with countless snake bite marks, and the surrounding skin was starting to visibly redden. He nodded and thought, this should be enough. Soryong glanced around the cave again, thinking to himself, it was time to run away. Lost in thought, he did not notice a snake sneakily wrapping around his neck. The feeling on his neck suddenly became strange as the snake tightened its grip. Only then did Soryong startle in horror. What the hell was going on? Soryong looked up at the snakes coiled around his feet as if they were trying to strangle him, along with countless greedy eyes staring at him. His mouth opened in horror. This was bad. This was really strange. He knew he had to keep his head as cool as possible, but he couldn't help but curse. Damn it, game over. This move wasn't in the script. The centipede suddenly jumped down from above and landed on Soryong's head. The snake on his neck was also knocked off its feet by the two centipedes, making way for the two uninvited guests. They looked happy and cheerful. Soryong asked suspiciously, "Who are these?" The snake that had just fallen to the ground raised its head and opened its mouth to hiss angrily when it saw the centipedes. The centipede on Soryong's head glared at it with its eyes wide open, looking clearly resentful. Immediately after that, it jumped down and bit the snake's throat, then threw it to the ground as if brushing off its clothes. It held the snake tightly in its mouth, waving it around to intimidate the surrounding snakes, making them not dare to attack Soryong anymore. Soryong was also swaying profusely, stuttering, "By Bin, that centipede named Bin." Bin raised his head and squeaked when he heard him call his name. "Good job, Bin." After a long fight, now it was the snake's turn to be silent and not dare to make a move. Soryong touched it and muttered, "You guys are worried about your dad, right? Thank you guys so much." After the centipede named Bin settled on his head, Soryong chuckled and said to them, "Good, let's go back to the mansion guys." At this time, on Tang Huin's side, the rain was still pouring down. She was exhausted and breathing heavily. Seeing old Jiyu Jonak sucking blood again, Tang Huin couldn't help but feel worried. If this continued, it would really be over. Wolfgang was choked by the old man. Jiyu Chionak's face revealed a terrifyingly cunning expression. He thought to himself, this is as easy as pie. Hearing his arrogant roar, there is no brat left who dares to take a single hit from me. Tang Huin's group was boiling with anger. As for her, she was now secretly speculating that Soryong must have retreated peacefully. After thinking, Tang Huin took out his whip and approached him step by step. Then he ordered, "Everyone, fight a guerrilla war and hold him off from afar for me. I will fight him alone. Quickly send a distress signal to the nearby experts." One of them nodded repeatedly in response, obeying young Mrs. orders. The Tang clan elder suddenly blocked Tang Huin's way and tried to stop him. "Huin, you should also retreat with Soryong." Tang Huin heard this and immediately exclaimed, "What?" The elder's face was solemn. He said decisively, "How could someone with the Tang clan's bloodline risk their lives to leave their loved ones who were struggling to fight and escape alone?" Tang Huin quickly retorted, "If we can't even save a life that is as worthless as grass, how can we still have the face to look at the master?" Jiyu Chonak, deaf and fearless, looked at the crowd of people chatting excitedly and growled, "Hurry up and leave, don't talk nonsense anymore. We, the Tang clan, swear to live and die together, and will never abandon our comrades." "Shut up, you ants are making too much noise," the old monster roared, his voice like rolling thunder cutting through the tense atmosphere. He curled his lips into a cold smile. His evil eyes seemed to want to devour the Tang clan alive. Wouldn't it be more interesting to let the prey struggle a little? Haha, thinking about the scene where Tang's sect instantly turned into ashes, Jiyu Chonak stroked his goatee, curling his lips in a sinister manner. If he didn't make a big move at this point, how would he be worthy of the title of Blood Demon? He would level Tang's sect and turn this place into a living hell. Wouldn't that be the perfect introduction for the Blood sect's reappearance in the martial arts world? Such a terrifying scene was indeed necessary. Hearing this, Elder Tang's sect was so angry that his hair and beard stood on end. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "You damn dog. This old thief really has no intention of letting anyone live." Tang Huin's eyebrows raised, knowing in his heart that retreating would only lead to death. His jade hand lightly swung the whip, his voice resolute as if hammering in a nail. "In that case, today, even if my bones and flesh are crushed here, I must peel off this old thief's scales." The person beside me heard this and respectfully accepted the order. "Young Miss said it right, we are willing to live and die together." Even though they knew that the other party was an unpredictable devil, the fire of determination burned in everyone's eyes. Jiyu Chonak glanced at the group of people who were like ants, the corners of his mouth curling up in a look of utter contempt. At this moment, a clear but determined voice rang out, breaking the stifling atmosphere. Miss Huin's words were very reasonable. A good man from the Tang clan would never abandon his brothers and sisters and run away. Tang Huin was stunned when she heard that. Her mouth opened in shock. Soryong. Even though his body was in tatters as if he had just gone through a fierce battle, Soryong's spirit was extremely excited, his eyes shining like stars. She hurriedly raised her jade hand to caress her cheek, found her voice again, and stammered in horror, "Soryong, why did you come back?" In her heart at this moment, it was like there were thousands of horses galloping. She was in a panic. Soryong closed his eyes, His fingers gently caressed the centipedes on his body, calmly explaining his sudden appearance. I once said, we Tang clan people were born to protect our loved ones. Saying that, the young man without hesitation tore off his clothes and threw them on the ground as if throwing away a burden. As soon as the clothes fell, a strong body with rippling muscles like a dragon hidden under a firm layer of skin appeared, with an imposing aura. A brilliant plan already came to mind. Soryong spoke heroically, I, Soryong, am also a member of the Tang clan. With that, he gripped the short knife tightly with both hands and stomped his feet on the ground. His body shot straight towards Ji Yuchonak like an arrow. The old monster glanced at the young man charging forward, his composure still intact, as if he was looking at a powerless ant struggling. Tang Huin saw this and screamed in horror, Soryong, don't be reckless. Ji Yuchonak sneered in mockery, he, I spared your life for your dog's sake. I didn't expect you to be so stupid as to throw yourself into the trap and seek your own death, you fool. Soryong jumped into the air, brandishing his twin swords with ferocious momentum like a tiger descending a mountain, and let out a loud shout. The sound echoed throughout the space. Tang Huin witnessed this scene and her heart stopped beating. She cried out, Soryong. Ji Yuchiana waved his sleeve slightly, an invisible gust of wind swept past, lifting him into the air like a feather. The remaining hand condensed pitch-black demonic energy. The old monster laughed strangely, a disgusting sound rang out, oh, voluntarily sacrificing blood essence, I like this kind of good thing more. Having said that, the old monster threw a palm towards Soryong's stomach, his eyes filled with anticipation. Let me taste what the youth's essence blood tastes like. Soryong quickly raised both hands, desperately defending himself. Ji Yuchianak's hand with sharp claws like daggers tightly gripped both of his hands. The old monster's force was so strong that it made Soryong groan in pain. He laughed smugly, ha ha, what a fool, don't you know that blood also flows through the arm? The fresh blood on Soryong's hand began to rise into the air, being sucked up by the old monster's evil magic. Feeling as if all the blood in his body was being drained, Soryong gritted his teeth and let out a painful roar, ah. Tang Huin cried out in panic, Soryong, save Soryong young warrior. Ji Yuchonak contentedly watched the young man's blood fly in the air and laugh like crazy, ha 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 ha. Wonderful, so sweet, how many years has it been since I tasted the pure essence of a young man, it is truly the best. Feeling satisfied, the old monster's body slowly descended, his feet stomping on the ground, rubble flew everywhere, and fire flew in all directions. Then the old monster roared and unleashed his ultimate blood wheel technique. The surrounding space became abnormally hot, the violent wind blew Tang's sect's group away like fallen leaves in autumn. Tang Huin hurriedly supported Soryong's broken body and cried out in pain, Soryong. Ji Yuchonak laughed coldly, ha ha ha, you ants are really annoying. Throwing hidden weapons like flies, but thanks to this stupid kid, he caught them all in one net, finished it off for me. Tang Huin hugged Soryong's body and cried miserably, Soryong, wake up quickly, Ji Yuchonak arrogantly declared, don't worry, I will send you on your way gently and painlessly. Tang Huin was shocked and hugged Soryong tightly. She cried out in despair, impossible, absolutely not. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the tragic atmosphere. Soryong slowly opened his eyes, a strange white, slimy liquid flowing from the corner of his mouth. The old monster was terrified and struggled to speak, you, what the hell did you do? Suddenly realizing that his hair and beard were like autumn leaves, Ji Yuchonak was shocked to discover, this is filled with evil poison. The old monster's whole body trembled, and his voice revealed extreme terror. No, I can't believe it, how could this happen? How could my protective technique be invaded by evil attacks? The old man covered his head with both hands and screamed in horror, this was something against the heavens, what kind of monster are you to be able to do this? Soryong's mouth corners curled up into a strange smile, and he asked in a low voice, you're asking who I am? He pointed weakly at Ji Yuchonak and said in a voice like thunder, I am your nemesis. Ji Yuchonak felt his body getting weaker and weaker. Hearing Soryong say that, he asked in surprise, what? Nemesis. Soryong's side was not very optimistic either, his eyes were starting to blur, his consciousness was gradually fading. Ji Yuchionak's face turned pale, cold sweat soaked his face, I have been hit by what evil spell? Ji Yuchonak recalled the moment just now, after using that brat's blood energy to attack, my blood energy no longer listened to my orders. It had betrayed its master. The old monster tried to stomp his foot on the ground but had no strength left, his body was as soft as a noodle. Ji Yuchonak muttered, the blood cult's beautiful kingdom was right before his eyes. Footsteps slid on the ground, the old monster screamed unwillingly, unable to fall here. Ah, his face suddenly revealed a ferocious look, Ji Yuchonak madly howled, die. Die all for me. Huin raised his guard, tightening the whip in his hand. Then she swung her whip like a coiled dragon, lashing it hard towards her opponent. With a swish, the whip was wrapped tightly around the old monster's throat. Huin's eyes widened, unable to believe his eyes. Seeing Ji Yuchionak's weak resistance, she secretly wondered in surprise, did this move succeed? An evil demon like him, could he not dodge this attack? The old monster struggled in vain, sweating profusely. Ji Yuchonak gritted his teeth and cursed, you stinking brat. Even swallowing you is disgusting. What the hell did you do to my bloodline? He tried his best to pull the whip, threatening madly, I will kill all of you ants. Blood cult will be reborn in the human world, dominating the world. Huin tried his best to pull the whip, shouting loudly, shut up for me, die. Thump, with a sound, Gu Qiaonic's skull was separated from his neck and rolled to the ground. The two words blood cult just ended and then stopped. Seeing the old monster's head flying away, everyone was stunned into silence. Gu Pei asked in surprise, I really won? Our young miss took the life of the old blood cult with one sword. Miss Huin Young was speechless, her eyes widened as she looked at Soryong and stammered. Soryong, what the hell is going on? Her only response was a voice as weak as a thin thread. Huin, save me, save me. I only saw the youth's whole body sweating like he was taking a bath, his mouth foaming as he struggled to utter each word. Perhaps, I need to detoxify, I was poisoned by the tiger-striped water snake. Huin heard this and almost lost her soul, she cried out in shock, the tiger-striped water snake. What the hell is going on? When Soryong woke up, he slowly opened his eyes and found himself lying on the bed, with silver threads still on the corner of his mouth. He made a strange sound, ah. The Grand Patriarch saw that he had regained consciousness and quickly reminded him. Your body is still very weak, don't act rashly. Huin's voice was also filled with worry. Soryong, lie there obediently for me. Soryong moved his body slightly and felt a sharp pain in his bones. He immediately groaned out loud. Oh my god, only then did he realize that he was not wearing any clothes on his upper body. Lying face down on the bed, he vaguely felt a warm finger carrying heat moving back and forth on his back. He couldn't help but feel extremely surprised. This was exactly what kind of awkward situation he was in. Huin then breathed a sigh of relief, his tone slightly reproachful. It's good that you're awake. The Grand Patriarch slowly announced. You have been unconscious for 10 days, you know that? Soryong was shocked and scared after hearing that. He stammered and asked again. 10 days. Huin sat to the side and slowly recounted the whole story. After you lost consciousness, luckily you appeared in time like a divine soldier and general. Only then were we able to successfully kill that devil. After that, everyone rushed to bring you back to the clan for treatment. Thinking back to that situation, she still felt scared. You were poisoned so badly. If Grandpa hadn't returned in time, you would have definitely died. Soryong couldn't help but sigh inwardly when she heard that. Oh my, what an unlucky person. Bitten by a poisonous snake twice. Almost went to hell. After everything was settled, the Grand Patriarch's voice slowly rang out. Well, it seems that he has regained consciousness, so there should be no more problems. But wait, Soryong struggled to sit up. He replied very respectfully, thank you, Grandpa. But before he could regain his composure, the Grand Patriarch grabbed his shoulders and shook him back and forth until he felt dizzy. The Root asked, wait a minute Soryong, is the tiger-striped water snake really poisonous? And what kind of trick did you guys use to defeat that blood cult elder? Soryong coughed a few times in response. Let me slowly explain everything to you. He rubbed his dizzy head that felt like it was about to split in two. He raised 2 fingers and affirmed firmly. Grandpa, first of all, let me confirm this once again. The tiger-striped water snake is indeed poisonous. Moreover, it is twice as poisonous as normal snakes, no joke. It has 2 types of poison. One is inside the mouth. The other comes from a poison gland right at the back of the neck. Huin was shocked when she heard that. 2 kinds. The Grand Patriarch was equally shocked. He widened his eyes and said, huh? I've lived this long and this is the first time I've heard of such a strange thing. Soryong nodded and replied, yes, that's right. This snake is inherently terribly cowardly. Whenever it sees a human figure, it quickly hides. Moreover, its poisonous teeth are very small. So in fact, until the 1980s, people still believed that the tiger-striped water snake was non-venomous. Only then did the Grand Patriarch suddenly realize something and hurriedly continued speaking. So the blood cult elder's internal energy being scattered was also related to this matter? But the blood cult were clearly a bunch of demons and monsters with iron bodies and bodies, immune to all kinds of poison. Soryong then slowly stated his guess. Well, this is just my subjective guess, but it is very likely that it is caused by the unparalleled toxicity of the tiger-striped water snake. Soryong slowly analyzed while stroking his chin. Perhaps that is also the reason why their blood, the fundamental source of their evil skills, was severely affected and led to the miserable state they were in. The Grand Patriarch could not help but let out a profound exclamation upon hearing this. He was filled with amazement at the new knowledge he had just acquired. It turned out that people had never known that the tiger-striped water snake was such a dangerous and venomous snake. I heard that its venom is 5 times stronger than that of a normal ferocious viper. If it is also affected by that evil yin energy, the venom will become even more terrifying and terrifying. His tone suddenly became unusually agitated. It was truly unbelievable that such a powerful venomous snake could exist in our small Sichuan region. Huin also happily agreed, absolutely amazing, Soryong, you have truly accomplished a glorious feat this time. The Grand Patriarch growled and spoke solemnly. Oh right, I remember just hearing Huin vaguely recount it. He crossed his arms and looked at Soryong with a meaningful smile. It seemed that the blood cult elder even called him their natural enemy. Soryong couldn't help but blush when he heard that. He thought to himself, this title sounds a bit too arrogant. Did he really say something like that time? Hearing that hearty laughter, Soryong was so embarrassed that he wished he could disappear right there. He quickly grabbed the blanket and covered his flushed face. Seeing this, the Grand Patriarch patted him on the shoulder and teased him even more. Ha ha ha, yes. If in the future you can completely seal away all the evil martial arts of those demons and monsters, then you will truly be a natural enemy that cannot escape. Suddenly, the Grand Patriarch's tone became unusually serious. Soryong, on behalf of the entire Tang clan, I sincerely thank you for protecting our clan. He clenched his fists and continued resolutely, they dared to take advantage of my absence to do despicable things to my clan. This time I will definitely not let them off, I swear I will eradicate these pests. Soryong had long considered the Tang clan as his second family, so he answered without hesitation. Yes, Grandpa, we must completely exterminate these hateful pests. Now that we have a firm grasp on their vital weakness, all that remains is to gather a large quantity of the tiger-striped water snake's venom. Remembering the name Gu Chonak, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and his vicious hunting dog subordinates, Soryong gritted his teeth and swore in his heart. These damned animals, this time I will definitely eradicate them completely. Even their evil spirits must be wiped out. Recently, the atmosphere at the Tang clan has been extremely bustling and noisy. Because ever since that evil blood cult group appeared, the Tang clan has officially fallen into a state of red alert. The Grand Patriarch was busy every day, tying rolled letters to the legs of carrier pigeons, asking for help everywhere. Countless martial arts masters of the Tang clan suffered tragic casualties, and many even lost their lives unjustly at the hands of the devil. Therefore, the famous and righteous sects in the martial arts world of the Central Plains are also noisily gathering troops to join forces with the Tang clan to help. Determined to work together to completely destroy the evil blood cult that is trying to make waves in this martial arts world. Not only did he arbitrarily capture innocent people to practice evil blood essence techniques, 30 years ago he also caused a great massacre, becoming the public enemy of the entire righteous martial arts world. This time the situation was probably even more serious. Seeing the look of utter shock on Soryong's face, the old man placed his wrinkled hand on his shoulder. He tried to comfort him, but this time fate had decided differently. There was a strong confidence hidden in his voice, because the Tang clan's Sichuan was the nemesis that the heavens had arranged for this evil blood cultist. Soryong curled his lips in resentment upon hearing this, secretly complaining in his heart, Grandpa, you're deliberately saying that to tease me, aren't you? Hearing his inner voice, the old man turned his head and just smiled, haha, as a response. Then the old man spoke in a low voice with a hint of solemnity, Soryong, Grandpa has a request, are you willing to help me? Soryong immediately turned around and replied without hesitation, Grandpa, just give me your orders. As long as it is within my ability, even if I have to use all my strength to deal with it, I will not dare to refuse. The Grand Patriarch solemnly announced, the righteous Muram Alliance people, I'm afraid they're about to arrive at the Tang clan. Soryong exclaimed in surprise when he heard these words, what he meant was, this time there are also Muram Alliance people working with us. The old man continued, that's right, I want you to show them the strange poison you've researched. Now that we've found the fatal weakness of the blood cult, of course we have to share this secret with all of our fellow martial artists. Knowing the importance of the matter, Soryong did not hesitate and immediately agreed, I understand. If it is for the sake of martial arts justice, our Tang clan naturally cannot refuse. The Grand Patriarch was very pleased to hear that, he nodded and smiled, ha, I knew you would say that. After saying that, the old man continued, and this Soryong, Grandpa has another good news to tell you. Soryong asked in surprise, oh, I wonder what news it is, Grandpa? The Grand Patriarch led Soryong to a secret place, then mysteriously said that the renovation of the Myriad Poisons Hall was complete. From now on, the Myriad Poisons Hall would officially be managed by Soryong, the eldest son. Soryong's voice revealed a hint of disbelief, as he asked in surprise, is this true, Grandpa? Soryong's eyes instantly lit up, and he was overjoyed. This day had finally come. The old man continued to release earth-shattering news. Just as he had wished, Grandpa had also prepared a special room for him to cultivate poisonous animals. To cultivate the world-famous tiger-striped water snake, of course, there had to be a perfect place. Soryong was extremely grateful and exclaimed, oh, thank you Grandpa. Soryong was extremely grateful for his kindness. Looking at the silhouette of the flying crane that had disappeared into the horizon, the old man smiled softly and said, think of this as something you are doing for the martial arts world. Do your best and don't let down your grandfather's expectations. Soryong also smiled slightly in response, I understand, Grandpa. Soryong will definitely not disappoint your expectations. Then Soryong followed the Grand Patriarch's instructions, to the place the old man had said. Before his eyes appeared a majestic and magnificent scene, and he could not help but be shocked. Next to Soryong was Miss Huin Young, a beauty that made everyone fall in love. Soryong thought for a moment, then named this place the Poison Garden, meaning the garden that nurtured all poisons. Miss Huin Young couldn't help but ask suspiciously when she saw this. Soryong smiled and explained, this place was created to collect rare beasts, gathering all kinds of poisonous insects in the central plains. Huin was still a bit doubtful, and asked again, you mean, you want to collect all the poisonous animals in the world? Soryong's tone became extremely serious, of course. In the future, I still want to collect the 10 great poisonous creatures of the famous central plains, because I had promised Miss Huin young. Huin's face suddenly turned as red as a tomato. She covered her mouth and shyly said, I'll cheer you up. Just then, Huin discovered a group of people gathering in the distance, and quickly ran towards it. Shouting loudly, there seems to be a lot of people gathering over there. Let's go take a look. Soryong quickly called out, Miss Huin young, please wait. As the two approached, a big man stood waiting with his arms crossed, speaking arrogantly, oh, the young master has finally arrived. Soryong was surprised to recognize this person and couldn't help but ask, could this be the former deputy master? The big man smiled and replied, that's right, it's me. The poison division, Gu Pei, greets the young master. Soryong was still doubtful, and asked again, the poison division, Gu Pei nodded and replied. Exactly, this is the new army that the family head established under his orders. From now on, your subordinates will be the young master's effective assistants in searching for and cultivating poisonous animals. Please give your subordinates full command over you. Soryong looked at the crowd behind him in surprise, his face flushed with excitement. Thinking of his boundless future, Soryong happily thought to himself, even the animal care staff were poisonous. The family really spared no expense in training me. This was a major turning point on the path to realizing my great dream, Soryong. Scene changes to another location. The courier crane has brought the secret letter to its destination. A woman in white clothes as snow, her jade hands gently opened the letter, carefully reading each line inside. After reading the content, the white-clothed woman softly chanted a Buddhist name, Amitabha Buddha. The evil blood cult reappeared in the martial arts world. She raised her head to look at the deep blue sky and sighed softly. In the midst of the peace and prosperity of the Central Plains, a bloody storm was about to break out. On the main road, Zhu Junhak's group was still moving forward cautiously. The old man with white hair turned around and announced, Advisor, we're almost there. We can stop at the Tang clan today. Hearing this, Jiggle Hu breathed a sigh of relief. He could finally escape the situation of using the sky as a curtain and the earth as a mat. What a blessing. Thinking about Zhu Junhak's evil deeds, Jiggle Hu told himself that he had to bring back at least some valuable information this time. If he could find even a little clue about the blood cult, then this trip would not have been in vain. Finally, the group arrived at Tang Clan Manor. The silver-haired old man spoke, finally seeing Tang Clan Manor. The guards of the Tang Clan saw the group approaching and hurriedly asked, are you all the honored guests from the righteous Muram Alliance? Jiggle Hu nodded and replied, that's right, I am the strategist of the Muram Alliance, Jiggle Hu. The guards clasped their hands and bowed their heads, saying respectfully, thanking all the experts for coming to the Tang Clan from so far away. Please wait a moment. Another guard hurriedly ran inside to report. Suddenly, the guard from earlier spoke in a low voice, Advisor, please stop. He appeared serious and carefully advised, when you enter the Tang Clan Manor, there are some things that you must be extremely careful about. Jiggle Hu asked curiously, what is the matter that needs attention? The old man with white beard speculated, could it be that the Tang Clan had created the divine Mindful? Mindful is said to be an inviolable sacred place in front of the main gates of major sects. All pilgrims must lay down their weapons and show absolute respect. The mountain gate guard stammered, his voice trembling slightly. I'm afraid this matter will shock everyone, but please listen to me. Even the tiniest microorganism is absolutely not allowed to take their life in this Tang clan. Jiggle Hu was stunned, and asked doubtfully, could it be that the entire Tang clan has converted to Buddhism? The guard emphasized once again, his tone solemn. Everyone who entered will understand. They must engrave this in their hearts. Jiggle Hu could only let out a doubtful, oh. Soryong and Huin clasped their hands together and bowed, their voices resounding, greeting the wise advisor and leader, with honor and welcome. Jiggle Hu also smiled and returned the greeting in a polite tone, Huin young miss, long time no see. Huin smiled and replied, yes, it has been a year since we met at the martial arts convention. Jiggle Hu asked again, where is Senior Tang Museong now? She bowed her head slightly, her voice a little apologetic. Grandfather had already left the sect, wandering the world in search of traces of the blood cult. Please forgive me for the somewhat sloppy reception. Jiggle Hu quickly waved his hand, appearing unconcerned. No, it was important to check the situation of the martial arts world. Why was there a need to be so polite? Then his eyes suddenly stopped on the person beside Huin. He couldn't help but wonder, who is this handsome young warrior beside him? Soryong smiled, took a step forward, clasped his hands in greeting. Ah, this is the first time meeting the military advisor. He solemnly introduced himself, I am Wei Soryong. Hearing this, Jiggle Hu felt even more suspicious. Wei, isn't it the Tang clan? Huin's cheeks suddenly turned red, she shyly pointed at Soryong and stuttered. This person is my soulmate. The surrounding crowd immediately stirred. A common love, the poisonous flower of martial arts actually has a common love. This matter is truly unforgivable. They screamed in indignation, tears falling like rain. Where did this brat come from? Arrogant and reckless, the world is so unfair. Jigglehu hurriedly took out a bamboo fan and covered his face with it, coughed a few times, cough cough, quickly lead the way. I'm afraid that if we delay for a moment, these heroes here will want to discuss martial arts with this young warrior. Suddenly a strange sound tore through the noisy atmosphere, attracting everyone's attention. Jigglehu raised his head and looked up, asking doubtfully, did you all hear any strange sounds? A sharp-eyed person quickly pointed up into the sky and exclaimed, up there. Look, a swarm of bees is coming. The crowd was terrified and exclaimed in unison, that's not the legendary golden-haired king bee. Why did such a dangerous poisonous insect appear in the Tang clan? The crowd immediately became chaotic. Some hurriedly rushed forward to shield Soryong and Huin, while others cautiously retreated to protect young Miss Huin. Oh, that's it. Soryong quickly spoke up to stop them. Everyone quickly put your swords away. He patted the shoulder of the person in front, gently explaining, it must be because of the Tang clan's rules. The other person was still uneasy, his tone was tense. Young hero, quickly move away. The golden-haired king bee is an extremely dangerous poisonous animal. Just one bite is enough to take the life of a mortal. Soryong was forced to the point that her face turned red and she had difficulty saying the words. It was the golden-haired king bee. Feeling that this explanation was not right, Soryong poured all his inner energy into his dantian and let out a thunderous roar. The golden-haired king bee is a poisonous insect that I have raised. Everyone calm down. The other person opened his mouth in surprise and asked, What, you raised them? As if to prove his words, a golden-haired king bee flew down, affectionately rubbing its head against Soryong's cheek and making affectionate chirps. Then one by one, the bees came and surrounded Soryong as if to say hello. Soryong gently stroked them and asked softly, Are you little guys looking for me? That's right, I've been in seclusion for a while now. Then he sternly warned, Hey, I warn you, you are not allowed to spray poison on the honored guests. The other guy stood there dumbfounded, thinking to himself, he's treating the golden-haired king bee like a child? The tense atmosphere, filled with the enthusiasm of the young martial artists, suddenly deflated. After the terrifying background music, the group followed Huin into the reception hall. Jigglehu walked and thought deeply, this character, I really could not have expected that he was the Taoist companion of Miss Tang Huin Young. Even though he was an outsider, he could be considered the son-in-law of the Tang clan. Suddenly, a noisy sound came from the front. Jigglehu let out a soft hum filled with doubt. A big man pointed at the glass jar and said loudly, Wouldn't a poisonous insect like this be more suitable for the Tang clan? The girl next to her raised her gecko and protested, What are you saying? Look at it, it's shining like jade. Jigglehu had a splitting headache and thought to himself, what's going on? He quickly pulled Soryong's hand and asked curiously, Soryong young warrior, why are those warriors surrounding a strange creature? Soryong heard that and glanced over, making a soft ah sound. After hearing the whole story, he explained that they were all affected by venomous creature companionship punishment. Jigglehu was even more confused and asked, venomous creature companionship punishment? What, did they break some school rule? Soryong frowned and stroked his chin, thinking, breaking the rules. It was true that it was breaking the rules. This happened a few days ago. In the pitch-black night, Huin stood to one side and pointed, there. Feel the vital energy still flowing out. Soryong gestured and asked excitedly, is it like this? Huin shook her head and replied softly, Soryong, it's not like this. Suddenly an urgent sound tore through the quiet night. Soryong young warrior, Ji Pei led two of his men along. All three of them bowed their heads and looked extremely troubled. Seeing this, Soryong asked curiously, Senior Ji Pei, what's the matter? Ji Pei hesitated, his voice trembling slightly. I'm truly sorry, Soryong young warrior. Gathering all his courage, Ji Pei continued. This time, more than half of the fish we worked so hard to catch were used as food for the tiger-striped water snake. Soryong heard that and made a soft ah sound. He asked again, Are they dead? He expressed his sympathy. Sigh. This was unavoidable. These fish were very sensitive. If they were too alarmed, the mother might even swallow her young. Ji Pei shook his head repeatedly, revealing shocking news. No, those martial artists had already used them as food. Soryong thought he had misheard and quickly raised his hand to cover his ears. Ji Pei emphasized again. They had eaten them as snacks. Soryong was struck by lightning. He opened his mouth in surprise and asked, What? Impossible. You mean they ate fish as a snack? Why did they eat it? Huin explained softly. 3 squeaks is a Hainan specialty. They usually dip live baby fish into the sauce and eat it. Soryong stood there like a stone statue, his face pale. Ji Pei bowed again. Tan sincerely apologized to Soryong young warrior. Huin continued, There were some people from Hainan. They said they missed the taste of home. And they just ate it, that's how it was. Soryong stood there, dumbfounded, screaming in his heart. The young fish I worked so hard to catch to feed the tiger-striped water snake were all eaten by these people. No, this can't go on. We have to cherish these creatures that need to be nurtured. Soryong's mouth was filled with childishness. He solemnly declared, That's why, from now on, Every Tang clan expert must be close to a poisonous animal. Jiggle Hu, a profound sage, nodding in understanding, so that's why, no wonder the poison gas here is so thick. Then suddenly he fell into contemplation. Jiggle Hu's eyes did not leave the figure of the young man beside him. He thought to himself, this young man has extraordinary temperament. He is definitely not an ordinary person. In the quiet room, 3 figures stood tall like pillars, the deep-set Grand Patriarch, the mischievous Soryong, and the thoughtful Jiggle Hu gathered around the stone table. A solemn atmosphere filled the air. After hearing the whole story, the Grand Patriarch sighed with some helplessness. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Jiggle Hu burst into hearty laughter. His laughter rang out like a bell. Indeed, it was true. According to Jiggle Hu's information, the mysterious young hero that the Tang clan's patriarch met on Hainan Island back then was none other than young hero Soryong. The Grand Patriarch stroked his beard, his smile growing even deeper. He asked in return, why? Isn't Soryong the priceless treasure of our Tang clan? Soryong sat still and said nothing, letting the 2 seniors praise him, thinking to himself, mysterious. Still far from it, the golden-haired King Bee really opened my eyes. Jiggle Hu's voice suddenly sank like autumn lake water, carrying a bit of worry. But there was still one thing I was worried about, that devilish blood cult. Until now there was still no news. Jiggle Hu sighed again, his tone heavy. He couldn't just stand by and watch that blood cult's power grow more and more. The mysterious Grand Patriarch winked and signaled to Soryong, asking Soryong to quickly take out that treasure. Soryong obediently closed his eyes and replied, yes, Grandpa. Jiggle Hu was bewildered, his heart was in turmoil, not understanding what the 2 people were acting out. As if to add to the mystery, the Grand Patriarch waved his sleeve, and a dome-shaped beam of light immediately enveloped the 3 people like an invisible protective cage. The Grand Patriarch slowly explained, to prevent silent disasters, I will set up a sound barrier. Jiggle Hu exclaimed in surprise, a sound barrier? It seems this thing has an extraordinary origin. Soryong gently took out an exquisite porcelain vase and placed it on the cold stone table. This was it. Jiggle Hu curiously picked up the bottle and shook it a few times, but still couldn't figure out any clues. Jiggle Hu was still skeptical and asked, what kind of divine object was this that even the sound barrier had to be used? The Grand Patriarch leisurely replied, it was internal energy dissipating poisons. Jiggle Hu was once again puzzled. If it was just normal internal energy dissipating poisons, there was no need to set up such a big formation. Hearing this, the Grand Patriarch glanced at Soryong with a meaningful gaze. Soryong understood and nodded slightly. Jiggle Hu was horrified when he heard Soryong's assertion, like what if his internal energy dissipating poisons only worked against blood cultists? Jiggle Hu was so shocked that he jumped up from his chair and asked loudly, is that true? Could there be such a strange poison in the world? The Grand Patriarch laughed, haha, and nodded in affirmation. Haha, that's exactly what happened. Are you surprised? Jiggle Hu frowned with a solemn expression. If that was really the case, this was absolutely an earth-shattering discovery. The blood cultists were still fine, but the poison was so powerful. Jiggle Hu recalled Huin's words. Continuing, according to Huin, this poison reduced the body of the poisoned person to the level of a mortal. Huin had easily defeated a poisoned blood cult elder with just one move. Listening to the Grand Patriarch recount everything, Jiggle Hu couldn't help but sigh, just one move. The power is indeed equivalent to the legendary internal energy dissipating poisons. Hearing the Grand Patriarch recount the miraculous process, Jiggle Hu was extremely grateful, thanking the elder Myriad Poison Senior. I am truly ashamed, I never thought there would be such a wonderful plan in the world. Jiggle Hu solemnly clasped his hands and bowed his head. Expressing his admiration, with this deadly treasure, the sect master would definitely be able to sleep soundly. The Grand Patriarch couldn't hide his proud laughter. Haha, if you want to thank me, you shouldn't thank this old man but this kid. Wei Soryong discovered this treasure. The Grand Patriarch closed his eyes, his smile growing even more smug. This brat dared to test the poison on his own body, infecting himself with it, then enticing the blood cult elder to suck his blood. Thanks to that, the elder had been struggling between life and death for 10 days. Soryong scratched his head in embarrassment at Jiggle Hu's compliments. Huh? I didn't expect him to be so highly regarded. Suddenly Jiggle Hu patted Soryong's shoulder, startling him. Huh? Senior, you're exaggerating. Jiggle Hu solemnly said, his eyes determined, Wei young warrior. As long as you open your mouth to offer anything, I am willing to do my best to fulfill it. If you have any wishes, I will definitely report them to the leader. Soryong pondered for a while after hearing this. Then he hesitantly spoke. Then Soryong dared to ask. Soryong blushed and shyly asked, I wonder if I can get some information about poisonous animals? Jiggle Hu was stunned, completely surprised by this answer. What did you say? Information about poisonous animals? Not martial arts manuals, miraculous elixirs, or gold, silver, and jewels? The Grand Patriarch beside him couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha. His laughter echoed throughout the room. Jiggle Hu covered his mouth with a paper fan and thought to himself, he really is a strange person. Throughout the long history of martial arts, I'm afraid this is the first time such a monster has appeared. Jiggle Hu did not answer directly, but asked another question. If so, even if it is not the poisonous animal you desire, are you interested in the legendary mystical stone lizard? Amidst the quiet mountain scenery, the sound of the stream babbling like a melodious melody echoes endlessly. A young man turned his head and respectfully reported, "Uncle, it seems everyone has gathered here. This place is Mount Gonga, Sichuan." The young man reported in detail. According to the ancient map of his ancestors, the majestic waterfall and the towering turtle statue appeared in the distance. Mount Gonga was also looming in sight. Jiggle Hu walked to the edge of the stream and gently touched the clear water. He felt the icy cold water flowing through his fingers. Jiggle Hu exclaimed, it was indeed water melted from thousands of years of ice and snow, cold to the bone. Then Jiggle Hu ordered, "Everyone stop here for now. Qian, follow me carefully." Qian excitedly replied, "Yes, uncle." The entourage shouted in unison, obeying Lord Jiggle Hu's orders. As quick as lightning, Jiggle Hu displayed his superb mobility arts, his toes lightly touching the water surface, his figure already gliding like a breeze. Two figures, one in front and one behind, nimbly moved closer to the waterfall pouring down from the steep cliff. Finally arriving, Jiggle Hu put his hands on the wet cliff, watching the rushing stream. While observing the terrain, Jiggle Hu muttered, passing the turtle statue, upstream of the waterfall on the cliff, there would be a cave entrance hidden next to the fist-shaped rock. Qian happily shouted, it was indeed exactly the same as what was recorded in the ancient book. The four eyes met, both sides were in sync. Jiggle Hu gave a deep command. "I will break into the cave first, you guys follow closely behind." Qian received the order, respectfully replied, obeying his uncle. Jiggle Hu walked slowly and solemnly into the dark cave, his footsteps echoing in the terrifyingly quiet space. His face was unusually solemn, because even the slightest mistake could lead to unpredictable consequences. When he reached a place where the scene suddenly lit up, Jiggle Hu pushed aside the vines and looked inside, letting out a soft cry of surprise. It turned out that above his head was a natural skylight, with light shining down from above. He let out a soft breath. It seemed we had arrived at our destination. Qian couldn't help but sigh. He never expected such a magical scene to be hidden in this dark cave. Incredibly, Jiggle Hu looked around and came to a firm conclusion that this place was indeed extremely suitable for spiritual herbs to grow. Then, he carefully examined the surroundings and happily shouted, he found it. Before his eyes appeared a small green tree dotted with blood-red flowers, its spiritual energy so dense that it made people feel refreshed just by breathing it. This was the famous snow ginseng, a type of spiritual herb that specialized in absorbing the essence of cold. Qian was equally excited. Now all that remained was to trade this snow ginseng for the precious black Polygonum multiflorum of the Namgung clan. Jiggle Hu nodded in agreement. That's right, with this in hand, the severed meridians of young Miss Namgung clan would definitely have a good change. In return, we will get 200 years old or more of black Polygonum multiflorum. He sat down and admired the white ginseng with great interest, then spoke slowly. Then Jiggle Hu reached out to pick the herb. Suddenly, a whistling sound rang out beside him, causing his body to freeze as if frozen. Something was rushing towards him at terrifying speed. He was terrified. Something had just shot out from the dark crevice in the rock. The foreign object shot towards his elbow like lightning. Qian hurriedly asked, "Uncle, are you hurt?" Jiggle Hu looked at the thing. Its speed was as fast as lightning, leaving white snowflakes wherever it went. Jiggle Hu hurriedly shouted a warning, "I'm fine, be careful. This thing is so fast it's freakish." Qian turned around to look at the snowflakes that were getting thicker and thicker in the cave. The mysterious thing once again launched an attack towards Jiggle Hu. He hastily raised his fan to greet it, frowning as he stared at the fan in his hand. It turned out that the fan was covered with a thin layer of ice. Jiggle Hu suspected that it was poisonous cold air. Qian asked with a trembling voice as he approached, "Uncle, what the hell is that?" He remained silent and did not reply, hastily searching his memory for a while. Jiggle Hu slowly said two words. "Lizard," Qian exclaimed in surprise. "What?" Jiggle Hu recalled the strange appearance of the golden green animal and slowly explained. It was a lizard, a blue lizard. Soryong couldn't help but exclaim in surprise after hearing this. A blue lizard? He thought to himself, naturally blue, isn't this an extremely rare species? The Grand Patriarch asked curiously. Lizards were harmless, so what was there to worry about? Soryong's eyes suddenly lit up like headlights, and he even drooled, revealing an extremely infatuated expression as he laughed loudly. Ha ha, ha ha ha. It's fine, it's fine. He whispered again, the poisonous lizard in my eyes is an unparalleled treasure of wisdom. The Grand Patriarch laughed awkwardly. Haha, I don't quite understand what you're saying, but let's just assume that's the case. Jiggle Hu laughed dryly a few times and thought to himself, he really is a strange person. Then he kindly said, if there is any more news about other poisonous animals, I will definitely inform you first. Soryong's eyes immediately lit up like stars, flattering, wow, thank you big brother. Grand Patriarch could only smile wryly, speechless. The next day, the old man finally returned. As soon as he pushed the door open and entered, his clear voice echoed everywhere. Good son-in-law, everyone in the hall was already gathered. It seemed like they were discussing something. Soryong turned his head and quickly replied, yes, father-in-law. Huin also gently greeted him, father. He hurried forward, looking around, squeezing Soryong's face and examining him carefully from top to bottom. Worriedly, he asked, "Is your son-in-law's body okay?" His face was twisted in pain, but he still tried to answer. "Yes, I'm fine, father-in-law." Soryong then raised his arms covered with snake-bite wounds. He spoke a bit exaggeratedly. He had woken up after 10 days of being unconscious. His arms were left with some ugly scars, but at least he had saved his life. The owner of the house became even more furious, breathing heavily and cursing loudly. What the hell, that blood cult? Suddenly remembering something, he immediately shut his mouth and quickly turned to ask his daughter, Huin, "Daughter, are you okay?" Huin was sweating profusely and quickly reassured him, "Father, please calm down." Then he happily announced the good news, the child was safe and sound. Soryong Gurgur had saved the life of the child and his entire family. The Grand Patriarch also agreed, "That's right, Soryong the priest had made a great contribution." Speaking of which, when he defeated that elder, he seemed to say something else, "Your natural enemy is me." Huin quickly corrected, "It was me." Soryong blushed in embarrassment, "It was just that my plan had a little luck and succeeded, ha ha ha. Thanks to that, we also accidentally discovered the fatal weakness of blood cult." Only then did Jiggle slowly speak up, "Joelson, I've been here for a while now." Only then did the head of the family notice Jiggle and ask, "Oh, are you well, brother?" The two of them happily shook hands and joked. The head of the family reproached with a hint of resentment in his tone. "Ever since you became a high-ranking official, you have become cold towards me. I guess I have to wait until something big happens before I see you here." Jiggle smiled bitterly and apologized. "Oh, is that so? I am truly sorry for you." Seeing this scene, Huin explained to Soryong that these two people had been close friends since their humble beginnings. Soryong was shocked and exclaimed, "Oh, so that's how it is." He secretly sighed in his heart, he was speechless. Jiggle patted the head of the family on the shoulder, "Well, please sit down first. We still have a lot of important matters to discuss regarding that blood cult." He smiled and replied, "Ah, you're right." Old Master Tang's sect waved his sleeve and spoke in a dignified tone. "3 orders, both of you sit down, I want to hear the whole story." Soryong nodded slightly, respectfully replied, obeying his father-in-law's orders. After everyone had settled down, the Tang clan leader turned his gaze to Jiggle and leisurely asked, "So what exactly happened with that spy case?" As soon as he heard the word spy, Soryong was startled and quickly asked, "Spy?" A series of speculations immediately appeared in his mind. Could it be a spy? Did he mean some spies who had infiltrated here? The Tang clan's patriarch glanced at him, not bothering to reply. It seemed like he had more important matters to deal with. The Blood Demon sect broke into the Tang sect. Their main purpose was the Blood Hand So On Claw, right? The patriarch questioned sternly. Soryong hurriedly replied, starting to mumble to his father-in-law, "That was true. Those people seemed to be extremely greedy for this secret manual. Which bunch of worms dared to reveal the secret of the Blood Hand So On Claw to the evil Blood Demon cult and even dared to claim that it was in the Tang sect Sichuan?" Soryong was startled, stood up and exclaimed in horror, this matter was too serious. Could it be that within our clan or among the Tang sect disciples, there was someone colluding with the blood cult and betraying the sect? The tense atmosphere suddenly disappeared, everyone around was stunned, staring at each other. Jiggle put his arm around the person next to him and laughed teasingly. It seemed that he needed to teach this foolish son-in-law a lesson. He was still a guest, so it was understandable that his mind was a bit slow. The Tang clan's head could only stroke his white beard and laugh it off, trying to save some face. Soryong was petrified on the spot, stiff as a log, his heart kept screaming, "Am I the only alien here?" Huin gently explained, breaking the awkward atmosphere, "Soryong, in our Tang clan there absolutely cannot be any spies." Soryong was still doubtful, and quickly asked again, "Is that really the case?" The Tang clan head then explained in detail that even when selecting a servant, we must investigate his family's ancestors for 3 generations. If we don't find any problems, then we will accept his entire family into the Tang sect. He affirmed firmly that when his wife, children, and family are all tied to the Tang clan, who would dare to be a spy for outsiders? Soryong just wanted to roll his eyes after hearing that, thinking to himself, are they really that perverted in their control of others? How could such a secret still leak out? His whole body suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Then who was the helper of that damned spy? The scene changed to another place. The woman was being held by Ju Junghak's throat, lifted into the air like a chick. She grimaced and gasped for breath, saliva continuously flowing from her mouth, her eyes bloodshot as she begged for mercy. Ju Junghak gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at the other party. The truth was clear. You turned out to be a spy of the Muram Alliance. Ra cut the rear slightly raised his eyebrows, said in a low voice, in the Muram Alliance, the people who know about this can be counted on the fingers. It seems that the leader has caught the right traitor. As things were coming to an end, at the Sichuan Tang clan's gate, an uninvited guest appeared, breaking the silence. The person raised his head high, arrogantly shouting at the gate guards, they had arrived at the Tang clan. Traveling all the way from the far north to the Tang sect's gate without even using mobility arts was truly a person with a strange and interesting hobby. As soon as he finished speaking, he punched his own chest, creating a deep, thunderous sound, showing off his strong, bulging muscles. He arrogantly declared, his voice resounding everywhere, "Quickly go report to the Tang clan head. Peng Moen, the head of the Peng clan, has arrived." The movie ends here. Zada hopes to receive many likes and shares to have motivation to make more special movies.